Hello everyone. We hope you're doing well. We're doing great, and we truly appreciate your ongoing support. We'd like to briefly address some comments regarding our audiobook series. Rest assured, progress is ongoing. That said, your feedback is vital. If there's a novel you particularly enjoy and want to hear more of, please let us know in the comments. Each chapter requires a financial investment, so we can only continue series that receive strong audience interest. Although we retain core names and plot lines, we make significant editorial changes to enhance clarity, pacing, and immersion. These are not simple recitations. We work hard to deliver a polished, thoughtful listening experience. Without sufficient feedback or engagement, we may need to discontinue a series. So if you're enjoying something, don't stay silent. Your input truly matters. Note, our default audio speed is 3x. If that's too fast, let us know. We're happy to adjust it. Interested in early access to unreleased audiobooks? Visit our Patreon. You'll get to experience new content before it reaches YouTube. Just to clarify, I'm a fan like you. I've purchased these novels and adapted them with care, while respecting all rights and guidelines. For updates, follow us on Facebook and Twitter, X. YouTube update: recently, YouTube flagged some of our content for including mature themes, realistic violence, and darker story elements. As a result, we've decided to stop uploading anything that violates YouTube's guidelines. If you'd like access to the full, uncut versions including the more intense or mature content, you can find them on our Patreon page, where we upload everything first. Available now on Patreon: Shattered Innocence transmigrated into a novel as an extra. Transmigrating over 10,000 years late, I was forced to become a mighty presence. I, the celestial dragon, rule the heavens through the double gate, reigning supreme in countless worlds with peace taming, Tower of God sequence strength, cultivation when you take things to the extreme. Naruto is an Uchiha with cyst. WTF, the centuries-old ancestor in our family take concubine again. Plus 18, Ichi, reincarnated in Bleach as a wizard. Thanks for listening and happy listening. Yoruichi looked a bit surprised. Masatsuki smirked. You do realize who my master is, right? The captain commander of the 13th Division of Imperial Guards. He took a sip of tea and nodded in approval. Not bad. Of course. This is the finest tea in all of Seoul society, Yoruichi said with a grin. Then, flashing a mischievous smile, she added, Masatsuki, let's go steal his hot spring. Masatsuki froze. You're joking, right? He lives in the Soul King's palace, separated from Siriite AI by 72 layers of barriers. How exactly do you plan on stealing it? Don't tell me you're thinking of using the Kusagakure. If so, I'd advise against it. That thing might be useful for bombing Siriite AI, but sneaking into the Soul King's palace? No chance. Chapter 33, Little Kitty. Yoruichi Shioin shook her head. No need to go to the Soul King Palace. We're heading to the 4th Division. Masatsuki Ozaki raised a brow. The 4th Division? Are you saying they have a healing hot spring there? But Captain Anohana has never mentioned anything like that. That's because Tenjiro Kirinji only left behind a tiny amount of the hot spring water, barely enough to be useful, Yoruichi said, pinching her fingers together to illustrate the point. When Kirinji was still in Siriite AI, the Hirahara family had a good relationship with him. He also saw great potential in Gisuke, so he specifically left a portion of the hot spring for him. But Gisuke was still a kid back then, so it was temporarily stored in the 4th Division until he grew up and joined the 13th Division of Imperial Guards. Then why not just let Gisuke take it himself? Why go through the trouble of stealing it? Masatsuki asked. Because this way is more fun, Yoruichi grinned. See? I'm good to you. I always think of you first when there's something exciting to do. Masatsuki sighed and covered his face. He really should have expected this. Then, something caught his eye, a black cloak hanging on the wall. His gaze brightened. If I go along with this, what's in it for me? That hot spring belongs to Gisuke. At most, we'd just be borrowing it. It's not really ours. If I'm going to get dragged into your antics, you should at least offer me something in return. Oh? And what exactly do you want? Yoruichi blinked, caught off guard. She hadn't considered this at all. I want you to teach me your cat transformation technique. Masatsuki deliberately stretched out his words, and halfway through, Yoruichi visibly tensed. Originally, he had planned to ask for Shanko, but since Yoruichi had already promised to teach him that, he decided to switch to something more interesting instead. What do you even need that for? Yoruichi looked uncomfortable, as if recalling something unpleasant. I barely use it myself these days. She was genuinely puzzled. The cat transformation technique didn't enhance combat ability. Masatsuki shouldn't have any interest in it. You wouldn't understand. I have my own plans. Just teach it to me. Masatsuki sounded completely serious. You're not eyeing some little female cat, are you? Yoruichi narrowed her eyes suspiciously. His reasoning seemed dubious at best, and she had a feeling this so-called plan wasn't simple. Masatsuki met her gaze directly. That's right. The one standing in front of me. Yoruichi's face flushed slightly, and her voice dropped to a near whisper. You really are insufferable. What was that? Nothing. Yoruichi quickly shook her head and huffed. Fine, I'll teach you, just back off a little. But I'll warn you, this technique is extremely difficult. Yashiro trained for years and still couldn't master it. No worries, just teach me the method. If I can't learn it, then it just means I lack talent. I won't force it, Masatsuki said with a shrug. Well, in that case, I'll teach you the secret art of cat transformation. Yoruichi smirked and looked up at him. But don't come crying to me if you fail. Hearing you say that makes me even less eager to learn it. You're impossible. For the next quarter of an hour, Yoruichi carefully explained the principles and training method of the cat transformation technique. After listening, Masatsuki finally understood why even a genius like Yashiro had failed to master it. To learn this technique, one needed an extraordinary level of control over Rishi, enough to alter the spiritual structure of the soul at its very core. Mastering Rishi was Masatsuki's specialty, but he had never attempted to manipulate the Rishi that made up his own body. He carefully went over Yoruichi's method in his mind, and suddenly, something clicked. Raising one hand, he gave his head a slight shake, unsure of what he was feeling. Just as he was about to withdraw his hand, he suddenly froze. His palm had changed, shortening, growing fur, and developing a small paw pad in the center. Yoruichi was sipping her tea when she caught sight of this. Her eyes widened in shock, and she immediately choked, coughing uncontrollably. This was clearly a feline transformation, but she had only just finished explaining the technique. He hadn't even begun proper practice. Masatsuki's right hand had fully transformed, looking somewhat comical at first, but that was only temporary. Because the transformation was spreading fast. Under Yoruichi's astonished gaze, Masatsuki's body rapidly shrank. In the blink of an eye, the handsome man sitting before her was gone. She leaned forward, only to see a small figure slowly shifting under a pile of clothing. Reaching in with both hands, Yoruichi gently lifted the tiny creature and placed it on the tatami mat. To human eyes, it was a sleek, handsome little cat with black and white fur. Whether it looked just as impressive to other cats was another matter. Masatsuki looked up, only to be met with Yoruichi's stunned expression. The difference now was that the woman who was usually half a head shorter than him suddenly loomed over him like a towering giant. Lowering his gaze, he saw his own paws, covered in a soft gradient of black and white fur. Then, glancing back, his attention was immediately drawn to the long tail swishing behind him. Following it down, he took in the full sight of his newly fur-covered body. His instincts kicked in, and he subconsciously lowered his thick, bushy tail to cover his most vulnerable spot, just in case of any sudden attacks. I did it. Masatsuki nodded to himself, flexing his small, retractable claws as he accepted his new form. Hey. How the hell did you do that so fast? Yoruichi leaned in, excitement in her voice. Don't tell me you already knew how to do this? No way. If I did, I wouldn't have asked you to teach me. Do I look like someone who would willingly take a loss? As soon as he finished speaking, Masatsuki wobbled and fell flat on the ground. Adjusting to walking on all fours for the first time was a challenge. Just as he was about to stand up again, he realized something soft was pressing down on him, making it impossible to move. He wriggled a little, still adjusting to the strange sensation of transformation, when suddenly, the weight lifted. Sorry, I didn't mean to do that just now. Thinking Yoruichi might be upset, Masatsuki quickly looked up to apologize. But Yoruichi only smirked and pinched his tiny feline face. Oh, I think you did it on purpose. Time for your punishment. She scooped him up into her arms, taking full advantage of the fact that he couldn't shift back to his human form yet, and shamelessly started rubbing and petting him. The cat Masatsuki had transformed into resembled a Norwegian forest cat, long, silky fur with an irresistibly soft texture. And once Yoruichi started petting him, she couldn't stop. She ran her hands over his fur again and again, completely captivated. Masatsuki, meanwhile, was torn between embarrassment and undeniable comfort. The sensation left him trapped in indecision. Should he push her away or just enjoy it? Ugh, geniuses are the worst, Yoruichi muttered, still playing with his fur. Do you even realize how many years it took to develop this technique? No one in the Shioin clan, aside from me, has ever learned it. And you? You pull it off on your first try. She huffed, ruffling his fur aggressively before exclaiming, this is so unfair. Chapter 34, Plan How Do I Change Back? Hey. Yoruichi, quit messing around. Masatsuki covered a rather sensitive area and shot her a small grin. Hurry up and tell me how to change back. Don't forget, we still have important business to take care of. Yoruichi let out a thoughtful hum, as if reluctant to stop playing around. Just reverse the technique. Once you change back, we'll go over the details of the plan. Masatsuki gave it a try and, sure enough, it worked. Within seconds, he was back in human form. He chuckled. So, are we sneaking into the 4th division as cats? No way. If we turn into cats, we won't be able to bring anything with us. That'd be a pain. Yoruichi spoke casually, and Masatsuki couldn't quite tell if she was being serious. He simply laughed along. Good point. Their relationship had become strange. One step closer, and they'd be inseparable. One step back, and they'd feel like strangers. Masatsuki had no idea how to handle this complicated situation, so he decided to just take things as they came. Yoruichi pulled a small notebook from her sleeve and gave it a light pat. Everything's in here. I worked on it all night, it's foolproof. You stayed up all night? Masatsuki finished dressing, sat across from her, and said in a softer voice, why go through all that trouble? Just let Gizuke handle the thinking. It's his stuff, after all. You think Hanmitsukido agents get to take it easy? I could go a whole week without sleep. Yoruichi laughed, then gave him a knowing smirk. You should worry about yourself instead of me. You act all tough, but you don't know when to stop pushing yourself. Haven't you seen the state Sajun Kuichiki is in? Masatsuki fell silent. Yoruichi didn't dwell on it and instead got back to the plan. Here's how it's going to work. Tomorrow night, you'll distract Anohana by pretending to practice sword art. Meanwhile, I'll sneak into the 4th division barracks. Masatsuki straightened up, listening attentively. Yoruichi was pleased with his reaction and continued. Gizuke has already figured out where the hot spring is. So, while Anohana is focused on you, I'll slip in unnoticed, get to the spring, and get out, simple as that. That's it? That's it. Masatsuki blinked. She spent an entire night coming up with this. Looking at Yoruichi's beaming expression, he thought about it again and understood. For her, this was just a fun little game. The plan didn't need to be airtight. If anything, unexpected developments might make it even more entertaining. With their plan set for the following night, Masatsuki said his goodbyes and left for his dorm at Shino Academy. He had already spent too much time in Yoruichi's room. As he walked away, Yoruichi stood on the upper floor, watching his retreating figure without calling out to him. She knew exactly what kind of person Masatsuki Ozaki was. He might seem carefree, even frivolous at times, but he was sharp and level-headed. He knew what he could and couldn't do. He'd never put himself in a truly dangerous situation. And breaking the unspoken rules with Yoruichi was a dangerous situation. Both of them understood that. For now, there was no need to think about it. Unless Masatsuki became a captain, gaining just enough strength to protect himself in the coming chaos, there was no moving forward. Masatsuki Ozaki walked down a familiar street. The night was still dark, the wind just as cold, but the faint scent of blood that once lingered was now completely gone. It felt like ages had passed, yet he knew it had only been a little over 5 months. Masatsuki. At the dormitory entrance, Rinjaku Matsumoto called out to him, her voice carrying a warmth that seemed to grow more familiar with each repetition. Masatsuki smiled and responded with a simple. Rinjaku casually straightened his clothes, then asked, you didn't just come back from the Shion estate, did you? Masatsuki glanced down at her. She had grown quite a bit, nearly as tall as Yoruichi. At this rate, it wouldn't be long before she surpassed her. A soul's growth differed from that of humans in the world of the living, but it generally followed 3 stages: rapid growth in childhood, a long period of stability in early adulthood, and accelerated aging in later years. Of course, there were always exceptions, like that little brat, Toshiro Hitsugaya. In the original timeline, he was nearly 100 years old and still looked like a kid, an exceptionally rare case, even in Soul Society. Rinjaku's situation was unusual too. She was growing up too fast, yet Jinikamaru still looked like a child. Masatsuki raised a brow. What makes you say that? Rinjaku chuckled. You changed clothes. And that's the Shion family crest embroidered on them. Normally, only members of their clan wear that kind of outfit. If someone didn't know better, they might think you married into the Shion family. Though she said it playfully, her tone was oddly complex. It wasn't that she actually believed Masatsuki had become Yoruichi's husband, it was more like a subtle complaint. What she really meant was that he hadn't came to see her first, making her worry until late at night. Masatsuki smirked. I almost did marry into the Shion family. This time, it was Rinjaku who froze. For a woman who could put on an act with ease, She sure had trouble hiding the way her eyes immediately welled up. Masatsuki had never been able to stand seeing her cry. He quickly added, but I turned it down. I still have big dreams to accomplish. Marrying into a noble family would have made things inconvenient. Renjaku quickly wiped away any trace of tears, pouted, and mumbled, then. You have to stay with me tonight. It was something she had wanted to say for years but never had the courage to. Back then, she had nothing. Now, as a striking young woman with golden hair, she was far bolder. Masatsuki lowered his head slightly, inhaling the faint, sweet scent unique to her. After a long pause, he finally said, I'm not going anywhere tonight. Renjaku grinned. Should I take that to mean you're completely enchanted by me? Masatsuki nodded. That sounds about right. You are Renjaku Matsumoto, after all. And I'm Masatsuki Ozaki. Isn't it only natural that I'd be captivated by you? Smooth talker. Renjaku playfully flicked his cheek. But I like hearing it. By now, they had left the living room and entered the bedroom, where the outlines of a bed were faintly visible in the dim light. Renjaku stopped at the doorway, smiling. Go wash up and get some rest. It's late. Masatsuki nodded, but something about her words made his chest tighten. He gazed at her, sensing a deeper meaning behind them. Without waiting for his response, Renjaku stretched lazily and climbed into bed, her maturing figure accentuated for just a fleeting moment before she wrapped herself snugly in the blanket. Chapter 35, Floral Materials. By the time Masatsuki Ozaki accompanied Yoruichi Shioi to the 4th Division the following evening, his mind was still somewhat distracted. He wasn't some naive fledgling, he was a seasoned sword art prodigy who had seen his share of battles. Under normal circumstances, last night shouldn't have been enough to shake his focus. Could it be that Renjaku Matsumoto had somehow unlocked the power of the Soul King's nail? That would be disastrous. Masatsuki rubbed his temple, feeling a headache coming on. He had a hunch that Renjaku might awaken some rather unusual abilities. Beside him, Yoruichi walked through the dimly lit streets, clad in a black night suit. She made no effort to conceal herself, moving with the confidence of someone who belonged wherever she went. Now and then, a passing Shinigami recognized her, their expressions shifting in alarm before they hurriedly got out of her way. Clearly, her reputation as a troublemaker was well established. Even wrapped in her stealth gear, Yoruichi exuded an undeniable charm. Masatsuki glanced at her and asked, once we hand the hot spring over to Kisuke, when will we actually get to use it? I'd rather not wait until I've surpassed my master, only to find it's still just an empty pool. It shouldn't take more than a few years, Yoruichi replied in a low voice. Kisuke has already studied most of the Urahara family's research. All he needs now is the real hot spring as a test subject. So where exactly is it? In the safest and most dangerous place in the entire 4th Division, the captain's quarters. That's our target, Yoruichi said. Safe and dangerous were relative terms. For the 4th Division, the captain's quarters were the most secure location. But for intruders, it was the riskiest place to be. No wonder you needed me to distract Captain Anohana, Masatsuki said. That just leaves one more problem, Lieutenant Sano Tsukimada. That guy is practically Anohana's fanatical devotee. Masatsuki had simply recalled a name from the original timeline, but Yoruichi took it as a deliberate heads-up and nodded. He's not the combat type. His spiritual pressure is only at a lieutenant's level. With his strength, he shouldn't be able to detect me. Masatsuki shook his head slightly. I trust you. But since we're almost at the 4th Division, shouldn't we at least pretend to follow protocol and split up here? Yoruichi rolled her eyes at him. I'm off, then. And you, be careful. Don't let that woman, Anohana, train you to death. Masatsuki grimaced. Everyone in the 4th Division had a loose tongue, so it was no surprise that even Yoruichi had heard about the humbling experiences he had suffered under Anohana's tutelage. Then again, showing up unannounced in the middle of the night, claiming he wanted to practice sword art, might be a bit too suspicious. Thinking it over, Masatsuki decided to take a different approach and doubled back. Hey, where are you going? Yoruichi Shioi asked. Just out to buy a few things. Wait for me outside the 4th Division, Masatsuki Ozaki said with a faint smile. Don't act on your own, let me find Captain Anohana first. Alright. Yoruichi shrugged. I'll wait for you there. Masatsuki glanced around, his eyes lighting up as he spotted his target deep in the street. A quarter of an hour later, he arrived at the 4th Division's gate, carrying a colorful assortment of flowers. He informed the Shinigami on duty before heading inside. Him? Buying that many flowers? Hidden in the shadows, Yoruichi narrowed her eyes in confusion. Captain Anohana is over 1,000 years old. And he's thinking about this? She lay on the rooftop, watching Masatsuki's retreating figure. With a slight frown, She let out an irritated humphrey, unsure of who she was even annoyed with. Led by a 4th Division Shinigami, Masatsuki was quickly guided inside. Opening the dojo doors, Retsuo Anohana gave him a curious look. "You seem quite popular." It took Masatsuki a moment to grasp her meaning, then he shook his head. "You've got it wrong. These aren't from the girl, I bought them for you." Anohana tilted her head, studying him with an increasingly peculiar expression. "Between us, while we may not have the formal title of teacher and student, in practice, we are. Giving me these flowers." Her gaze drifted over the bouquet. Amidst the various blossoms, a pale pink branch stood out, its cherry blossoms delicate and charming. "You seriously don't think there's anything odd about this?" Masatsuki considered it for a moment before shaking his head. "Not really. I don't know much about flower arranging, and I wasn't sure which flowers you liked, so I just bought a variety. If there are any you don't like, let me know, and I won't get them next time." Anohana froze for a second, then realized he had indeed bought an assortment, far from a romantic gesture. After all, no one expressing their feelings would include chrysanthemums. Giving flowers might seem unusual to others, but for her, it was completely normal. Everyone in the 4th Division knew about her love for flower arranging. Maintaining her usual smile, she spoke casually, "Why the sudden interest in giving me flowers? You've been learning sword art from me for so long, and I've never seen you give me anything." Masatsuki remained silent, unsure how to respond. He sensed a trace of irritation in her words but couldn't pinpoint its cause. He chalked it up to a reminder to show proper respect to his mentor. To be fair, he did feel a bit guilty. He spent more time with Anohana than anyone else, yet he was closer to old man Yamamoto. Anyone who valued their student would feel a little hurt being treated so differently. Then again, Anohana always seemed to let a bit of killing intent slip while teaching him sword art. How could he possibly act as shamelessly around her as he did with Yamamoto? Looking back, he realized he had probably misunderstood her. That killing intent might have been accidental during sparring. He should probably try to be closer to her. "I've benefited from Captain Anohana's teaching so often, and now I'm troubling you again at this hour. These flowers are just a small token of appreciation," he said with a smile. "I heard the 4th Division holds a weekly Ikebana gathering. I was wondering if an outsider like me could join. You are the Captain Commander's disciple, how could you be an outsider? If you're interested, you're welcome to participate." Anohana shook her head, as if realizing it was pointless to get upset with someone so young. She soon found herself smiling again. When it came to sword art, she had to admit, Masatsuki was starting to look more and more agreeable. A man so dedicated to the way of the sword. Such individuals were rare, maybe even once in a lifetime. Even the boy she encountered centuries ago paled in comparison to the man before her. A fighter who relied purely on instinct could never compare to someone who truly walked the path of the sword. For someone like her, who was willing to dedicate her life to the art, discussing sword art was a kind of deep, almost spiritual enjoyment. And Masatsuki was someone who could bring her that joy. He wasn't just learning from her, he was providing insights in return. Even the swordsmanship she once believed had reached its peak. Lately, she had begun to glimpse the possibility of further growth. Chapter 36, Gotta Get Revenge. Unfortunately, he was too weak, otherwise. Retsuo Anohana smiled and said, "If you're willing to attend the Ikebana gathering, I'll teach you flower arrangement." Alright. Masatsuki Ozaki was just being polite, trying to strengthen his rapport with Anohana. He really didn't want to keep discussing flower arranging, so he chuckled and changed the subject. "Now I know some things are fair game to ask. So, Captain, when will you teach me sword art?" Anohana was momentarily taken aback before laughing softly. This kid really never misses a chance to get stronger. She had just shown him a bit of warmth, and he was already bringing up swordsmanship. She wasn't annoyed, though. Instead, she responded naturally, "You can start anytime. What do you want to ask? Or do you need to spar with me to pinpoint any issues?" Masatsuki felt his heart melt a little. As expected, a gentle and understanding older woman was something else. This kind of grace and composure was something younger women like Yoruichi and Rangiku couldn't compare to. It even made his heart race a little, if only she weren't such a battle maniac. A cold snort came from a nearby rooftop. "That bastard. I'm here observing enemy movements, and he's just sitting there chatting?" Masatsuki stiffened and instinctively turned his head. A chill ran down his spine, creeping all the way to the top of his skull. If his eyesight had been just a little sharper, he would have spotted Yoruichi crouching on the roof, staring at him and Anohana with utter disdain. Straightening his expression, he said, "Captain Anohana, no need for a spar. I just have a few questions." Anohana glanced toward the darkened sky, then casually lifted a hand to cut him off. "No rush. Close the doors and windows first, We wouldn't want any unwanted spectators. Given her strength and years of battle experience, it was impossible for Anohana not to have noticed Yoruichi eavesdropping nearby. But she simply chose to ignore it, focusing entirely on her student and their discussion. Seeing the doors and windows shut, Yoruichi lost interest in further spying and vanished with a swift movement. Anohana led Masatsuki further inside, and the two sat down on the floor without any formalities. Masatsuki presented the questions he had prepared in advance, and Anohana answered each one without hesitation, sharing everything she knew. The moon climbed higher, time stretched on, and the night grew ever more serene. Masatsuki was completely absorbed, as if he had entirely forgotten the reason he had come. Not that it was his fault, since he was already here, he wasn't about to let the opportunity go to waste. Before coming, he had carefully sorted out his questions about sword art, genuinely seeking Anohana's guidance. Anohana was a true master of the sword, an expert who embraced all schools of thought. As the first Kinpachi, she held the highest rank in Sairai's sword art, 10th Dan. No matter how talented Masatsuki was, he still had a long way to go compared to her. Her understanding of sword art even surpassed old man Yamamoto's, so consulting her was the most logical choice. Completely immersed in their discussion, the two transcended the barrier of spiritual pressure, engaging in a fierce exchange of ideas about the way of the sword. By the time he snapped out of it, the sky had turned completely dark. Damn. Catching a glimpse of the night sky through the window's gap, Masatsuki Ozaki suddenly remembered a certain little cat. Captain Anohana, thank you for your guidance. With all his questions answered, he knew it was time to leave. That little cat was probably furious by now. He could already picture Yoruichi puffing up her cheeks in annoyance. This is nothing. If you have more questions about sword art, feel free to come to me anytime, Anohana said lightly. Masatsuki clasped his hands together in thanks. Then I'll take my leave. It's getting late, you should rest as well. Stepping outside, he found the corridor lanterns dimly glowing, casting a faint light. The sky above was heavy with clouds, as if ready to weep at any moment. And sure enough, the weather did not disappoint. As he walked down the path, the sound of rain suddenly filled the air. A clap of thunder shattered the stillness of the night, echoing like a mournful symphony played by wandering spirits on an endless expanse of land. It was as if countless blades were clashing, sparks flying as life flickered away, tragic, inevitable, and utterly helpless. Listening to the steady patter of rain, Masatsuki remained silent for a long time, feeling something stir deep within him, though he said nothing. When he reached the barracks gate, the same guard was still on duty. He borrowed an umbrella and continued down the road at a leisurely pace. A cold voice came from ahead. Took you long enough. Masatsuki looked up and spotted a small courtyard at the end of the street. Yoruichi Shioin stood under the eaves, her cheeks puffed out in irritation as she stared at him. Just as he expected. Masatsuki chuckled. It wasn't on purpose. You know how I get, I lose track of time when I start training. Besides, it's not like I knew how long it'd take you to steal hot spring water. Naturally, I figured I should stall for as long as possible. Yoruichi narrowed her eyes, clearly seeing through his excuse. She rolled her eyes but didn't bother arguing, because, after all, this was Masatsuki Ozaki. A man notorious for his obsessive training habits. Not wanting to dwell on the topic, she waved a hand impatiently. Well? Aren't you going to come pick up your captain? Masatsuki smirked and strode forward, holding the umbrella high. At once, Captain. He immediately slipped into the role of an eager underling, grinning. Captain, you've worked so hard. Are you tired? Do you need me to carry you? Humphrey. At least you have some sense. Without hesitation, Yoruichi hopped onto his back. Feeling the warmth of her body pressed against him, Masatsuki figured there were worse fates than being her ride. Though. Something about this didn't seem quite right. Adjusting his grip to support her, he held the umbrella with one hand and shifted her weight slightly with the other. I doubt my conscience is as good as yours. Pretty words. Yoruichi sneered, then reached up and pinched his ear. Ah. Ow, 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 what was that for? Masatsuki yelped in mock pain, making Yoruichi finally release him. That's for running your mouth. I was saying things like that to little girls before you were even born. She leaned in, exhaling softly against his freshly pinched ear. The unexpected sensation sent a shiver down his spine. I wasn't even thinking that way, Masatsuki muttered. I don't care. I'm annoyed, so I'm going to bully you. Yoruichi's voice carried a hint of playfulness as she tightened her arms around his neck, resting her chin on his shoulder. Masatsuki glanced back. Her small face was pressed against him, her embrace firm and comfortable. Fine, fine. Bully me all you want, he sighed. What else can a commoner like me do against a noble? Yoruichi blinked. You don't like being bullied by me? Who likes being bullied? Humphrey. She huffed, her breath warm against the cool night air, sending another chill down Masatsuki's spine. Alright. I like being bullied by you, happy? Masatsuki sighed, while silently swearing to himself, one day, he'd get his revenge. Chapter 37, Captain Class Rebels. As they walked, the two chatted idly, occasionally playfully bickering, until they finally reached the end of the street. The woman on Masatsuki Ozaki's back carried a faint, pleasant fragrance, and his arm was supporting her in a rather compromising position. If he turned his head even slightly, his lips could easily brush against her cheek. But right now, none of that was on his mind. Something was wrong. The street was too quiet, unnaturally so. This was Siri-Itai, the heart of Soul Society. Even in its most secluded alleys, there should be at least some trace of life. Something's off. Masatsuki sniffed the air, catching a familiar scent. Their eyes met, a silent understanding passing between them. Without a word, they flickered onto a nearby rooftop. Masatsuki focused, sensing the telltale signs of a battle, the clash of spiritual pressure, the raw intensity of life and death combat. That's. Both of them widened their eyes as the battlefield came into view. The reflection of clashing forces burned vividly in their pupils. You actually noticed me? And you even managed to block my sneak attack. Impressive, worthy of a true heir of the Kuachiki clan. A man stepped out from the ranks of the rebel forces. He wore tattered rebel attire, his short black hair messy and wild. A bloodthirsty grin stretched across his face as he gripped a Zanpakutō, its blade still slick with fresh blood. His gaze locked onto the refined man standing before him, and he spoke slowly. Sajun Kuachiki. My name is Suzunosuke Takasugi. Remember it well, because I'm the one who's going to kill you. With that, he flicked his blood-stained blade, his spiritual pressure surging to its full strength. A captain-level opponent, third-class spiritual pressure. Sajun Kuachiki stiffened, lifting his wounded right hand to grip his crimson-streaked Zanpakutō. What was supposed to be a routine mission to suppress a minor rebellion had suddenly taken a much darker turn. From the way Suzunosuke spoke, it was clear this wasn't a coincidence. He was here for Sajun specifically. Moreover, he had deliberately concealed his spiritual pressure among the rebels and launched an ambush with skill far beyond that of an ordinary Shinigami. Kill them! Someone in the rebel ranks shouted. The battlefield erupted into chaos. The deafening clash of blades, the scrape of steel against steel, the shouts of warriors, the howling wind, the pounding rain, all of it blended into a cacophony, like a mournful elegy echoing through the storm. That sorrowful melody carried an eerie pull, driving those caught in its rhythm to fight with reckless abandon. Burn to ashes, Unian Mauru. The moment the release command was spoken, Suzunosuke's Zanpakutō flared with light, its shape shifting. The katana elongated into a massive naginata, flames blooming from its guard like crimson cherry blossoms. That Sajun Kuachiki guy is too weakened right now. He can handle regular rebels, but against a captain-level opponent, he's in real danger, Yaruichi Shioin said to Masatsuki. We're going in. Not waiting for a response, she flashed forward, diving straight into the battle. Masatsuki hesitated for only a moment before nodding firmly. Just as he was about to move, something caught his eye. Watch out. In a heartbeat, he was at Yoruichi's side, wrapping an arm around her waist while raising Bansho Senran with his left hand. Clang. A massive shuriken struck against Bansho Senran, sending a cascade of sparks scattering into the night. Masatsuki barely managed to deflect the projectile, but the force sent him skidding back several meters. He staggered slightly before regaining his footing. Another captain-level opponent, Yaruichi muttered, her pupils contracting. The moment Masatsuki released her, she landed smoothly and drew the short blade from her waist. That spiritual pressure burst just now, it wasn't a mistake. There was another captain-level Shinigami hidden among the rebels. She hadn't expected this at all. A rebellion of this scale concealing not just one, but two captain-level fighters? Even the 13th Division of Imperial Guards' suppression squads didn't come this well equipped. From above, a man with long black hair and tattered clothing leaped into the air, catching the shuriken he had thrown. Huh? His eyes flickered with surprise as he realized his attack had been blocked. Interesting. So this is the so-called genius? You actually managed to block my strike. As he descended, the long-haired man adjusted his aim and flung his shuriken forward. Clearly, his target wasn't Masatsuki Ozaki, he had no interest in him. His true objective was Sajun Kuachiki. That last attack wasn't meant to kill Yoruichi Shioin, it was to prevent her from aiding Sajun. Reflect, Bansho Senran. Masatsuki swung his blade, releasing its shikai in an instant. A crescent-shaped wave of sword pressure shot out. At the same moment, Yaruichi had already moved ahead of the incoming shuriken. She raised her leg and kicked it. The sheer force of her spiritual pressure combined with the penetrating power of the strike sent a deafening shockwave through the air. TCH, Yaruichi Shioin. What a hassle. Faced with both her kick and Masatsuki's sword pressure, the long-haired man sighed in resignation. The violent wind from their attacks sent his hair whipping around. The tip of the sword pressure was closing in rapidly, the piercing sound ringing in his ears. And yet, his face remained completely calm. A second later, his figure vanished. The sharp crescent of energy sliced clean through the space where he had stood, splitting a nearby rebel soldier in half instead. Meanwhile, Yaruichi's kick sent the massive shuriken hurtling backward. In a bizarre arc, the weapon spun through the air, straight back into the hands of its owner, who had reappeared. The long-haired man's pupils contracted. No matter how much force he exerted, his shuriken, an extension of his very soul, refused to move an inch in his grip. Looking up, he saw her. The violet-haired woman had closed the distance without him realizing it. Her shoulders pulsed with highly compressed spiritual pressure, crackling like lightning. And her seemingly slender hand, gripping his shuriken, was as unshakable as an iron vice. Not much of a close combat fighter, are you? That just so happens to be my specialty, Yaruichi remarked coolly. A fellow captain level? Impossible. The long-haired man let out a furious, almost hysterical roar. Rather than struggle for control of his weapon, he abandoned it entirely. A burst of dazzling spiritual pressure erupted from his limbs as he lashed out at Yaruichi with a wild strike. Idiot. Masatsuki sneered and charged forward. Even among captains, there were levels of strength, and this man's spiritual pressure was clearly weaker than Yaruichi's. Not only that, but he was attempting hand-to-hand combat against someone in Shunko. That was nothing short of suicide. His flurry of punches was effortlessly blocked. But Yaruichi's fists? He couldn't stop a single one. Within seconds, his body was covered in bruises and cuts, his breath ragged. Panic flickered across his face. His hand-to-hand combats, completely overwhelmed? Before he could react, Yaruichi disappeared from sight. So fast. A powerful gust exploded beside him, and his spine tingled with dread. Teeth clenched, he spun his shuriken again, trying to bring it up in defense. Midair, Yaruichi shot a glance toward Masatsuki. Masatsuki instantly understood. His spiritual pressure surged, electric currents crackling around him, resonating with Yaruichi's own. ZZT. A flash of white lightning. A gleam of steel. Before he could fully register what was happening, his vision blurred. And then, slash. Two blades, one white and one flickering with lightning, struck his arms in perfect synchrony. For a brief moment, he didn't even feel pain. But the speed. Terror overtook his features. This was not the speed of a lieutenant-level Shinigami. In the next instant, both of his arms were severed. Blood sprayed in arcs through the air. Masatsuki and Yaruichi didn't stop. With swift, fluid motions, they turned and dashed forward, blades flashing once more. By the time they came to a steady halt, blood poured from the long-haired man's body. Damn it. This is impossible. He collapsed to the ground, screaming in rage. My spiritual pressure is captain level. I was supposed to be a noble. Yaruichi and Masatsuki sighed. Another so-called genius, lured by false promises. Chapter 38, Don't kill me. To drain one's spiritual pressure to the level of a captain requires more than just hard work, it demands exceptional talent. Hundreds of years ago, this man must have been considered a rare genius, someone who only appeared once in many years. But in the end, he accepted the noble's offer and became their blade. How does it feel to defeat a captain before officially becoming a Shinigami? Yaruichi patted Masatsuki Ozaki on the shoulder. It doesn't feel like anything. If you hadn't already crippled him, I wouldn't have even had the chance to step in, he said, shrugging. This guy probably hasn't learned Bankai yet. If he had, things would have been a lot more troublesome, Yaruichi Shioin grinned. Captain-level spiritual pressure is a prerequisite for learning Bankai, but just having captain-level spiritual pressure doesn't mean one can attain it. The long-haired man had endured her attacks for so long without using Bankai, it was obvious he hadn't learned it yet. Oh my. How lively. Looks like everyone could use some help. A sudden voice echoed as if drifting directly into everyone's ears. Just from the sound of that soft, melodic voice, it was clear it belonged to a gentle and beautiful woman. Feeling a delicate hand resting on his shoulder, Masatsuki Ozaki sharply turned his head to look behind him. Captain Anohana, why are you here? Hearing this, Anohana covered her mouth with a smile. Ever since you left, I've been keeping an eye on your spiritual pressure. When I sensed fluctuations, I figured you might have run into some trouble. Masatsuki finally managed to pull his gaze away and looked behind Anohana. Sure enough, a number of 4th Division members had accompanied her. Most of the rebels had no idea who she was, but the moment they saw this beautiful woman wearing a white houri, they shrank back like mice encountering a cat, retreating in a hurry. Susanoo Takasugi's eyes widened in shock as he stared intently at Retsuo Anohana, his grip on his Zanpakutō trembling slightly. Seeing his reaction, Masatsuki Ozaki found it a bit odd. Could this guy also be from 1,000 years ago? Did he recognize Yachiru Anohana? Shaking just from seeing her, wasn't that a little pathetic? Did he really deserve to have captain-level spiritual pressure? With that kind of cowardice, no wonder he hadn't made a name for himself even after 1,000 years. Susanoo Takasugi swallowed hard, his hands clenching unconsciously. He wasn't a Shinigami from 1,000 years ago, but as someone sent by the Tsunayashiro clan to assist the rebels, he knew far more than they did. She was one of the people the clan had explicitly warned never to provoke, a top combatant of the 13th Division of Imperial Guards. And since he couldn't use Banchi, even if he had 10 lives, they wouldn't be enough to survive against her. Unlike the visibly panicked Takasugi Sanosuke, Retsuo Anohana remained completely at ease, even in the face of rebels drawing their blades. She calmly lowered her gaze to Masatsuki Ozaki and the long-haired man at his feet, then asked, "Was this your doing?" "No, I only managed to land 2 hits on him with Captain Yoruichi's help." The victory was entirely thanks to her. Masatsuki Ozaki waved his hand and pointed toward Yoruichi. Yoruichi chuckled but glanced at Anohana with a hint of awkwardness. After all, she had just stolen something from Anohana's home. And knowing the woman's reputation, it was hard not to feel at least a little nervous. Even among captains, there were differences in strength. Yoruichi knew she wasn't Anohana's match. "Last night, it was Captain Yoruichi who entered my room, wasn't it?" Retsuo Anohana smiled knowingly at her. Hearing this, Yoruichi stiffened, debating whether to tell the truth. Sneaking into a captain's quarters was no small matter. If Anohana framed it as something more sinister, things could get complicated. But then again, the item originally belonged to Kisuke, she was just retrieving it for him. It shouldn't be a big deal. Probably. Before she could say anything, Masatsuki Ozaki chuckled. She was just helping a friend retrieve something. I guarantee she didn't do anything else, so please don't hold it against her. Why would I blame her? That item was merely something Garanji entrusted me to keep, it was never mine to begin with. Returning it to its rightful owner is only fair. Retsuo Anohana nodded. Besides, I had quite an enjoyable evening. Hearing this, Yoruichi Shioin's expression turned odd. That wording was way too misleading. Oblivious to the implications, Anohana continued, "Speaking of which, you truly live up to your lineage as a Shioin. When I was your age, I hadn't hunted many captain-level opponents either." She finished with a somewhat regretful look. Yoruichi. Is Captain Anohana really this terrifying? She was already hunting captains as prey when she was barely 100? It's said that Shinigami from that era were all ruthless and battle-hardened due to their harsh environment. But to casually hunt captains? That's monstrous. Masatsuki grinned. "Captain Anohana, don't scare her, she's easily spooked." "I am not." Yoruichi muttered weakly, though her tone lacked conviction. Masatsuki and Anohana exchanged a glance before both burst into laughter. Watching the three chat so casually, Susanoo Takasugi finally lost his patience. "I'm a captain-level fighter too. Anohana's strength is undeniable, but that doesn't mean she can just ignore me. And to stand there so defenseless, right in front of me. Since that's the case, don't blame me for not playing fair." His gaze turned icy as flames erupted along the blade of his Zanpakutō, forcing Sajun Kuichiki back. Then, in an instant, he used flash steps to flash behind Retsuo Anohana. Die. Gritting his teeth, he swung his blade, striking at Anohana's neck with a speed too fast for the naked eye to catch. Yet, as she spoke with Masatsuki, Anohana had already drawn her sword at some point. With one hand, she casually held it behind her neck, effortlessly blocking his full-strength strike. Takasugi recoiled but immediately launched a relentless barrage of slashes. Pushed to the brink of life and death, his attacks carried even greater force. But Anohana, still facing away from him, continued to hold her sword in a relaxed grip, its blade resting behind her neck as if she had eyes in the back of her head. Every strike was anticipated, every move rendered useless. Decent spiritual pressure. But your swordsmanship is far too crude. If before, Takasugi had only heard rumors of Anohana's terrifying reputation and felt a distant sense of reverence, now he was experiencing true, bone-deep fear. A fear born from the very presence of death. The oppressive aura Anohana radiated was suffocating. Despair flooded Takasugi's heart. No matter how desperately he fought, he knew, he would never defeat this woman. His fighting spirit crumbled under the weight of terror. The only thought left in his mind was escape. He had to get away from her. "Have you lost the will to fight?" Anohana raised a finger toward Takasugi's retreating form. Bakudo number 61, 6 rods prison of light. 6 massive beams of light materialized and snapped together from all sides, binding him in place. He struggled for a moment, but it was useless. Panic overtook him as he shouted, "Retsu-sama, please. Don't kill me. I'm from the Tsunayashiro clan." "I know." Before he could finish, Anohana's figure flickered. In an instant, she was in front of him. Under Takasugi's horrified gaze, her curved blade fell. His head flew into the air. Chapter 39, a paragon among nobles. Masatsuki Ozaki and Yoruichi Shioin stared at the headless corpse of Suzunosuke Takasugi, their expressions unreadable. He had implicated the entire Tsunayashiro clan, and in public, no less. If word got out that one of the 4 great noble clans was involved in the rebellion, it could shake the very foundations of Sire Itai's rule. If you had no ties to the 4 great nobles, the worst you'd face would be the crime of slandering the nobility. But the problem is, you really are from the Tsunayashiro clan, and now you're a rebel. If they take you back for trial, the very people judging you will fear for their own lives. If you don't die, who will? Masatsuki, did you hear anything just now? Wiping the blood from her face, Retsu Anohana turned to Masatsuki and asked. "I didn't hear a thing." Masatsuki Ozaki responded instantly, shaking his head firmly. Retsu Anohana nodded in satisfaction, thinking to herself that the boy she had her eye on was as sharp as ever. "What about you all?" She turned to the nearby 4th Division members. "We didn't hear anything either." They mimicked Masatsuki's response, shaking their heads in unison. Retsu Anohana's gaze drifted down to Masatsuki's feet, pausing for a brief moment. "I didn't hear anything." "Don't kill me. I'll do anything." The long-haired man reacted swiftly, immediately begging for his life, sobbing uncontrollably. Shinigami like him, who willingly became executioners for the sake of wealth and power, were nothing like the loyal, battle-hardened warriors raised by noble families. These types valued their own lives above all else. "If you can't do it, let me. This is what the Onmitsukido is for," Yoruichi Shioin said flatly, as if this was nothing out of the ordinary for her. Masatsuki hesitated for a brief moment. Most of the time, this girl acted either playful or charming in front of him, like a mischievous neighbor with a teasing streak. It was easy to forget that she had been trained in the Onmitsukido since childhood, where assassination and execution were just as natural as breathing. She had carried out countless missions before. "No need. I won't hesitate to kill someone like this." Masatsuki Ozaki turned and slowly stepped beside the long-haired man. With a graceful flick of his blade, SHHK, the man's head fell. The pitiful wailing stopped instantly, and the world suddenly felt much quieter. Seeing the relief on Masatsuki Ozaki's face, Retsu Anohana arched an eyebrow, feeling both pleased and somewhat amused. Why do these so-called captain-class Shinigami feel so weak? They don't seem anywhere near the level of the 13th Division of Imperial Guards as captains, Masatsuki murmured, gazing at the lifeless corpse with a hint of disappointment. Retsu Anohana smiled. "That's only natural. Spiritual pressure is classified into different levels, and just because someone has attained 3rd-class spiritual pressure doesn't mean they're qualified to be a captain. Take Kensai Mugaruma, captain of the 9th Division. He is also classified as 3rd-class spiritual pressure, just like this small fry. But unlike him, Kensai has mastered Bankai. You've learned Shikai, so you should know, activating Shikai increases your spiritual pressure 3 to 5 times. Bankai, on the other hand, boosts it 5 to 10 times. That's the difference. Besides, these so-called Shinigami who are kept by the nobility, their spiritual pressure is mostly superficial. They don't follow their masters to grow stronger, they do it to live in comfort. Apart from spiritual pressure, they've neglected every other aspect of their training. They can't even utilize their own spiritual pressure properly in battle. That's why their combat ability is nowhere near what you'd expect from a captain. Small fry? For some reason, it felt like Retsu Anohana was delivering the harshest critique to Kensai Mugaruma, while using the gentlest tone possible. Masatsuki Ozaki thought to himself, then nodded, feeling an even stronger desire to attain Bankai. After spending a long time refining his connection with Bansho Senran, he had mastered Shikai to an exceptional degree, allowing him to increase his spiritual pressure 5-fold. But that was the limit of Shikai. If he wanted to grow stronger, he needed to learn Bankai. Before that, however, he had to elevate his spiritual pressure to 3rd-class spiritual pressure, the minimum requirement for Bankai training. Seeing that Masatsuki had no further questions, Retsu Anohana clapped her hands and directed the 4th Division members to advance deeper into the battlefield. With the 2 captain-level Shinigami among the rebels eliminated, this large-scale chaos, meant to corner and kill Sajan Kuichiki, had finally come to an end. And Sajan Kuichiki? Wait. Where was Zanpakutō? Excuse me, are you done chatting? If so, could someone help treat my injuries? A polite voice came from behind. Hearing this, Masatsuki Ozaki quickly turned around. What he saw was a refined-looking man, deathly pale, his black Hueco soaked in blood, now a deep crimson. Zanpakutō swayed unsteadily. Clang! His Zanpakutō slipped from his grasp, hitting the ground with a crisp sound. A moment later, he followed suit, collapsing unconscious. Sajun-sensei truly lives up to his name, a model aristocrat, a man among men. Even the way he collapses is elegant. Masatsuki Ozaki stroked his chin, looking almost envious, then mused. He actually looks kind of cute when he's asleep. If the little sisters from the 4th Division see him, they'll be completely smitten. You're still cracking jokes? Hurry up and get him to Captain Anohana. Yoruichi delivered a sharp karate chop to the back of his head. Oh, right, you're absolutely right. He's badly injured, he needs treatment immediately. Masatsuki snapped out of it, quickly hoisting Zanpakutō onto his back before sprinting off in the direction Anohana had gone. His hurried, slightly clumsy run made for an amusing sight, but to Yoruichi, there was something oddly endearing about it. She couldn't help but chuckle. 10 minutes later, members of the Onmitsukido, the 6th Division led by Jinrai, and the Special Forces led by Koga all arrived one after another. The sheer influence of Yoruichi Shion and Zanpakutō was undeniable. Amidst the commotion, Jinrai, along with Koga, approached Masatsuki Ozaki and Yoruichi Shion, offering a serious and formal expression of gratitude. This old man really had a stiff personality. Even when giving thanks, he maintained that stern, unsmiling demeanor. Compared to the gentle and refined Sajun, there was just no contest. But for the head of the Kuachiki clan to bow and personally express his gratitude to Masatsuki Ozaki, a so-called Rukongai commoner, it spoke volumes about his deep paternal love for Zanpakutō. Perhaps he wasn't the type to openly show emotion, but his feelings for his son were beyond question. Masatsuki Ozaki and Yoruichi Shion left the scene under the protection of the Onmitsukido. After walking some distance, Yoruichi suddenly whispered, Masatsuki, what do you think of old man Jinrai? He seems strict, but deep down, he is actually a kind person. Masatsuki's face remained expressionless, making it clear he wasn't particularly interested in discussing the old man. As expected of you, you figured that out after just one meeting. Yoruichi gave him an admiring look, then sighed. Too bad some people never see it. Masatsuki glanced at her, immediately understanding she was talking about that poor fool, Koga. Chapter 40, Unworthy of a Mentor. The Shion and Kuachiki clans have a good relationship. Yoruichi and Zanpakuto's son, Byakuya, are close friends and playmates, so it's only natural for her to be concerned about their family affairs. However, Masatsuki Ozaki had no interest in the emotional entanglements between a stubborn old man and a wronged young man, nor did he want to dwell on the topic. Under the protection of the Onmitsukido, the two quickly returned to the Shion estate. Once inside, Yoruichi Shion retrieved her spoils, 2 special containers filled with red and white liquids, along with a set of documents. She didn't keep them to herself and opened the scroll, going over it with Masatsuki Ozaki. Though he had mentally prepared himself, after reading the information on the hot springs, Masatsuki Ozaki couldn't help but click his tongue in amazement. White bone hell extracts the spiritual pressure and blood of the one soaking in it, expelling injuries and ailments in the process. The way it functioned felt almost conceptual in nature. Of course, both hot springs had powerful effects, but their drawbacks were just as severe. Soaking in white bone hell for too long led to exhaustion and death, leaving behind nothing but bare bones. On the other hand, if someone with sufficient spiritual pressure and blood soaked in blood pond hell, their body would regenerate excessively, leading to flesh decomposition. Both hot springs had astonishing benefits and equally terrifying risks. After some discussion, the two decided to hand the springs and the documents over to Kusagakure immediately so he could start working on replicating them. Without Garanji Tenjiro's spiritual pressure, creating an exact copy of the original hot springs was nearly impossible. But a simplified version would suffice. With their plan set, the two slipped away from the Shion estate under the cover of night, making their way to the playground beneath Sokioka Hill. As they stepped into the training ground, they spotted Kusagakure sitting by an empty pool, deep in thought. Kusuk, still up this late? We're here. Masatsuki Ozaki walked up, patted his shoulder, and called out cheerfully. Kusagakure looked up, let out a long sigh, then leaned back. The more time he spent around Masatsuki, the more he realized how difficult he was to deal with. Compared to the overly familiar Kusuk, he still preferred being called Hurahara-san. With a tone full of exasperation, Kusagakure asked, What happened to you two? Did Captain Anohana fight you? No. Masatsuki Ozaki scratched his head, glanced at the bloodstains all over himself, and muttered, "We ran into an ambush on the way, rebels targeting my sensei. But it wasn't a big deal. Captain Yoruichi barely had to lift a finger to take down a captain-level Shinigami, and we got the sensei out safely." Yoruichi Shioin crossed her arms and lifted her chin with pride, her expression practically inviting them to heap praise on her. Kusagakure gave her a glance but, ignoring her expectant look, turned back to Masatsuki. "A captain-level Shinigami? You're both unscathed, right?" Yoruichi nearly exploded on the spot, raising her fist to knock some sense into him for brushing her off. Fortunately, Masatsuki stepped in just in time to hold her back. With his arms wrapped around her waist, her legs still kicking in protest, Masatsuki forced a strange smile. "Relax, we're fine. The blood's all from the rebels." Finally calming down, Yoruichi huffed. "Those rebels are weaklings. They can push around Sajun Kuichiki, but running into me? That's just bad luck for them." Masatsuki released Yoruichi, remembering why they had come, and handed the hot springs and documents to Kusagakure. Kisuga unfolded the papers and studied them carefully, his brows furrowing before gradually relaxing. After a while, he clapped his hands and said, "This lines up pretty well with my research. I'm confident I can get some useful results from this, but I'll need more time for further analysis and experimentation before I can give you a definite answer." Yoruichi grinned and raised her hand for a high five. Masatsuki, expressionless at first, hesitated under her expectant gaze, then, ultimately, relented. Pop. The two slapped their hands together with a crisp sound before playfully scuffling. Kusagakure inspected the hot spring while listening to them discuss the events of the night. After hearing their accounts, he frowned slightly, lost in thought. The rebel Suzunosuke Takasugi and the long-haired man were only of average strength, but they were still captain level. Two captains openly joining the rebels and ambushing Sajun Kuichiki was an extremely dangerous sign. Until now, while the rebels and 13th Division of Imperial Guards had frequent skirmishes, there had never been a direct clash between top combatants. Because of this, the captains had taken a wait-and-see approach, refraining from personally intervening. However, the ambush on Sajun might change everything. This wasn't just a matter of captain-level combat power, it also involved the Kuichiki, Shioin, and Tsunayashiro clans, the highest-ranking noble families. With them entangled, the Central 46 compound could no longer afford to maintain the status quo. The 13th Division of Imperial Guards, once an elite assassination force, might soon bare its fangs again, throwing all of Sirite AI into turmoil. With that thought, Urahara turned to Masatsuki Ozaki and said seriously, "Masatsuki, from now on, you need to be extra careful. The rebels' plan to assassinate Sajun failed because of you, and they'll likely try to get revenge. I suggest seeking help from Captain Commander Yamamoto. See if he can arrange some guards to ensure your safety." "Why is this on me? Yoruichi's the one who played hero." Masatsuki blinked, tilting his head in protest. Despite his words, he understood the situation and wasn't really blaming Yoruichi. Sajun had the backing of the Kuichiki clan and the 6th Division, and Yoruichi had the Shioin clan and the 2nd Division behind her. Meanwhile, even though he carried the title of the Captain Commander's disciple, if he pushed the wrong people too far, that title wouldn't be enough to save him. Old man Yamamoto had the power to overturn the table, but he never knew how to clean up the mess afterward. That was precisely why he confined himself within the rules. Yoruichi immediately caught on that Masatsuki was joking, but she still knelt beside him like a guilty child and whispered, "Why don't you move in with me? With me and the Onmitsukido at the Shioin estate, you'd be completely safe. You saved Sajun-sensei, yet you act like you did something wrong," Masatsuki teased. "But there's no need for that, I'll just go find old man Yamamoto. If a disciple's in trouble, how could a master not step in? No, this isn't even a favor. I'm always so good to him, if he just stands by and does nothing, he's unfit to be a master. He actually let his disciple, me, end up in such a dangerous mess. What an incompetent master. I have to go have a serious talk with him." Yoruichi and Hirahara exchanged glances, helpless smiles forming at the corners of their lips. They had a feeling he was about to get himself into more trouble. Chapter 41, Captain's Meeting. "Master, you must stand up for your disciple." Yamamoto's eye twitched as he looked at Masatsuki Ozaki, who stood before him, pretending to wipe away tears. He really wanted to know where this brat had learned to be so shameless. Was it something he picked up on his own, or was it just because he was his disciple? But Joshiro Yukitake wasn't like this. This was definitely Shun Sakuraku's fault. Leaning on his cane, Yamamoto stood up and glared at Masatsuki Ozaki, his voice sharp. "Stand up straight. What kind of Shinigami cries like this? The 13th Division of Imperial Guards has no place for the weak. If Captain Shioin hadn't intervened, do you think you'd still be standing here complaining? Masatsuki Ozaki feigned wiping away tears, stealing a glance at Yamamoto before rolling his eyes. In the past 1,000 years, among all the students at Shino Academy, who at his age had higher spiritual pressure than him? Probably only that freak Aizen. This time, the opponent was a captain. No matter how strong a lieutenant-level Shinigami was, fighting a captain was another story entirely. Of course, he'd never say that out loud. Instead, he just kept whining and complaining. He knew Yamamoto's temper all too well. If he talked back now, he wouldn't just get a lecture, he'd get first-hand experience with Yamamoto-style hand-to-hand combat training. Watching Masatsuki Ozaki play the victim, Joshiro Yukitake felt a little sympathetic. Meanwhile, Shun Sekiraku was thoroughly enjoying himself. Before this little disciple joined, he was usually the one standing here getting scolded. But now, the old man had finally found a new target. This kid really made the right choice in becoming his disciple. I'm finally free. Suddenly, a chill ran down Kiraku's spine. Looking up, he saw his cute little junior smiling at him. Was it just his imagination, or was there pure malice hidden in that smile? Following Masatsuki Ozaki's gaze, Yamamoto turned to see Shun Sekiraku grinning, and his anger flared up even more. I didn't scold him today, and he's already getting cocky? Yamamoto snapped, you fool. What do you think you're laughing at? Have you forgotten your responsibilities? The 8th Division is in charge of intelligence, so why didn't you uncover the presence of a captain-level Shinigami among the rebels? Do you have any idea what could have happened if their ambush had succeeded? Kiraku wanted to cry but had no tears left. He knew the old man was really mad. It wasn't just about missing the enemy's strength. What truly enraged Yamamoto was that Sajun Kuichiki had nearly died because of it. If that had happened, as the head of the intelligence unit, he would have been the one to bear the consequences. Seeing Yamamoto look so troubled, Kiraku even felt a little guilty. That guilt lasted for about a whole second before it faded away. Now that Kiraku was also being punished alongside him, Masatsuki Ozaki felt a lot better. Putting on a pitiful expression, he said, Master, I don't blame Kiraku-senpai, but I did save Lieutenant Kuichiki. No matter how you look at it, I'm a huge hero for the 13th Division of Imperial Guards. As the Captain Commander, I trust you won't let me down. My request isn't unreasonable, just assign me 2 beautiful lieutenants as my bodyguards, and I'll be satisfied. Kiraku's eyes widened. How did this suddenly become my fault? And how is this kid shamelessly taking all the credit? He's even more thick-skinned than I am. For a moment, he felt both relieved and speechless. Finally, someone was carrying on his legacy. Seeing his young disciple still playing around, Yamamoto's temper flared up again. He was just about to explode when a voice from outside interrupted him with an urgent report. Captain Commander, all the captains have arrived. Yamamoto's expression shifted through several emotions before he let out a resigned sigh. After a brief internal struggle, he finally regained his composure and said, very well, let them in. His sharp gaze flicked to Masatsuki Ozaki, and he said flatly, Masatsuki, you don't need to leave. Go stand in the back and observe. Masatsuki Ozaki was slightly surprised. Normally, even lieutenants weren't allowed to attend a captain's meeting, yet here he was, a Shino Academy student, given the privilege to sit in. This was not the time to act out. In a formal setting like this, he had to respect his master's authority. He responded respectfully, then moved behind Yamamoto, taking a spot against the wall. Soon, the meeting room doors opened, and a figure walked in. The captain of the 2nd Division, Yaruichi Shioin. She took her seat to Yamamoto's right, her eyes briefly lighting up when she spotted Masatsuki. He looked back at her, and in the very first moment their eyes met, they started making exaggerated expressions at each other, silently attempting to exchange information. The captains were far too perceptive for such antics to go unnoticed. The ones entering behind them caught sight of the interaction, their expressions turning subtly amused. Following closely behind were the lieutenant of the 3rd Division, Chikane Iiba the captain of the 4th Division, Retsuano Hana the captain of the 5th Division, Shinji Hirako the captain of the 6th Division, Jinrai Kuichiki the captain of the 7th Division, Love Kawa the captain of the 9th Division, Kensai Muguruma the captain of the 10th Division, Ishin Shiba the captain of the 11th Division, Kinpachi Kaiganjo the captain of the 12th Division, Garyo Hikaifun. As each white-cloaked figure entered, Masatsuki Ozaki finally had the chance to put faces to all the captains of the 13th Division of Imperial Guards. Once everyone had arrived, Shun Sekiraku and Joshiro Yukitake exchanged a glance before stepping into their respective positions. At this moment, they weren't standing here as Yamamoto's disciples, but as captains of the 13th Division of Imperial Guards. Ishin Shiba noticed the exchange between Masatsuki Ozaki and Yoruichi Shioin, pressing his lips together as if he wanted to say something. He seemed to be considering whether he should inform his niece about these two after the meeting. Retsuo Hana, ever the quiet and graceful Yamato Nageshiko, kept her head slightly lowered, her expression calm and unreadable, as if nothing in the world could disturb her. Jinrai Kuichiki, the stern old man, spared Masatsuki a glance, but just a single one, before withdrawing his gaze. This old man. There's a reason Koga Kuichiki turned out the way he did. Masatsuki Ozaki kept his thoughts to himself, maintaining his obedient demeanor. As for the captains he had already met or was familiar with, they paid him little mind. But the others, those who hadn't interacted with him before, regarded him with curiosity. They wanted to see for themselves what kind of legendary genius had caught the attention of Captain Commander Yamamoto. A single light tap of Yamamoto's cane against the floor signaled the start of the meeting, and the captains quickly refocused. The primary topic of discussion was, unsurprisingly, the attack on Lieutenant Sajun Kuichiki of the 6th Division. A lieutenant's injury wouldn't normally warrant a captain's meeting, but Sajun Kuichiki was no ordinary lieutenant, he was the heir to the Kuichiki clan. This level of attention was a privilege that most lieutenants would never receive. As the conversation shifted to serious matters, the captain's expressions hardened. With all eyes on her, Yaruichi Shioin stepped forward and began recounting the events of the previous night. Chapter 42, the oath. Yoruichi's account was heavily embellished, making it seem as though she had taken down the captain-level rebels herself, while Ozaki Masatsuki had only provided minor assistance under her command. Of course, this wasn't about stealing credit, it was a way to shield Masatsuki from potential trouble and danger. After all, she couldn't be certain if any of the captains present had ties to the Tsunayashiro clan. Ozaki Masatsuki understood her reasoning and didn't argue. In fact, he felt somewhat touched. Credit didn't matter. In the 13th Division of Imperial Guards, status was earned through strength. Those who knew the truth, Yamamoto, Anohana, and Jinrai Kuichiki, remained silent, tacitly approving of Yoruichi's approach. While Yoruichi continued explaining the situation to the others, Masatsuki began observing the captains. Each had their own distinct presence, but one in particular stood out, Garyo Hikaifune. Her warm and open demeanor always seemed to draw his attention. Sensing his gaze, Garyo Hikaifune turned and offered him a kind smile. Masatsuki returned the gesture. He hadn't expected such generosity from her and decided he should interact with her more in the future. Unfortunately, according to rumors, she would soon be promoted to the 0 Division, meaning they likely wouldn't have much time to get acquainted. Besides Hikaifune, another person who managed to catch Masatsuki's attention was Kensai Muguruma. This captain, known throughout the Soul Society for his combat prowess, had a spiritual pressure level classified as 3rd rank, just as Anohana had mentioned. Sensing Masatsuki's gaze, Kensai turned to look at him. His first thought was, what beautiful eyes. But almost immediately, he sensed something off. There was something hidden beneath those eyes, something dark and unsettling. It wasn't hostility, not in the physical sense. Rather, it felt like a deep, lingering intent to cause him psychological harm. Am I imagining things? This should be our first meeting. Shaking his head, Kensai quickly dismissed the strange thought. As Masatsuki continued observing the captains and exchanging the occasional glance with Yoruichi, Yamamoto finally spoke. The Central 46 has issued its verdict regarding the captured rebels. For treason and insurrection, they have been sentenced to death. Effective immediately, they will be detained in the Senseku until their execution. In recent days, rebel activity has grown rampant. Each division must do everything in its power to eliminate them. With that, the matter was officially concluded. Of course, that was only on the surface. Behind the scenes, how the noble families wage their battles was not the 13th Division of Imperial Guards' concern. Yamamoto had no interest in aristocratic power struggles. The duty of the 13th Division of Imperial Guards was to maintain order, not serve as a tool for noble rivalries. As long as their conflicts didn't escalate to a level that threatened Siriite AI, or the world, he would not interfere. That being said, Yamamoto knew his old friend well. Though his son had been ambushed, he had survived. Once the attackers were punished, he would likely choose to let the matter rest. The Kuichiki clan was not like the lunatics of the Tsunayashiro clan. They, too, held an exalted status, but they bound themselves to rules and upheld the stability of Siriite AI. They would not trample over order for personal vengeance. Even if they sought to move against the Tsunayashiro clan, they would do so within Siriite AI's laws. The Tsunayashiro clan, however, was another matter entirely. If their people were attacked, they wouldn't care about laws. They would lash out like rabid dogs, indiscriminately biting at anything in their path. To borrow a saying from an ancient Western kingdom in the world of the living, a gentleman may be taken advantage of precisely because he is a gentleman. And his old friend, he was just such a man. Yamamoto let out a quiet sigh and swept his gaze across the room. Today, all captains are gathered to represent their respective divisions at this meeting. However, the position of 3rd Division captain remains vacant. Do any of you have recommendations? This was the true purpose of today's meeting. As a support unit, the 3rd Division played a crucial role in reinforcing other squads by compensating for battlefield casualties. Its importance could not be understated. The position of 3rd Division captain had been left unfilled for over a decade, with Lieutenant Chikane Iba handling its affairs due to the lack of a suitable candidate. Now, in a time of turmoil, finding someone to fill the vacancy would be ideal. At Yamamoto's words, everyone instinctively turned to look at Chikane Iba. Under their gazes, Iba shook her head slightly. Yamamoto felt a twinge of disappointment, though it was expected. If a suitable candidate had been available, it would have been reported in advance. There would be no need to bring it up today. Scanning the room, Yamamoto saw that none of the other captains stepped forward to speak. He already had his answer. With a calm and indifferent tone, he declared, "Very well. The matter of the captaincy will be discussed at a later date. For now, I appoint Lieutenant Iba as acting captain, temporarily overseeing the 3rd Division." Though Iba had been managing the squad for years, this official decree solidified her authority. The captains had no objections. They had all seen her dedication and efforts firsthand. This was a position she had earned. Masatsuki Ozaki calculated that with this, the meeting was likely coming to an end. He was already prepared to leave at any moment. However, Yamamoto did not adjourn. Instead, he turned his gaze toward him and spoke in an unmistakable tone. "Shino Academy student, Masatsuki Ozaki. Before the academic year ends, apply for early graduation and take part in the Kanso training exercise. Upon graduating, report to the 2nd Division with your diploma." Last night, the 3rd seat of the 2nd Division submitted a resignation due to a position transfer. You will assume this seat upon your arrival. Masatsuki Ozaki was momentarily stunned. He had anticipated that Yamamoto might push for his early graduation. After all, ever since Sajun Kuichiki was attacked, Yamamoto had asked for his opinion multiple times, and Masatsuki had always answered that he would comply with any arrangements. However, he had assumed that Yamamoto would assign him to the 1st Division, or at the very least, the 8th or 13th. Those squads were safe choices, filled with allies. The last thing he expected was to be placed in the 2nd Division. When Yamamoto was halfway through his announcement, Masatsuki had already envisioned the scenario in his head, Yamamoto ordering him into the 1st Division, followed by Yoruichi throwing a fit, demanding he uphold his promise. Now, Yoruichi was grinning triumphantly, flashing an okay hand gesture at him. Even the ever-serious Yamamoto, who had been fuming all day, seemed to have a glint of amusement in his eyes, his lips curling slightly at the corners. And as if on cue, the sudden transfer of the 2nd Division's 3rd seat the night before, there was no way this wasn't premeditated. Masatsuki Ozaki came to a realization: he had been sold out. That old man Yamamoto had set him up. His eyes reddened, staring at Yamamoto in deep anguish, silently questioning why he had been betrayed. Yamamoto pondered for a moment, opened his mouth as if about to explain, but before he could, Masatsuki immediately cut in. "Thank you, Master, for your trust. I will do my utmost to become an exceptional Shinigami and will not disappoint your expectations." Yamamoto studied him in silence for a long moment before nodding slightly. Then, turning away, he said, "Captain Shioin, Masatsuki Ozaki is in your hands now." Yoruichi straightened up and bowed swiftly. "Leave it to me, Captain Commander." Yamamoto gave a small nod of acknowledgement. After a few final instructions to the captains, primarily regarding the need to monitor rebel activity, he officially declared the meeting adjourned. The captains bowed in salute before turning to leave. "I went through a lot of trouble to find out about your early graduation," Yoruichi chuckled, nudging Masatsuki with her elbow as they walked down the corridor. "Now there's no escape. Don't forget your promise. If I'm the captain of the 2nd Division, you're my 3rd seat." "How could I possibly disobey Master's orders?" Masatsuki replied with a grin. "Besides, I've never forgotten the agreement between us. Just make sure you don't forget your end of the deal either. Otherwise, I just might make you pay me back." The last line was whispered directly into Yoruichi's ear. A ticklish sensation ran through her, and her ears instantly turned red. The blush spread down her neck, a rare and oddly adorable sight. Flustered, she smacked Masatsuki's shoulder. "Don't worry. In a few years, that kid will join the squad too. But I'll only introduce you to, you're on your own for anything beyond that." Chapter 43, Graduation Application that evening. Behind Sairi Itai's West Gate, at Shino Academy. In a lavish dormitory, Masatsuki Ozaki informed Rangiku Matsumoto and Jinakamaru of his decision to apply for early graduation. This year? At a time like this? Why would the captain commander give such an order? Rinjaku's expression tensed as she processed his words. Isn't his too dangerous? Jin added, his tone heavy with concern. Unlike the carefree Rinjaku, Jin had been closely following the situation outside. Captain Commander Yamamoto's decision was so shocking that he could hardly believe it. They had only just taken down a captain-level Shinigami from the rebel forces. There was no way that Tsunayashiro clan would let that slide. Looking at Masatsuki, who sat cross-legged on the floor with a calm and amiable smile, anyone who didn't know better would think he was about to go on vacation. This idiot. This isn't the right time to graduate. Why don't you just come up with an excuse to refuse the captain commander? Jin suggested. You're unreliable most of the time anyway, just make something up, and he'll probably buy it. Both the 13th Division of Imperial Guards and the rebels were gearing up for all-out war. The battles ahead would be nothing short of brutal. Compared to joining the 13th Division of Imperial Guards now, staying in Shino Academy was far safer. My master wouldn't send me to my death. Masatsuki absent-mindedly ran his fingers along the hilt of Bansho Senran, then smiled reassuringly. Once I join, I'll be the third seat of the 2nd Division, which also puts me in charge of the detention unit, overseeing the nest of maggots. I won't be on the front lines. Besides, the Onmitsukito operates independently from the 13th Division of Imperial Guards and is entirely controlled by the Shioin clan. There's little need to worry about internal threats. If anything, joining the 2nd Division is safer than staying at Shino Academy. At that, he glanced at Rinjaku and Jin. If they wanted, they could graduate alongside him. Neither had achieved Shikai yet, but passing the graduation exam wouldn't be an issue. In the original timeline, Jin was a prodigy who graduated from the academy in just a year. Now, with her soul complete, Rinjaku possessed even greater potential than he did. As Masatsuki's thoughts drifted, Jin suddenly opened his eyes and asked, what happened to the rebels who attacked? Do they know you killed a captain-level Shinigami? That was the real issue. Captain-class Shinigami weren't just symbols of nobility, they were the true backbone of Soul Society's power. Even the 4 great noble clans wouldn't take such a loss lightly. Given the Tsunayashiro clan's ruthlessness, ambition, and dominance, there was no way they'd let this go. You're the captain commander's beloved disciple, but you're not the captain commander himself. You really think those rebels will stay quiet? Masatsuki returned to the present, considered for a moment, then shrugged with a smile. They were sentenced to death and locked away in Senzaku under Onmitsukito's watch. No one is allowed to visit. As for the ones who saw me kill, Captain Anohana took care of them. Now, barely anyone knows the truth, and those who do won't dare spread it. Not to mention Yoruichi, Old Man Yamamoto, Jinrai Kuichiki, and Sajun Kuichiki, no one would be foolish enough to provoke them. Even the 4th Division members who witnessed the incident were under Anohana's strict supervision. They wouldn't be released until things blew over. Jin furrowed his brows. Seeing Masatsuki's unwavering confidence, he knew the situation had been handled. He wasn't sure how this guy had managed to get so many big names to cover for him, but the outcome was undeniably perfect. Masatsuki had saved Kuichiki-sensei. His role in killing a captain-level rebel remained hidden. And soon, he'd join the 2nd Division as 3rd seat. Everything seemed to be falling into place. But was that really a good thing? Jin studied Masatsuki's relaxed smile, unease creeping into his chest. Masatsuki had done something that could shake all of Soul Society. The captain commander could protect him for now, but could he guarantee that safety forever? This was nothing like the future they had envisioned when they first arrived. And yet, Masatsuki had the nerve to tell him to keep a low profile. Masatsuki. Masatsuki looked at him curiously. What's wrong? Jin Ikamaru pondered for a moment, narrowing his eyes before saying slowly, I want to apply for early graduation too. Me too. Me too. Rinjaku Matsumoto chimed in excitedly. Masatsuki and Jin rolled their eyes in unison, exasperated. They distinctly remembered how confused she had looked just moments ago, yet now she was eager to join in. What's your reason? Masatsuki asked, tilting his head. I don't feel comfortable letting you, a total airhead, wander around on your own, Jin sighed. Rinjaku nodded in agreement. Masatsuki was briefly stunned before breaking into a satisfied smile. I knew I made the right choice. Bringing you to Shino Academy was definitely a good decision. Unlike Rinjaku, who just gives me headaches all day long. She never trained seriously, and if I'm not around to push her, she won't do anything. As Masatsuki continued complaining, Jin glanced at Rinjaku, whose expression was darkening. A strange look crossed his face. Anyway, since you both are so eager, let's do this together. Masatsuki, completely unaware of the impending danger, grew more and more excited. Ahem. Noticing Rinjaku's increasingly icy stare and the dangerous aura radiating from her, Jin coughed twice. Masatsuki. What I meant to say was, Renjaku is just too irresistible. I'd be more than happy to stay by her side. Supervising her training is just a bonus. This time, it was Renjaku's turn to fall silent. Watching the two, Jin pressed a hand to his forehead in exasperation. That was the most awkward save he'd ever heard. But before a second passed, Renjaku burst into laughter and threw herself at Masatsuki. I knew it. Jin. Masatsuki hugged her tightly, then waved at Jin. I'll leave the graduation application report to you. I got it, Jin muttered through gritted teeth, his eye twitching. Watching the two suddenly start flirting in front of him, he felt utterly drained. They're both the same kind of trouble. After Jin finished the application, Masatsuki submitted the early graduation request to Sato. Upon hearing his reasons, Sato approved the request without hesitation. He also excused Masatsuki from attending further academy classes so he could focus entirely on preparing for the graduation exam. In the days that followed, Masatsuki immersed himself in training the Sokatsu technique he had learned from Yamamoto. Renjaku and Jin trained alongside him, determined to improve as much as possible before the exam. Chapter 44, Shinso. The sky was dark and heavy with thick clouds. The vast dojo seemed almost crushed under their weight, and the old wooden buildings creaked intermittently. Inside the dimly lit hand-to-hand combats dojo, Masatsuki Ozaki stood alone on the wooden floor, shirtless, his well-defined muscles exposed. His eyes remained closed as the flickering oil lamps cast a faint, distorted shadow of his figure on the walls. Air currents surged from beneath his feet, lifting his long hair and swirling around him. If anyone had been present, they would have been shocked, because the rising currents encircling Masatsuki showed no signs of being driven by spiritual pressure. In the next instant, with a light step, both Masatsuki and a gust of wind vanished. In a blink, he reappeared before a Kido-enhanced training dummy. His eyes snapped open. Raising his fists, he struck out, Sokatsu. The dummy shattered instantly, breaking apart like fragile ceramic. Exhaling softly, Masatsuki smirked in satisfaction. Guess I really need to create a sense of urgency for myself. It's the only way to push my limits. As he picked up the broken fragments, he studied them carefully, speaking with a hint of emotion. Over the past few months, his training progress had slowed significantly, his spiritual pressure growth had nearly stagnated. Even though his abilities were still improving with increased training intensity, the pace was far from ideal. However, after his battle with the captain-level rebels, something shifted, whether due to sheer determination or some mental breakthrough, his training efficiency had improved dramatically. Too bad those rebels weren't strong enough to really get me into the right state. Masatsuki chuckled, wiping the sweat from his body with a towel. Truthfully, they weren't weak, but they were weaker than Yoruichi and stronger than himself, which made it impossible to go all out. Without Yoruichi, he wouldn't have risked his life in battle. Without him, Yoruichi could have easily taken down the rebels on her own. I miss sparring with Yoruichi. A trace of nostalgia flickered in his gaze. But now, she barely had time. At most, she could visit him once a week. Back when they trained together, she would suppress her spiritual pressure and engage him in specialized sparring sessions. During that time, he was injured almost daily, but the sheer thrill of those battles, the constant struggle to push himself further, was intoxicating. That had also been the period when his strength grew the fastest. Unfortunately, those days were long gone. The conflict between the rebels and the 13th Division of Imperial Guards had only intensified. While Yoruichi wasn't personally fighting, the overwhelming responsibilities of her division left her utterly exhausted. Thinking about this, Masatsuki slowly put on his clothes. He wasn't in a rush. The graduation exam was approaching, and if everything went smoothly, he would be in the 2nd Division within a month. His strength was nowhere near the level of monsters like Yamamoto or Anohana, but he was confident that, with his talent, he could stand among the strongest in the Soul Society. Before that could happen, he had to grow stronger. He had to turn the talent that had earned Yamamoto and Anohana's recognition into real, undeniable power. A resolute light flashed in his eyes as he stepped out of the dojo and pushed open the door. Raindrops fell steadily outside, and patrol officers moved through the courtyard, conducting their routine security checks. Across from him, in the spacious sword art dojo, Renjaku Matsumoto and Jinakamaru were fully immersed in their training. Renjaku held her Zanpakutō firmly, her expression serious as she practiced her swordsmanship with disciplined precision. The sharp edge of her blade sliced through the air, creating sharp, whistling sounds. Jin, meanwhile, sat cross-legged with his Asaki resting on his lap, his expression calm as he meditated in Jinzen. They're working hard, Masatsuki observed with satisfaction, smiling as Anohana approached. She spoke in her usual gentle tone. They're good kids. The 62nd district of Rukongai truly is a rare gem, producing 3 geniuses at once. Especially Renjaku. She's improving rapidly. With Sanosuke Yamada, that fanatic, As her lieutenant, she had become the most relaxed captain in the 13th Division of Imperial Guards. Masatsuki smirked, recalling the sharp-tongued officer. Every time he visited the 4th Division, he ended up suffering at Sanosuke's hands, not in battle, but through sheer verbal torment. Boom. A crack several centimeters wide suddenly split open along one of the dojo's pillars. Spiritual pressure surged through the air, drawing the attention of the Shinigami patrolling outside the courtyard. What's going on? Who just released their spiritual pressure? This spiritual pressure. Isn't it that silver-haired kids? The patrol officers glanced toward the dojo, their expressions shifting slightly, but none of them lingered. After a brief moment of curiosity, they resumed their rounds. Masatsuki, however, watched Jin with keen interest as the burst of spiritual pressure settled. Beside him, Rinjaku instinctively reached for her Zanpakutō, ready to say something, but Masatsuki placed a hand on her shoulder and shook his head. She hesitated but stopped just as a low murmur echoed through the dojo. Shinso. The moment the words left Jin's lips, the Asaki in his hands transformed, its blade shortened, its tsuba curved into an S shape, resembling an unassuming wakizashi. You've awakened your Shikai? Masatsuki asked. Jin slowly opened his eyes and gave a small nod. Yeah. Its name is Shinso. Masatsuki's eyes lit up. Want to test its power? Right now. Jin waved a hand dismissively. I can't control it properly yet. No worries, let me see it in action. Masatsuki grinned, resting a hand on Bansho Senran. With Captain Anohana here, there's no need to worry about injuries. Jin hesitated under Masatsuki's eager gaze but eventually gave in. Alright then. Be careful, Masatsuki. Shinso can extend its blade in an instant. He pointed the tip of his Zanpakutō at Masatsuki, hesitated a moment longer as if double-checking his aim, then finally called out the release command, shoot to kill, Shinso. Whoosh. The short blade extended at lightning speed, shooting forward like a spear. It was fast, but in Masatsuki's eyes, not fast enough. The difference in their spiritual pressure was clear. Unfazed, he let out a quiet chuckle, smoothly drawing Bansho Senran and giving a light swing to intercept the thrust. Their blades clashed, sending sparks flying, before Shinso's extended blade embedded itself into the ceiling. Jin exhaled in relief. No accidents. If Masatsuki had moved even slightly in the wrong direction, there would have been no talking his way out of it. But before he could fully relax, he felt a surge of spiritual pressure behind him and let out a resigned sigh. Rinjaku had drawn her Zanpakutō, her voice ringing with anger. Jin. It was obvious to everyone, she was furious. I told you I couldn't control it yet. Jin muttered helplessly as Shinso retracted back into its short form. Still caught up in the thrill of witnessing a new Shikai, Masatsuki quickly stepped in to smooth things over. Chapter 45, Kido Exam Shino Academy, Kido Training Ground. The students slowly made their way into the dojo. As the doors opened, the Ozaki trio, led by Masatsuki, stepped into the open training ground. The moment he entered, Masatsuki couldn't help but show a hint of surprise. This doesn't quite match the exam I remember. Shino Academy is the only institution in Seoul society dedicated to training Shinigami, but in reality, its annual enrollment is quite limited, rarely exceeding 200 students. Out of those 200, it's considered impressive if even a fifth successfully graduate. Geniuses aren't common, and only nobles are born with naturally high spiritual pressure, an unchanging reality in Seoul society. Because he was from Rukongai, Masatsuki had been deemed a genius upon admission with a spiritual pressure rank of 16. Even within the academy, both prodigies and noble heirs were few and far between. Most students were the children of ordinary Shinigami, so Shino Academy graduates typically reached only a spiritual pressure rank of 20. Anyone surpassing that threshold was either an exceptional talent, appearing once in several years, or a noble. Yet, what Masatsuki saw now was beyond his expectations. Not only was the number of examinees larger than usual, but over 20 had reached the level of professional Shinigami. More shockingly, a few even possessed spiritual pressure surpassing rank 12. This year, many students applied for early graduation. Some are nobles, while the rest come from Rukongai or commoner backgrounds, but all of them are exceptionally talented. Aizen had just finished demonstrating his Shikai when he approached Masatsuki Ozaki, lowering his voice. As for why they applied for early graduation, it's said to be because of someone. But who could that be? To make them care so much? Rinjaku Matsumoto and Jinakamaru, standing nearby, exchanged startled glances. Masatsuki, however, merely chuckled. Aizen's presence here was no surprise at all. If he had gone out of his way to deliver a warning, then the person in question could only be him. It made perfect sense. The Tsunayashiro clan held the greatest influence among the noble families in Siri Itai, dominating the Central 46 with their allies. For someone like Masatsuki, a lowly outcast from Rukongai, to openly defy them, there was only one possible response: kill one as an example to the rest. Otherwise, no one would fear them anymore. Now, an opportunity had conveniently presented itself, an accident waiting to happen. These minor nobles and commoners, ever the loyal underlings, naturally had to prove themselves. Even making a good impression could be beneficial. If they pleased the right people, a single offhand remark might elevate them, or their families, to greater heights. "Thank you for the warning, Aizen-sensei," Masatsuki Ozaki said. "I was just making an idle comment, nothing more," Aizen replied with a light chuckle, adjusting his black-framed glasses before turning and walking away. As Aizen walked away, Masatsuki smiled and nodded. "Interesting. So those people are all enemies?" Renjaku asked, looking into the distance. The group had been watching them closely, their gazes anything but friendly. "They're classmates." "What enemies?" Masatsuki let out a short laugh before turning to Renjaku and Jin, lowering his voice. "Be extra cautious during the Kanso internship. If they show hostility toward us, don't hold back." "Of course. And if you're going to do it cleanly. Your life comes first." He had no interest in noble feuds, but if they were eager to die, so be it. As long as the killings weren't out in the open, even if old man Yamamoto caught wind of it, he wouldn't be blamed. If it came to light, things could get complicated. With the Shioin clan and Yamamoto protecting him, and the Kuachiki clan owing him a favor, chances were high they'd cover for him. He'd likely survive, but imprisonment in the nest of maggots would be a real possibility. Masatsuki had no intention of ending up there. The nest of maggots was under the jurisdiction of the Shioin clan. It wasn't the worst fate, but the future was far brighter in the 13th Division of Imperial Guards. "What about you?" Renjaku frowned, watching him closely. She had heard enough about the Tsunayashiro clan's actions to know what they were capable of. More importantly, they were her enemies. Killing them wouldn't weigh on her conscience in the slightest. What concerned her was Masatsuki's future. Shino Academy isn't run by the Tsunayashiro clan. The instructors overseeing the internship were handpicked by Master Yamamoto and Headmaster Sato. Masatsuki smiled at Renjaku and Jin, who was deep in thought. The Kanso internship takes place in the world of the living, outside of Siriitei's control. Danger is to be expected. Accidents happen all the time. He lowered his voice. If they make a move, eliminate them all, no loose ends. The two exchanged a glance before nodding silently. If Masatsuki said so, then they'd go all in. They had followed him for years and survived Rokongai's harsh streets. In a life-or-death fight, hesitation was fatal. No matter what happened, they would deal with it together. Next, Masatsuki Ozaki. At the training grounds, the instructor called his name from the roll. A faint smile crossed the man's face. Unlike the other students, this one was a true genius. Masatsuki stepped forward, stopping beside the instructor and offering a respectful bow. "Hado number 4, Byakure." He raised a finger toward the target, white lightning crackling at his fingertip. In the next instant, a bolt of energy shot forward. Boom. The target exploded in a flash of white light, and a deep crater formed 10 meters away. The watching students stood frozen, staring at the shattered ground in stunned silence. "That was Byakure? Are you kidding me? How is it that strong? Did I learn the wrong kind of Byakure or what?" "You idiot, it's the difference in spiritual pressure. Same Kido, different output." Whispers spread through the crowd as shock set in. They had heard the rumors about this first-year prodigy, but now they saw it for themselves. No wonder he was the Captain Commander's disciple. Masatsuki smiled faintly as he noted their reactions. Just as expected. This Byakure was a warning, a reminder to those who underestimated him to step back. Killing too many students would be a hassle to explain to his instructor. He'd rather avoid another lecture. "You performed excellently. Both in destructive power and precision. Full marks. 100. The instructor nodded in approval, signaling for him to return. This student of Shino Academy would one day shake the very foundations of the 13th Division of Imperial Guards. That much, the instructor was sure of. Chapter 46, Becoming Enemies with the instructor's approval. Masatsuki left the examination grounds and made his way toward the crowd. Halfway there, a sudden commotion broke out. A group of nobles and commoners had formed a defensive line, dozens of them gathered closely together. "Useless trash. You can't even handle something this simple?" A furious voice rang out from within the crowd, followed by the sharp crack of a slap. One by one, trembling students in the front row began kneeling, their faces gradually turning pale. Then, a figure clad in noble attire, a Zanpakutō resting at her waist, strutted out with arrogant confidence. The wave of kneeling students spread outward in eerie silence. Asaka Tsunayashiro was furious. She had been eager to represent her family in crushing a rebellious vassal, only for these incompetent fools to disgrace her. What infuriated her even more was that a mere lowborn had dared to defy the Tsunayashiro clan, and yet the people around her could do nothing but tremble in fear. If not for the fact that her personal attendants were barred from participating in the Kanso internship, these Rukongai-born mongrels wouldn't even deserve the privilege of kneeling before her. This was the most humiliating moment of her life. Disgraceful. Clenching her teeth, her dark green hair swayed as she spat out her frustration. Her gaze shifted to two students dressed in Shino Academy uniforms, her strongest servants. Out of my way. Don't block my path. Irritated, she kicked aside a kneeling student in front of her, then looked up to see a young man with delicate features walking toward her. Lady Asaka, I am Tetsuya Tsujikami of the Tsujikami family. By my father's orders, I am here to ensure your safety. Tetsuya approached, knelt on one knee, and greeted her with an ingratiating smile. Asaka barely spared him a glance before scoffing in contempt. Humphrey, a lowly noble I've never even heard of. Why is it just a mere seated officer? Where are the rest of the Tsujikami family? Tetsuya clenched his fists but quickly released them, keeping his voice steady. I am the only one of my generation attending Shino Academy. From now until the end of the Kanso internship, we will protect you together. TCH. I don't expect much from a bunch of sniveling weaklings. Whatever. The Kanso internship won't last long, so I'll tolerate it for now. She spoke carelessly, completely ignoring the sour expressions of those around her. To her, these cowards who quaked at the mere sight of Masatsuki weren't worth a second glance. Her gaze wandered until it landed on someone else, and in that instant, her eyes gleamed. The greed and hunger in her expression made Jinokamaru instinctively frown. Uncomfortable, he took a step back. Well. This one's quite the looker. Asaka ran her eyes up and down Jin, her gaze invasive and appraising. Rinjaku Matsumoto's expression turned odd. Jin's face stiffened, and he unconsciously took another step back. He had heard plenty of rumors about nobles who kept up a refined facade while indulging in all manner of depravity behind closed doors. If she had really set her sights on him. Such a shame you're still so young. It'll be years before you grow up, and I don't have that kind of patience. I prefer strong, powerful men. Asaka Tsunayashiro's gaze shifted away from Jinokamaru, landing on the figure behind him. A flush of excitement spread across her delicate features. Her eyes burned with greed and possessiveness, an obsession so twisted it was almost incomprehensible. Like a spoiled child laying eyes on a new toy they had never seen before, her expression gleamed with unchecked desire. Rinjaku stiffened, her body tensing before her teeth clenched in barely restrained anger. Who are you? Asaka propped her chin in one hand, her breathing slightly uneven. A large hand came to rest on Rinjaku's head, ruffling her hair in a calming gesture. He gently pulled her behind him before stepping forward, approaching the smirking woman at an unhurried pace. His tall frame blocked out the sunlight, casting a looming shadow over Asaka. Looking down at the so-called noble lady, he smiled. Shino Academy student, Masatsuki Ozaki. A pleasure to meet you, Lady Tsunayashiro. The deep, magnetic tone of his voice carried through the silent training grounds. Masatsuki Ozaki? Asaka was momentarily taken aback, then let out a laugh. So, you're the lowborn who dared to provoke the Tsunayashiro clan? She paused briefly before continuing in the same amused tone. I must say, I didn't expect you to look like this. Not bad. But why choose to make enemies of us? Masatsuki chuckled, the curve of his lips making him appear almost like an easygoing, cheerful young man. No, Lady Asaka, I never intended to be your enemy. I simply wanted to earn a good score and avoid disgracing Captain Commander Yamamoto. Asaka blinked in surprise before a pleased smile spread across her face. Well said. As expected of the Captain Commander's disciple, completely different from these pathetic weaklings. Masatsuki's smile remained, but there was no warmth in it. The 13th Division of Imperial Guards exists to protect Syriite AI. I will soon be joining the ranks, and serving the nobility is both my duty and responsibility. Rinjaku and Jin exchanged bewildered glances, utterly baffled by his words. They knew Masatsuki well enough to understand he wasn't the type to lower his head so easily. If he were, he wouldn't have caused such a mess in the first place. And yet, judging by his tone, he was clearly up to something. Masatsuki took a step closer, leaning in slightly as he spoke in a quiet voice. Lady Asaka, with your status and position, there's really no need to concern yourself with someone like me, is there? You may have heard of me before. If you don't mind, I'd like to offer you a small gift, as a token of goodwill. Asaka's eyes narrowed as she accepted the slip of paper from his hand. Upon reading it, a satisfied smirk curled her lips. She carefully tucked the note away before locking her greedy gaze onto him once more, her laughter carrying a seductive lilt. Very good. I'll be waiting for you. With your talent, joining the 13th Division of Imperial Guards would be a waste. Wouldn't it be far better to marry into the Tsunayashiro clan and become a noble instead? A collective gasp rippled through the gathered students. Disbelieving glances were exchanged, as if they weren't sure they had heard correctly. Rinjaku, listening from a short distance away, furrowed her brows, her chest rising and falling with restrained anger. Masatsuki simply smiled and shook his head. You must be joking, Lady Asaka. Asaka nodded in response. You still have time to think it over. The Tsunayashiro clan is always generous when it comes to geniuses. With that, she turned and walked away without a second glance, the students trailing behind her, too afraid to even breathe loudly. As he watched her leave, the smile on Masatsuki's face slowly faded. Chapter 47, The Gloomy Sun That Afternoon. World of the Living. Masatsuki, what exactly is going on with you and that woman? Rinjaku swung her fists at him, her soft punches landing harmlessly on his chest. She had never interfered with Masatsuki's antics before, but even she had her limits. It was one thing when it came to Yoruichi and the others, but Asaka Tsunayashiro? That woman didn't seem like someone to be trusted. What do you mean, what's going on? I don't get it. Masatsuki held her close, his face unreadable. Jinikamaru gave him a complicated look, then suddenly widened his eyes, his voice uncertain. Masatsuki. You're not planning to kill her here, are you? Masatsuki merely smirked and stayed silent. Rinjaku's anger flared, her cheeks puffing up as tears welled in her eyes. Masatsuki, say something. You really do know me well, Jin, he sighed, finally breaking the silence. His hand brushed over the hilt of Bansho Senran. It's about time. She's here. His gaze shifted into the distance, his voice eerily calm. She's here? Rinjaku and Jin froze. Masatsuki didn't name her, but they both knew exactly who he meant. But why? They had been talking just fine moments ago. What had suddenly changed his mind? Then, they recalled something small but strange. Ever since they had arrived in the world of the living, Masatsuki had been glancing off into the distance now and then, as if waiting for something. Before they could react, he had already released Rinjaku, his eyes turning cold. Masatsuki. A voice rang in his ears. He turned to see Jin stepping closer. After a brief pause, Jin spoke seriously. Are you sure about this? That's the Tsunayashiro clan, one of the 4 great noble houses. No Shinigami would dare do something like this. And even though she's our enemy, now's not the right time to kill her. Maybe we should wait and come up with a plan. To kill the heir of the Tsunayashiro clan. He didn't say the words out loud. He had never imagined himself even thinking something so reckless. But now that the thought had taken root, he was surprised by how unbothered he felt. Damn it. He really was getting infected by this thick-headed idiot. Jin let out a wry chuckle and shook his head. Masatsuki suddenly laughed. Jin, I'm sure of it. I'm going. Why? Jinikamaru asked, frowning in confusion. Masatsuki's smile didn't fade, but his tone turned cold and deliberate. This isn't some impulsive decision. I have 3 reasons for killing her. First, as you've probably noticed, she's the backbone of their group, their real leader. Which makes her our true enemy. Second, she wants me dead. It doesn't matter whether she recognized me or not, before or after, it was always her intention. But she's too young. The moment she saw me, she realized who I was, but she couldn't hide the murderous intent in her eyes, not just toward me, but toward all of us. Third, she's too clever. The fact that she was willing to play along proves she's not just some lunatic. People like her are dangerous. If we don't take this chance now, she'll become a problem we'll regret later. A cruel grin spread across Masatsuki's face. A foreseeable threat should be eliminated before it ever has the chance to take root. The two stood in the depths of the forest, locked in a distant gaze. Sunlight filtered through the canopy, casting patterns of light and shadow over them. Yet to Jin, the sunlight felt colder than the shade. It chilled him to the bone. Masatsuki's grin only grew, his expression bordering on madness. The Tsunayashiro clan, one of the 4 great noble houses. Such a grand title. But do you know how long I've put up with them? I've had enough of these clowns prancing around in front of me. I'm not the type to sit back and wait for things to happen. This woman will be the first. His tone turned almost amused. Something no one dares to do? Well, starting now, someone dares. The words hit Jin like a lightning strike, sending a shiver through his body. Perhaps it was because Masatsuki had always been so kind to them, so gentle, so indulgent. At some point, he had forgotten just how ruthless and terrifying this man could be. And yet, it was because of that very ruthlessness that he and Rinjaku were still alive. They had learned how to kill from him. Their first kill had been under his watchful eyes. Jin's hands trembled, not from fear, but from something else entirely. Excitement. His fists clenched as he lifted his head, determination burning in his eyes. "I'm coming with you." Masatsuki smiled, as if he had been waiting for that exact answer. Then, without hesitation, he rejected him. "No need. It'll be easier if I go alone. Besides, even if something happens to me, Rinjaku still needs someone to protect her. And this has nothing to do with strength. If you stay behind and keep an eye on her, I can act without hesitation. I'll be back soon." With that, Masatsuki turned and left, not looking back. Jin stood frozen in place, watching his figure disappear into the depths of the forest. Only then did he realize his back was drenched in cold sweat. "For us." He thought of those 2 words Masatsuki always said. After a long silence, he suddenly bowed deeply in the direction Masatsuki had gone. Even though there was no one left to see it, Jin found himself looking up at the sky. The bright sunlight reflected off the gray earth, glimmering like silver, dazzling his eyes. A memory resurfaced. He froze, lowering his gaze to his hands, and the distant echoes of a past life reached his ears. "Get that brat away. What the hell is he doing? Damn it. Let go of him. I'm warning you, don't get yourself into trouble. We barely have enough food thanks to that new guy, and now you're stealing from us?" He still remembered the pain of the beating. The snarling faces of starving souls, surrounding him with their rusted blades. Back then, he had looked up at the sky, the only source of light, and wished he could survive on sunlight alone, like a tree or a blade of grass. Ugh! A scream jolted him back to the present. By the time he snapped out of it, the ones who had been threatening him were already on the ground, their blood staining the grass. A tall man with long black hair stood amidst the carnage, a bloodied katana in his hand. The crimson splattered across his face only made his beauty more unnerving. He looked like a dark sun, radiating an eerie, inescapable presence. The man knelt in front of him, his voice warm and inviting. "Hey, kid, you alright? Silver hair, huh? Pretty rare. Not gonna lie, I used to dream about having long silver hair myself. Maybe a pair of mismatched eyes to go with it. Picture this, one glance, and boom. I shout Amaterasu, and whoever I see gets engulfed in black flames that never go out. Sounds cool, right? Anyway, what's your name, kid?" Jin hesitated, opening just one eye, the other too swollen to lift. "Ikamaru. Jin Ikamaru." Chapter 48, No Need for That. A dark light? It must have been a shadow. How could I have been so wrong, thinking that guy was glowing? Jin Ikamaru looked up at the sun hanging high in the sky and narrowed his eyes. There's no such thing as a dark sun. He clenched his fists. Masatsuki was right. Going with him would be pointless. With his current strength, he wasn't qualified to help. But staying behind? That was something he could do. Unlike Masatsuki, Rinjaku wasn't as sharp when it came to things outside of him. She wasn't stupid, but her thoughts were always fixated on Masatsuki, leaving little room for anything else. Someone had to stay and watch over her. A few moments later, Masatsuki arrived alone in the northern part of the forest. The terrain stretched into rolling mountains, thick with lush greenery. Birds sang in the trees, the scent of flowers drifted through the air. It was a peaceful place. A fitting location for a final rest. Ensuring no one had noticed his movements, he pressed 2 fingers to the ground. His spiritual pressure pulsed outward in an invisible ripple. "Found you." A faint light appeared in his vision, marking a location deep within the dense forest. Detection type Kido. A technique Yoruichi had taught him. Raising his fingers, he could clearly sense the lingering trace of his own faint spiritual pressure. With the direction confirmed, he rose to his feet. This was a risky move, no doubt. But Masatsuki wasn't the reckless type. He hadn't survived the cutthroat streets of Rukongai, let alone become the dominant force in District 1, through sheer strength alone. Without intelligence, he would have been outmaneuvered and killed countless times by now. Before entering the world of the living, he had confirmed with the instructors that the only ones sent to guard Asaka Tsunayashiro were students from the academy. A group of students who had never even experienced real combat. Which meant that, despite their spiritual pressure and techniques, against him, they wouldn't stand a chance. That was all he needed to know. With that thought, Masatsuki stepped forward. A pulse of spiritual pressure expanded beneath his feet. In an instant, his spiritual energy gathered at his soles, forming an invisible platform that allowed him to stand in midair. This was a technique rarely executed in Soul Society, gathering spiritual pressure at one's feet to create a foothold for flight. In the world of the living, where Rishi density was lower, it wasn't difficult. But in Soul Society, where Rishi was far too concentrated, such a feat was nearly impossible. The next second, Masatsuki stepped forward and ascended into the sky, vanishing into the clouds. At the same time, in the dense northern forest of the Kanso internship site, 4 elegantly dressed figures sat atop a large boulder, the sunlight filtering through the green leaves, casting shifting shadows over them. What's with this damn weather? The sun is so irritating. Asaka Tsunayashiro raised a hand to shield her eyes, squinting in annoyance at the bright sky. Sunlight streamed through the trees, illuminating the ground and grass with a golden glow, painting the lush forest in dazzling light. What should have been a scene brimming with life only made Asaka feel irritated. Lady Asaka. The only escorts assigned for this internship are 12 students from Rukongai. A student dressed in a Shino Academy uniform, with noble attire peeking out from underneath, stepped forward respectfully and bowed deeply. With the 2 of us and Tsujikami-sama, there are 15 in total dedicated to ensuring your safety during the internship. Asaka waved her hand dismissively, her displeasure evident. Why are they all from Rukongai? Where are the noble students? As the heir to the Tsunayashiro clan, she had her own personal guards, but due to the special circumstances of the Kanso internship, family retainers were not permitted to participate. The only exception was if a guard happened to be a graduate of Shino Academy and was officially taking part in the internship. Normally, this wouldn't pose much of a risk. The academy instructors stationed at the perimeter were just for show, most of them held the strength of mid to high-ranking seated officers. The guard hesitated before responding cautiously. Reporting to Lady Asaka, we sent word to the noble families, but many declined, saying they wished to complete their own internships first. In my humble opinion, it's likely that they fear Masatsuki Ozaki's strength and don't dare to come. Hearing this, Asaka clicked her tongue impatiently. While both noble and Rukongai-born followers attached themselves to the Tsunayashiro clan for power, there was a fundamental difference between them. The students from Rukongai were powerless and desperate, while noble students had wealth and status. Naturally, they wouldn't risk their lives unnecessarily. The clan never expected them to be truly loyal, what mattered was the power of the families behind them. Oh, and one more thing. Asaka paused before continuing. That man, Masatsuki Ozaki. The guard stiffened, recalling the handsome man's earlier gift. Bowing again, he asked cautiously, Lady Asaka, do you wish to call off the plan? After all, he is Captain Commander Yamamoto's disciple, and he seems to be aligning himself with the clan. If he's willing to accept the family's goodwill, perhaps we should report this to the elders after the internship. Such a contribution would surely solidify your position as heir. Asaka suddenly laughed, as if she had just heard a particularly amusing joke. She waved a hand, sneering coldly. No, I'm not saying we shouldn't kill him, I'm saying we wait. Let him leave this place first, then have the family send someone to take care of him later. The guard froze, struggling to follow her reasoning. Had she lost her mind? The Tsunayashiro clan held immense power, enough to decide life and death with a word, but Masatsuki wasn't just anyone, he was the disciple of Captain Commander Yamamoto. If someone like that was offering his allegiance, shouldn't they be welcoming him with open arms? Even if they wanted him dead, they would need a valid justification. The clan elders would never approve an execution without reason. Noticing the doubt on the guard's face, Asaka's expression darkened. Without warning, she lifted her foot and stomped on his head, forcing him to kneel. Are you questioning my decision? And no. I would never. I was simply being foolish. The guard prostrated himself on the ground, face pale, body trembling uncontrollably. Satisfied, Asaka smirked and scoffed. If you must know my reasoning. Her eyes narrowed, her voice laced with malice. There's no way to tell if his loyalty is genuine or just an act. The elders have already promised me, if I can kill him, I'll be one of the heirs to the clan. So why take the gamble? Why risk trusting him, hoping his allegiance will please the elders? There's no need for that. But before we kill him, I suppose it wouldn't hurt to have a little fun first. With that, she extended a delicate hand from her sleeve, hooking a finger under Tetsuya Tsujikami's chin. The 2 guards immediately understood her intent and silently stepped away. Chapter 49, the show begins. Are you two alright? The students couldn't help but ask, glancing at the guards' disheveled appearances. We're fine. To receive Lady Asaka's favor is an honor. The guards laughed proudly, casually dusting off their clothes and straightening the noble linings beneath their uniforms. Ha! Exhaling, one of them felt nothing but satisfaction. So what if they had to grovel before that woman? These students still had to treat them with respect. They relished this feeling. To curry favor with the Tsunayashiro clan, these so-called Shino Academy geniuses humbled themselves before mere guards. Though they weren't of noble birth, these foolish lowborns still bowed to their masters, their eyes filled with admiration, not just for the nobles they served, but for the attendants at their side as well. That intoxicating sense of superiority made them forget their place, as if they were no longer mere servants but true aristocrats, while those beneath them were destined to serve. What drove them to kneel wasn't loyalty, it was something far more repulsive. From the woods, the sound of birdsong gradually mixed with faint, muffled groans and the bright, manic laughter of a young woman. Lady Asaka has started. I wonder if the young lady will reward us once she's finished? As if recalling something particularly enjoyable, the guards exchanged knowing smiles. The students remained silent, staring at them. It was only then that they realized something: these two guards weren't bad-looking. Even Tetsuya Sujikami, standing among them, could be considered handsome. However, after witnessing Masatsuki Ozaki's appearance, their perception of beauty had been temporarily skewed, making them overlook the three men entirely. Just as the guards were about to speak, they suddenly froze. They noticed the students weren't looking at them anymore. Instead, they were staring past them, their faces twisted in terror. A gust of wind howled through the trees, sending a chill down their spines. Slowly, the guards turned around, their eyes widened. Not far away, deep in the forest, a massive creature with a white mask hovered in the air. Its enormous, pale wings beat against the wind, stirring up a violent gale. One of the guards swallowed hard, his hand slowly moving toward his weapon. Hey hey! The monster laughed. Then, in a blur, it lunged toward them. The soft, lilting sounds rose into an ecstatic crescendo. Deep in the forest, the eldest daughter of the Tsunayashiro clan moved with reckless abandon, her hands slicing through the air like a bloodthirsty banshee. Her nails raked mercilessly across the young noble's body. Her expression was wild, her face twisted with a sick, euphoric smile. Slash. Snap. Two sharp sounds overlapped. Tetsuya clenched his teeth, his body covered in thin, overlapping cuts. The pain was searing, but he didn't dare make a sound. He bit down hard, forcing a smile onto his handsome face, one that barely held. This woman is insane. What? Enjoying yourself? You bastard. Asaka Tsunayashiro suddenly roared, clawing at his face with both hands, her grip tightening with each passing second. You worthless man. What kind of expression is that? You should be looking at me with defiance. Take a good look at yourself. Do you see anything remotely like a man in you, you pathetic excuse for one? The noble heir understood immediately and adjusted his expression. Hatred, disgust, disdain, these were the emotions he truly wanted to show. But the person in his mind wasn't the arrogant woman before him. It was his father, the ever-distant head of the Sujikami family. Why him? Why not another member of the clan? Why did he have to bear the cost of their ambitions? Rage flared within him. He wanted to resist, but the woman seized his wrist before he could act. Very good. Very good. Asaka sneered and slapped him across the face. That's the look I want to see. You wretched men should always wear that expression before I break you completely. Satisfied, she rose to her feet. The noble tried to follow, only to be forced back down by the heel pressing into his chest. What's the rush? The real fun is just beginning. Her smile was sickeningly sweet. She picked up her Zanpakutō and traced its cold edge through the air. The gleam of the blade sent a chill down the noble's spine, instantly snapping him out of his daze. Enjoy it while you can. You're about to experience pleasure like never before. Looking down at him with cruel amusement, she pressed the blade to his chest, cutting a shallow line into his skin. But just then, she saw it. The reflection in his wide, terrified eyes. He was staring straight at the sky. A strange scent filled the air, making her frown. A scent she knew all too well. The scent she loved most. Blood. A thick, overwhelming stench of blood. She lifted her head. Two bodies lay before her, her own guards. Dark red liquid pooled around them, staining the ground. As her gaze stretched further, more corpses came into view, their numbers growing with every second, until the crimson hue swallowed her vision entirely. Screams echoed through the forest. Amidst the carnage, a tall figure in a blue and white school uniform walked leisurely through the blood-soaked ground. Long black hair billowed behind him like the cloak of a phantom untouched by the filth of the world. In an instant, the chaos around them fell into an eerie silence. Asaka's eyes widened in shock. A choked gasp escaped her lips. You! She locked her gaze onto Masatsuki Ozaki, who hovered in the air, while the corner of her eye took in the devastation around her. Dismembered limbs littered the once vibrant forest floor. Further beyond, desperate cries for help rang out, wails of agony, frantic voices shouting, "Find Lady Asaka! A hollow has broken through." A hollow? Where? It wasn't here. Then, a bone-chilling realization seized her. Her skin prickled. Her scalp went numb. Shino Academy student, Masatsuki Ozaki. A pleasure to meet you, Lady Tsunayashiro. With a warm smile, Masatsuki extended a hand to the woman trembling on the ground, the perfect image of a refined gentleman. Whoosh! The sharp whistle of steel slicing through air. Asaka swung her blade at him. Masatsuki simply raised 2 fingers, effortlessly catching the incoming strike. With a light flick, the blade was knocked aside. Not bad accuracy. Pity your strength and speed don't match. You. Seeing her attack fail completely, Asaka's heart pounded in panic. She stumbled back 2 steps, but forced herself to maintain her composure. Masatsuki Ozaki, what do you think you're doing? Don't forget who I am. Masatsuki let out a quiet chuckle. What I'm doing? Don't you think that's a rather funny question? He deliberately let his gaze roam over her, then winked playfully. What do you think, Lady Asaka? She froze for a moment. Then, unbelievably, she forced a flattering smile onto her face. I'm willing. Please spare me. No matter what you want, I'll comply. As Masatsuki stepped closer, the glow in her eyes changed. From fear, to murderous intent. Die. Chapter 50, My Apologies Cry Out, Bakunsho. The moment Asaka Tsunayashiro called out, her Zanpakutō elongated into a thin, needle-like double-edged blade. In a flash, it pierced straight through Masatsuki Ozaki's body. Splurt. Bright red blood spilled from Masatsuki's chest, soaking into the pristine white of his uniform. Asaka twisted the hilt, laughing hysterically. You lowly, pathetic fool. Did you really think you could break me? That you were worthy of conquering me? You didn't even bother using Shikai and dared to stand before me. Did you think that just because we're in the world of the living, I'd be afraid of you? Shinigami ranked lieutenant and above had their spiritual pressure restricted to 20% when entering the world of the living. That meant a Shinigami with 5th rank spiritual pressure would be reduced to the level of a 6th rank, merely equivalent to a seated officer. Had she brought Noble Academy students with her, they could have overwhelmed him before he had the chance to lift his restrictions. But all she had at her disposal were a handful of Rukongai students, none of whom had reached seated officer level. The odds of her plan succeeding had been far too low. That was the real reason she had called off the ambush. All that talk of gifts, of marriage, what a joke. No matter how handsome he was nothing compared to the position of family head. I'm the one most fit to inherit the Tsunayashiro clan, Her words cut off abruptly. Masatsuki's figure wavered before her eyes, shifting. No longer him, but Tetsuya Tsujikami. Pain erupted in her chest. The laughter died in her throat. She slowly looked down. A pure white, beautiful blade had run her through. No wonder you're from the Tsunayashiro clan. Even in a moment like this, you had the courage to fight back, Masatsuki said, pulling his sword free from her body with a casual flick. Dark blood splattered onto the forest floor. But when did you get the idea that I hadn't used my Shikai? A shrill, agonized scream tore through the woods. Pain surged through Asaka's body, her mind barely able to process what had happened. What kind of ability is this? Was he insane? He had actually dared to strike down a member of the 4 great noble houses. Does he have a death wish? This was an irreconcilable feud with the Tsunayashiro clan. No matter who stood in their way, the clan would hunt them down with relentless vengeance. Even the Central 46 would be shaken by this. This was a line no one in Seoul's society dared to cross. You're too noisy. Masatsuki frowned and swung Bansho Senran impatiently. As the blade moved, Asaka's vision blurred. Then, a bloodied arm fell to the ground. A strangled gasp left her lips. Her body convulsed from the pain, but this time, she didn't scream. Gritting her teeth, she shoved Tetsuya's limp form aside and glared at Masatsuki through bloodshot eyes. Your spiritual pressure. You're not restricted? Masatsuki smiled. Oh, I am restricted. But just recently, I happened to break through to 4th rank spiritual pressure. Asaka's eyes widened in horror. Then, your Zanpakutō, she never got to finish her sentence. Masatsuki's sword was already swinging. Remember the sword art test? When I used my Shikai. Your little lapdogs said I was showing off in front of the teachers and students. But you know. I was showing off. He paused, then smiled coldly. But not for free. The price of seeing my Shikai is your life. Tsunayashiro Asaka never heard his words. Because by the time Masatsuki spoke them, her head had already fallen to the ground. Her lifeless eyes remained frozen in a twisted mix of confusion, disbelief, and terror, all of them reflecting the same undeniable truth: she was dead. Masatsuki narrowed his eyes, a mocking smile curling at the corners of his lips. I originally just wanted to eliminate you as an unstable factor, but I didn't expect a pleasant surprise. Granting your Zanpakutō the power to cut, not a bad ability. Too bad it's wasted in your hands. I'll make good use of it. He rummaged through the scattered clothing nearby and found a small card he had given, a card bearing his name and job description. Are you satisfied with this grand gift? But I'm afraid. Looking down at her from above, his tone remained calm. My services aren't for just anyone. The nobleman, naked and covered in wounds, stared in horror at the 4 noble corpses lying in a pool of blood. As the crimson spread outward, he coughed up blood, his face turning deathly pale. You killed her. Everything before him felt surreal, like a dream. How could someone like this exist? You killed the 4 great noble houses. He murmured over and over, his trembling hand reaching out to touch his blood-soaked body. The warmth of the liquid seeped into his skin, yet the light in his eyes gradually faded. Masatsuki stepped forward, gazing at him indifferently. With a single swing of his blade, the nobleman's head separated from his body. Not long after, all traces of blood in the dense forest had vanished, as if nothing had ever happened. With a final slash from a guard's blade, the white-winged hollow disintegrated into Rishi. Finally got rid of that damned hollow. With strength like that, it was no mere weakling. It could probably rival a high-ranking seated officer. Why would a hollow of that level appear in a Kanso area? My lord, thanks to you. My lord, what's wrong? 2 injured guards stood at the forefront, their expressions grim. Scattered on the ground were a few pieces of clothing, but their owners were nowhere to be seen. How could this be? Where has Lady Asaka gone? The students, who had just breathed a sigh of relief, suddenly turned pale, tension gripping them once more. That hollow just now. It seemed to have come from here. Shut up. Go search for him. Turn this place inside out if you have to, but find Lady Asaka. The guards' faces darkened, a bad premonition rising in their chests. One of them shouted furiously, if you don't find him, you're all dead. At that moment, their spiritual pressure flared without restraint, all traces of their earlier relief gone. Their urgency far surpassed that of the students. If something happened to Asaka Tsunayashiro, they were as good as dead. The students' legs nearly gave out beneath them. Not far away, Jinakamaru and Ranjaku Matsumoto sensed the sudden surge of spiritual pressure and looked up sharply. Don't just stand there. The Kanso internship isn't over yet. Masatsuki's voice rang out from behind them. He stood there, holding 3 unconscious children in his arms, spiritual beings in their soul forms. If you don't finish the internship, you'll have to spend another year at Shino Academy before you can reapply for graduation. Don't say I didn't warn you. A flicker of doubt passed through their eyes, but both were wise enough not to ask questions. Judging by how relaxed Masatsuki seemed, things probably weren't as bad as they looked. Renjaku smiled and asked, Masatsuki, where'd you pick up these kids? Masatsuki shot her a look. I didn't pick them up. I found them in a nearby town. That place isn't safe, hollows show up all the time. It wouldn't be safe for these 3 brats to stay there. So I figured we'd let them help out with the Kanso internship. And send them to the Soul Society along the way. Chapter 51, Central 46 Chambers. A few days later. An ancient Japanese-style estate, lavish beyond measure, stood with towering black-roofed pavilions that seemed to pierce the sky. The Tsunayashiro clan residence. Clusters of tall, time-worn buildings stood together, their unpainted pillars, beams, and walls exuding an air of antiquity. This was the home of the noble, one of the great rulers of Soul Society, one of the 4 great noble clans, the Tsunayashiro clan. Elderly men, draped in opulent robes, sat in elevated seats. The towering walls were engraved with depictions of ancient trees and vast mountains, radiating an aura of absolute authority. Sinners, tell us what happened. At the center of the council chamber, 2 men knelt, both reduced to barely recognizable figures after brutal torture. They were missing limbs, their faces smeared with blood, their breaths faint and shallow. One of them spat out a broken tooth and weakly murmured, Lady Asaka is dead. The elders exchanged cold glances before closing their eyes and shaking their heads. The death of Asaka Tsunayashiro meant little in itself. What mattered was that she bore the Tsunayashiro name, and her fate reflected upon the honor of the clan. How did she die? A witness saw a hollow attack Lady Asaka. The man trembled violently. Forcing himself to stay upright despite his failing body, he swallowed the blood pooling in his mouth and continued, You were her guards, yet you had to hear of your master's death from an outsider. What use do you have left? Go prove your loyalty. Thank you, my lords. Thank you, my lords. The 2 guards kowtowed frantically, slamming their foreheads against the floor until blood seeped from their wounds. At this moment, living was far more painful than dying. As the family guards dragged the 2 men out of the chamber, one of the elders frowned at the bloodstains on the floor and asked, What should we do next? Have Central 46 issue an order. This matter must be investigated thoroughly. Another elder slammed the table, his voice thundering with rage. And so, the news spread swiftly. The Tsunayashiro clan was thrust into an atmosphere of tense unrest. Loyal death guards, clad in black, moved like specters through the estate, while members from various branches were urgently recalled from afar. Household servants cast anxious glances toward the central pavilion, their hearts filled with dread. A ruler of Soul's society, one of the noble 5 great noble clans, had perished. This was the first unnatural death of a 5 great noble in Soul's society in over 1,000,000 years, since the war 1,000 years ago, when the Quincy invaded. Late that night, Yamamoto was abruptly woken from his sleep by his deputy. Though irritated by the disruption, he suppressed his displeasure and made his way to the Central 46 Compound's Grand Conference Hall without delay. Moving swiftly, he passed by the barracks of the various divisions, walked through the bamboo grove formed by white towers, and crossed multiple gates before arriving at a massive stone wall. The wall was stark white, its stone doors marked with a bold red and black octagonal pattern. Captain Commander Yamamoto. 2 Shinigami from the 7th Division, stationed as guards, bowed respectfully. Yamamoto gave them a brief nod. The guards opened the doors, revealing a familiar wooden bridge. Beneath it lay a crystal-clear pool of water, and at its center stood a structure built from Sekaizuki, spirit-reducing stone. Yamamoto stepped inside, pushing open the great doors of the underground central chamber. The conference room's interior mirrored its exterior, a perfect octagon. The pitch-black floor stretched endlessly, like a bottomless abyss, creating an unsettling sensation of groundlessness. Long tables, arranged in tiered rows, encircled the chamber. Atop each table stood screens marked with numbers, obscuring the occupants behind them. Seated beyond the screens were 46 individuals, nobles and elders of the Soul Society. At the highest position sat the 6 judges, and below them, 40 wise men of the council. These 46 individuals represented the pinnacle of power in Soul Society, its highest judicial authority. The Central 46 Compound. Captain Commander of the 13th Division of Imperial Guards, Genri Uzai Shigekuni Yamamoto, pays his respects to the wise men and judges, Yamamoto announced as he stepped forward. With each measured step, squares of white light flickered to life beneath his feet. The 6 judges and the 40 wise men showed no sign of displeasure. Instead, faint smiles tugged at their lips, as if trying to ease the tension, though their faces remained hidden from Yamamoto's view. No one seated here was a fool. Their wisdom, honed by years of political maneuvering, made them keenly aware of reality. This old man before them was not someone they could manipulate at will. Even if he played along for now, there was no guarantee he always would. And if the day came when he tired of their games, when he no longer indulged their authority, none among them could stop the blade that could set the world ablaze. The judge seated on the far left, Masao Shioin, waved his hand with a soft chuckle. Our sharpest blade, Captain Commander of the 13th Division of Imperial Guards, Shigekuni Yamamoto-sama, congratulations on taking a new disciple. Yamamoto's voice was deep and unwavering. There's no need for pleasantries, Your Honor. I know exactly why you've summoned me here. But before we begin, I have a question for all of you. He paused. His gaze, suddenly razor-sharp, swept over the assembled dignitaries like the edge of a drawn sword. Why did you bypass the 13th Division of Imperial Guards, the Onmitsu Kido, and the Kido Corps, and instead send family guards to surround the Shiba clan? The Shiba family was once one of the 5 great noble clans. Even if they have left Siriite Ai, that fact has not changed. The green-haired judge seated at the center scowled and retorted, according to the law, any act of violence against a noble must be met with severe punishment. Asaka Tsunayashiro perished in the world of the living during a Konso training mission, yet we have not even held the 13th Division of Imperial Guards accountable for its failure. Or do you believe that the life of a noble is worth less than that of a mere Rukongai commoner? The moment those words were spoken, tension rippled through the chamber. Even with the screens concealing their faces, the arrogance and fury in his voice were unmistakable. Yet, standing before Siriite Ai's highest authority, Yamamoto remained composed. His tone was as steady as ever. The lives of nobles are important, but that does not justify breaking the law. No matter the crime, it is the 13th Division of Imperial Guards' duty to investigate. To interfere without proper authority is, in itself, a violation of the law. Furthermore, there is not a shred of evidence proving that Masatsuki Ozaki was at fault in this incident. Shioin Masao nodded in agreement. I believe the Captain Commander is right. Let's not forget, 20 years ago, a member of the Tsunayashiro clan, a graduate of the academy, committed a crime so severe that it warranted immediate execution. Yet, out of consideration for his connection to the Captain Commander, the judges and wise men commuted his sentence, reducing it to 300 years of house arrest. If you could show leniency then, why be so merciless now to the Captain Commander's new disciple? As Yamamoto and Shioin Masao's unrelenting words echoed through the chamber, the elders and judges of the Tsunayashiro clan opened their mouths, yet no words came forth. For the first time, they were speechless. Frustration swelled in their chests. Back then, they had only sought to protect a promising clan member while reaffirming the Tsunayashiro clan's authority. Who would have thought that decision would now come back to silence them? And it was all because of those meddling old family elders, who had, for the sake of a mere branch family member, brought disgrace upon the entire clan today. Chapter 52, Investigation. The green-haired judge gritted his teeth and clenched his fists, a mix of doubt and confusion flickering in his heart. Genri Uzai Shigakuni Yamamoto, as the captain commander of the 13th Division of Imperial Guards, had always demonstrated unwavering loyalty to the Siriite AI. His dedication was highly esteemed among the members of Central 46, even surpassing that of the noble families. In every past meeting, he had never once defied or questioned their orders. And yet, today, he openly challenged the wise men and judges of Central 46. This was highly unusual. Yamamoto gazed at the silent wise men and judges before speaking slowly. I will dispatch members of the 13th Division of Imperial Guards to investigate this incident. You need only wait for the results. The assembly was momentarily stunned. Masatsuki Ozaki. Was he truly worth this level of concern? The green-haired judge, now composed, a sharp glint flashing in his eyes, took a deep breath and said evenly, leave this matter to the 13th Division of Imperial Guards. This is your responsibility. The deaths of the 4 noble clans affect the prestige of the Siriite AI. The truth must be uncovered. I trust that His Excellency the Captain Commander will do his utmost to provide us with a satisfactory answer. Furthermore, this incident must remain confidential. The information must not spread. What do you all think? Agreed, Masao Shioin spoke. The judge beside him, wearing a kinsign, followed up. Seconded. Agreed. One after another, voices rang out in agreement. At this point, they all understood that continuing the meeting would serve no purpose. The Tsunayashiro clan was infamous for its madness, but that didn't mean they were fools. On the contrary, as one of the 5 great noble clans, each generation produced a select few with exceptional abilities and formidable spiritual pressure. These individuals received top-tier elite education, trained by the finest masters in various disciplines, and underwent rigorous selection processes. Only after proving their worth did they gradually ascend to seats among the wise men and judges of Central 46. If the Tsunayashiro clan were merely a band of lunatics, they would have long since fallen into ruin, never securing their place as the most powerful noble house in the Siriite AI. The judges and wise men of Central 46, who represented the highest authority in Siriite AI, were the elite among nobles. Their privileged upbringing ensured they would always safeguard the rule and dominance of the aristocracy. It was inevitable. Aside from the king who resided in the heavens, the nobles were the supreme rulers of soul society. This was their unshakable law, their absolute bottom line. It could never be crossed, nor was it ever open for debate. World of the Living. Shino Academy's Konso training area. The sun shone brightly in the cloudless sky, casting light over the endless forest. Yes, Captain Commander. According to the information provided by Shino Academy, I have arrived at the scene. Standing on the grass, Isshin Shibo used Kido to report back, his face weary. He scratched at himself absent-mindedly while quickly scanning the area. There aren't many obvious traces at the scene. Yes, I understand. After disconnecting the communication Kido, Isshin let out a long, frustrated sigh. Sending all of us here. The Captain Commander must really be taking this incident seriously. A woman with braided hair, dressed in a shayakusho and wearing pink-framed glasses, appeared beside him. Tied to her arm was the emblem of the Bird of Paradise unit. Isshin nodded but inwardly found it excessive. The grass was clean, with only a few scattered pieces of clothing. The occasional slash mark from a blade could be seen, but there was no way to discern what had actually happened here. This was the frustrating thing about being a Shinigami. If your spiritual pressure wasn't strong enough, you couldn't even preserve a corpse. If it was too strong, you couldn't easily dispose of one either. By the time Misaka Tsunayashiro's death was noticed by the guards and students, her body had already vanished without a trace. Now, days had passed. Evidence wouldn't just appear out of thin air. At this point, even sending them here, what was the point? All this trouble over a dead noble from one of the 4 great clans. It wasn't that Isshin didn't value human life, nor was he prejudiced against nobles. But deploying this many people was a complete waste of resources. The 13th Division of Imperial Guards didn't have the manpower to spare, especially in these turbulent times. The rebels could use this opportunity to attack more innocent people. Still, no matter how absurd it seemed, this was an order from Central 46 and the Captain Commander. Regardless of his personal opinions, Isshin would do his job properly. His eyes drifted to an open patch of land not far away, and his mouth twitched. Here he was, a 10th Division captain assisting in the investigation, running himself ragged, while the one actually in charge, Shun Sakuraku. That bastard was lounging against a tree, drinking sake, looking like he had nothing to do with any of this. Captain Kiraku. Lisa Yadomaru, noticing Kiraku's laziness, gritted her teeth and shouted in frustration. "We're in the middle of a mission. What do you think you're doing just sitting there?" Hearing her voice, Kiraku raised his hands in surrender, grinning. "You've been glued to those weird books of yours. Doesn't look like you're taking this all that seriously either." Slowly, he set his bottle down, got up, and strolled over. "What have you found?" Isshin asked, clearly annoyed. "Let's see." Kiraku stroked his chin, fingers grazing over his stubble, then adjusted his straw hat as he studied the crime scene intently. Suddenly, he widened his eyes in exaggerated surprise, as if he had stumbled upon something interesting. Then, with dramatic flair, he declared, "Haha, not even a scrap of her remains. Looks like she wasn't strong enough to have reached lieutenant level." Everyone in the area turned to look at him. Isshin Shiba. Lisa Yadomaru. Investigating Shinigami. "I really don't get why the old man sent us here," Kiraku shrugged, lips curling in amusement. "The academy students already explained it, didn't they? A hollow attacked this young lady. We should just report that to the higher-ups and be done with it." But the instructors at Shino Academy said they didn't sense any hollow spiritual pressure. The only traces left behind were blade marks. "Lisa-chan. Didn't they see the hollow with their own eyes?" Kiraku winked, then, without a care in the world, turned and flopped back onto the grass, taking another sip of his drink. "There are plenty of hollows with special abilities. Hiding their spiritual pressure isn't exactly unheard of. This noble lady was just unlucky. She ran into a hollow that could conceal its spiritual pressure and was stronger than her." Lisa furrowed her brows, glancing at Isshin, who remained silent. Then, in a steady voice, she said, "We'll suspend the investigation for now. Let's head back and question the students." Chapter 53, I Stand Above the Heavens. Meanwhile, Soul Society, Western Rukongai District 1, Jinrenin, outskirts. This forested area was once home to one of the 5 great noble clans, the Shiba clan. The mountains weren't vast, and aside from the Shiba estate, only a few small villages dotted the landscape. But due to their noble status, the Shiba family held an unquestioned position of authority here. The nearby villages and towns all revolved around them, and the locals took great pride in serving under their name. Masatsuki Ozaki and Jinigamaru stood by the window, enjoying the gentle breeze. In the distance, groups of wild boars dashed through the forest, accompanied by the sounds of shouting, running, and rustling leaves. The scenery was peaceful, lush trees bore an assortment of fruits, vibrant wildflowers bloomed across the grass, and the fragrant air carried a calming effect. Those troublesome people finally left. Masatsuki exhaled deeply, watching a young child riding a boar in the distance, then asked with a faint smile. "Yes, they withdrew this morning. The 13th Division of Imperial Guards has deployed guards for our protection," Jin replied in a low voice. His expression remained neutral, but beneath that calm facade, his heart was pounding. "The 13th Division of Imperial Guards isn't restricting our movements, so for now, we're safe. Relax." Masatsuki noticed Jin's unease, turned to him with a reassuring smile, and gave his shoulder a light pat. "I only left after confirming her spiritual body had fully dissipated. No matter how thorough their investigation is, they won't find any useful clues. People will believe the truth they expect to see. The noble lady and young master were devoured by hollows, and the students killed the hollows." Jin took a deep swig of sake and rolled his eyes. "Easy for you to say." Even now, just thinking about the sheer magnitude of what they had done sent a cold sweat down his back. They had gone after the 4 great noble clans. The very rulers of Soul Society, those with absolute power and influence. And yet, the moment he learned that Masatsuki had succeeded, he couldn't deny the exhilarating sense of satisfaction deep within him. His mind drifted back to the past year, the constant harassment, the isolation, the threats from those nobles. Perhaps their existence itself was a danger to others. Perhaps their numbers needed to be culled. But the next time, it would have to be done even more discreetly. Otherwise, the consequences could be fatal. Why am I even thinking about this? So, what's our next move? No one's restricting us anymore. Should we report to the 13th Division of Imperial Guards? Jinigamaru asked in a low voice. Masatsuki Ozaki pondered for a moment. It won't be long before the 13th Division of Imperial Guard sends people to investigate. You all need to be ready, don't slip up. We have to work with Master to put on a convincing act. Jin's eyes narrowed slightly, his concern evident. An investigation? Didn't you say they wouldn't find anything useful? Masatsuki chuckled leisurely. They won't. During the killing of Asaka Tsunayashiro, nothing extra was done, aside from eliminating them and using Kyoka Suigetsu's power to deceive everyone. Even if the 13th Division of Imperial Guards investigates the site, all they'll find are scattered clothes. That means their only leads will come from questioning the students and instructors. That's why using Kyokusuagetsu to fabricate the illusion of hollows appearing at the Kanso training site was necessary. Jin, Rinjaku Matsumoto, and I are all academy students. No matter what, we'll be questioned. One person can lie, two can coordinate a story. But 5, 10, or 20 people, each offering seemingly different but ultimately corroborating accounts, all leading to the same conclusion, how would anyone determine the truth? But no matter what, the death of a noble from the 4 great clans is a serious matter. The 13th Division of Imperial Guards has to at least appear to be making every effort. Even if it's all for show, they still need to provide a respectable explanation. Realization dawned on Jin, though he quickly frowned. You think they'll keep digging? Masatsuki shook his head. No. Master wouldn't waste energy on something like this, and the Tsunayashiro clan likely doesn't care much about that woman. I already looked into it, she was from a branch family, not even an official heir. Besides, Kiraku mentioned that Central 46 has ordered complete confidentiality regarding this Kanso training incident. The deaths of the 4 noble heirs are still classified. Aside from the wise men, judges, investigators, and those directly involved, no one else even knows about it. Judging from this, the Tsunayashiro clan doesn't want the matter becoming public. As long as Master provides a reasonable conclusion, they'll accept it. It was obvious, the Tsunayashiro clan was after appearances. They just needed the other noble families to see their stance, to witness the influence they wielded in Sairi Itai, that over the death of a single branch family member, the entire 13th Division of Imperial Guards was mobilized. As long as people saw that, it was enough. Compared to that, the truth behind Asaka Tsunayashiro's death was irrelevant. Listening to Masatsuki's analysis, Jin couldn't help but sigh. I have no idea how you figured all this out. You grew up in Rukongai, yet you understand Sairi Itai's nobles inside and out. It's nothing special. In the world of the living, I was from a minor noble family. The power and influence I had there were nothing compared to Seoul society's great clans, but in some ways, it's all the same. Masatsuki chuckled. To those obsessed with power, a life without value is meaningless. But disgrace? That costs them prestige. Prestige has another meaning in the world of the living. Do you know what it is? Jin shook his head. The reputation of power. Masatsuki lowered his gaze and said slowly, it's the one thing they can never afford to lose. You accounted for all of this? Jin's breath hitched as he exhaled sharply. Then, with a wry smile, he muttered, so everything was in your hands from the start. And yet you keep saying you want to slack off and make me do all the thinking. That's a hell of a lot of pressure. Masatsuki laughed indifferently. Jin, this little trick is nothing. If I didn't have my Zanpakutō's ability, if my spiritual pressure wasn't above that of the instructors and students, no matter how much I schemed, I wouldn't be able to do anything. Strength is the foundation of everything. Cunning and deception are the tools of the weak. What I seek is real power, power that stands at the very peak. With power, I can crush those who dare to judge my fate beneath my feet. He lifted his gaze toward the sun hanging high above, a fierce glint in his eyes. No one starts at the top. Not you. Not me. Not even the gods. One day, I will stand above all, overlooking the world, ruling over all creation. Chapter 54, If I Were a Master. Hey, did you hear? A man moved into Wayne-san's house. I know. They seem really close. Do you think they're... I never thought this day would come. Hard to believe, huh? Rukongai District 3, Hokkaido. Keion Shiba sipped his tea, shaking his head as he tried to dismiss the gossip as nothing more than a joke. It took him a while to suppress the irritation rising in his chest. His sister, more brash and headstrong than most men, bringing a man home? What kind of nonsense was that? Impossible. There had to be some kind of misunderstanding. Maybe this so-called Dane-san wasn't even referring to Kukaku, but rather some upstart gang with a female leader. Even so, the idea of Kukaku being interested in a man wasn't completely unfounded. It was just a rumor, after all. No one had ever seen her take an interest in anyone. Then, a face flashed through Keion's mind, an unforgettable man, the type that could easily make someone fall for him at first sight. Kukaku was interested in him. Oh, hell no. Keion Aniki, come on, tell us. What kind of guy is Kukaku Ain-san's man? Passers-by recognized Keion and excitedly gathered around. Yeah. I heard from Ganju Oyabun that he's really good looking. I heard that too. Apparently, he's about to join the 13th Division of Imperial Guards as a Shinigami. Oi? There's no way my sister has a man. That's just a bunch of nonsense, so stop spreading rumors. Keion waved them off dismissively, but his presence only stirred more excitement. As the current head of the Shiba family and the undisputed leader of Western Rukongai, he was widely respected, with countless people eager to follow in his footsteps. But then, his smile froze. A sudden realization hit him like a bolt of lightning. That damned guy was in his house. Keion abruptly stood up, bolting toward home, his pace quickening with every step. No more self-deception. He rolled up his sleeves and ran. Outskirts of Rukongai District 1. A squad of Shinigami, clad in Hyakusho, marched forward in formation. 2 captains led the group, their white hair flowing behind them. Following closely were elite Shinigami, their powerful spiritual pressure radiating through the air. Civilians and gang members alike froze in place, their eyes widening at the sight of the fully armed squad. The sheer pressure emanating from them made the crowd instinctively retreat, overwhelmed by shock. This unit alone could crush all of Rukongai. At the head of the formation, Isshin Shiba and Shun Sakuraku walked side by side toward the outskirts, with Lisa Yadomaru, wearing her division's insignia, keeping pace just behind them. This house. Shunsei stopped, staring at the bizarre structure ahead. 2 massive stone arms held up a banner, proudly displaying the name Shibakukaku. His mouth twitched. Did an actual human build this? Isshin stepped closer and leaned in, whispering a few words into his ear. I see. Your niece has quite an interesting taste. Shun Sakuraku couldn't help but throw in a jab. Isshin Shiba sighed inwardly. While he often enjoyed goofing around, even he couldn't bring himself to appreciate this architectural style. Shaking his head helplessly, he let it go. Tap, tap, tap. Just then, the sound of hurried footsteps echoed from the woods. Isshin looked up, and almost instantly, a gentle smile spread across his face. A black-haired boy came charging forward, leading 4 other kids, all of them riding atop a wild boar. Uncle Isshin. The 5 of them pulled up in front of him, grinning as they waved. The moment those words were spoken, the nearby villagers gasped in shock. Isshin? That Isshin Shiba? The head of the Shiba branch family. Was now a captain in the 13th Division of Imperial Guards? Well. It's been a while. Ganju, you've gotten taller. Isshin ruffled the boy's hair, his gaze softening. Through his spiritual perception, he could tell, Ganju's spiritual pressure had grown significantly stronger. It was far beyond what Isshin himself had when he first entered Siriite AI. I can see that Masatsuki and Kakaku have been looking out for you all. At the mention of their headstrong sister and potential brother-in-law, the 5 kids exchanged dry smiles. But speaking of which, why are there only a few of you? Where are Keion and Kakaku? Isshin scanned the area, frowning slightly. Keion Aniki is training in the 3rd district. Kakaku nay. Before Ganju could finish, a light-hearted voice came from the opposite side of the forest. Uncle Isshin, Kiraku-senpai, Lisa-san, what brings you all here? Everyone turned toward the voice. Masatsuki Ozaki approached swiftly, dressed in his usual white uniform. At the center of his back was an emblem featuring the collapsing whirlpool of the crashing heaven pattern. 2 captains and a lieutenant? Master must think I'm pretty important. Isshin chuckled. Where's Kakaku? She's busy playing with fireworks. We made a few modifications to the ingredients. Masatsuki grinned, casually pointing over his shoulder. Isshin blinked, then finally understood why the kids had been smiling so awkwardly. Kakaku loved conducting high-risk explosive experiments. And accidents were practically a guarantee. The only question was, how many buildings had they blown up this time? Come on, Masatsuki gestured, leading the group toward the Shiba estate. On the way, Shunsei sidled up beside him, a sly glint in his eyes. You're not part of the Shiba family, are you? Masatsuki raised an eyebrow. No. Then tell me, kid, why are you living here? Masatsuki laughed. That's a long story. Then make it a short one. Shunsei clearly wasn't letting this go. Masatsuki sighed. I participated in the Kanso internship, right? After completing it, I got my diploma. My original plan was to report straight to the 2nd Division. But then, out of nowhere, a bunch of people showed up claiming to represent some great noble clan. Said they were investigating the Kanso internship. With no way to join the 13th Division of Imperial Guards just yet, and nowhere else to go. We ended up here. He spread his hands, then huffed in frustration. Just a few days ago, those bastards were still outside, restricting my movements like I was some kind of criminal. And Master? Not one word of concern after all this time. Does he even realize how heartbroken his disciple is? With that, Masatsuki clutched his chest dramatically, stomping his foot like he was on the verge of tears. What are you even thinking? Do you know how much of a hassle it is for the detention unit to arrest someone? You're a team leader now, you mostly just be watching over the prison. Shunsei chuckled, shaking his head. He pulled out a bottle of sake and passed it over. Lowering his voice, he added, I know you're frustrated. But Master hasn't been doing nothing. The reason those people backed off? That was his doing. Masatsuki took a swig of sake, then patted his chest. If you ask me, Master is way too soft on those nobles. If I were him, ahem. Shunsei, a high-ranking noble and captain of the 8th Division, suddenly cleared his throat. Masatsuki immediately backtracked. Ah. I didn't mean you, senpai. You know what I mean. Chapter 55, Reputation Soul Society. West Rukongai, District 1 outskirts, Shiba residence. The others had tactfully left the room, leaving only 6 people seated: Masatsuki, Renjaku Matsumoto, Jin Ikamaru, Isshin Shiba, Shunsei Kiraku, and Lisa Yadomaru. The atmosphere was relaxed, with everyone acting casually. Masatsuki took a sip of tea, glanced at Lisa, who was absorbed in an unusual book, then turned to Shunsei with a smile. I don't know why you're here, but if you have something to say, just say it. Seeing his perpetually unmotivated senior, Masatsuki found it amusing. Out of all the captains in the 13th Division of Imperial Guards, the one who loved slacking off the most was chosen to handle this matter. Aside from the 8th Division's general duties being somewhat relevant, it was mainly because Shunsei, as both a high-ranking noble and an exceptional leader, was trusted by the aristocracy. What a joke. Shunsei chuckled. You really don't know what happened? He lifted his teacup and took a slow sip, his sharp gaze sweeping over the 3 before him, his expression gradually turning serious. Masatsuki shook his head. I only know it involves the Kanso internship and the great noble houses. Other than that, I don't know much. Shunsei nodded. That's exactly why we're here. 5 days ago, during the Kanso internship, something happened that shook the upper echelons of Siriite AI. A student from Shino Academy, Asaka Tsunayashiro, suffered an accident during the internship and died on the spot. The moment the words left his mouth, Masatsuki's expression changed drastically. He shot to his feet. What? That's impossible. Jin and Ranjaku were equally stunned, their faces reflecting sheer disbelief. Meanwhile, Isshin, already overwhelmed by the chaos surrounding this incident, was too preoccupied with figuring out a solution to notice their reactions. Lisa, on the other hand, remained completely disengaged, her focus lost in her book as her mind drifted elsewhere. Only Shunsei seemed to have caught on to something, and the subtle smile at the corner of his lips took on a deeper meaning. The attack on the Tsunayashiro clan members is still being kept confidential, but Master has already received orders from the Central 46 to conduct a thorough investigation. Shunsei sighed. We visited the crime scene but haven't found any useful clues yet. What we can deduce is that the attacker was extremely powerful. Asaka Tsunayashiro died within 5 minutes of the battle's start. We're here to ask if you have any leads. As he spoke, Shunsei stroked his chin, observing Masatsuki's expression. Masatsuki mimicked him, rubbing his chin in thought. After a moment, he murmured, I remember that young lady had 2 seated officers escorting her during the Kanso internship, and she herself was as strong as a high-ranking seated officer. To kill her under their protection, and in under 5 minutes. Even an average lieutenant wouldn't be able to pull that off. Now that I think about it, during the Kanso internship, I did sense 2 powerful spiritual pressure bursts. That must have been them fighting. No, those weren't Asaka Tsunayashiro's spiritual pressure. At that moment, Renjaku suddenly interrupted. That was the spiritual pressure of her 2 escorts. They were in my group during the graduation test, so I recognize their spiritual pressure. Really? I wasn't aware of that. Masatsuki's voice grew serious. But since this happened during the internship, we, as participants, can't say we have nothing to do with it. We're willing to cooperate with you, but that's all I can think of. Is there anything else we can do to help? Isshin nodded approvingly. Good attitude. We've already ruled out suspects capable of this, but we haven't had any breakthroughs. However, according to the students and instructors, a rather powerful hollow appeared in that area at the time. We're here at the Shiba residence to investigate further. Given the circumstances, you had contact with Asaka Tsunayashiro before the Kanso internship. I see. Masatsuki suddenly understood and nodded in agreement. I heard you gave Asaka a gift during the exam. Shunsei tapped his fingers on the table, looking intrigued. You 2 seem to get along well. I'd like to know, what did you give her? The moment he finished speaking, he noticed a slight change in Masatsuki's expression, hesitation, as if he wanted to say something but couldn't. Senpai, can we not talk about this? It concerns my reputation. Masatsuki's expression was unusually complicated. Shunsei smirked. Your reputation? What reputation could you possibly have? How about this, you only need to tell me, and I promise to keep it secret. Masatsuki sighed. Alright then. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a small card, and, after glancing at Lisa, awkwardly said, This is what I gave her. Sensing Masatsuki's gaze, Lisa looked back. The moment she saw the card, something clicked in her mind. Her face instantly turned bright red, and she hurriedly hid behind her book. Oh? A business card? Shunsa raised an eyebrow, catching Lisa's reaction as he examined the card. This kid's a genius. Who even thinks of something like this? He really doesn't let any opportunity, money or people, slip through his fingers. Too bad the requirements for this line of work are too high. No way I could pull it off. Business cards aren't exactly rare, and even if one wasn't found on the body, it wouldn't mean anything. Who knows if it just got tossed aside somewhere. Still, to save face for the Genryu school, Shunsa only took a quick look before slipping the card into his pocket. Then, his expression turned oddly unreadable. In a low voice, he asked, "Does your master approve of you doing this kind of business?" Afraid of him? Me? Masatsuki scoffed, looking smug. Not just now, even if I become a seated officer, a lieutenant, a captain, or even the captain commander, I'll keep doing this job. I'd love to see who dares to stop me. Shunsa chuckled. You're bold, little brother. Are you kidding? Go ask around in Kagaurashi district or Shino Academy. I, Masatsuki, am super bold. Masatsuki declared proudly, puffing out his chest, practically looking down his nose at Shunsa. A deep voice suddenly echoed through the room. Masatsuki, come to the 1st Division barracks next month. Let's see how bold you really are. Masatsuki's head snapped around, his expression stunned as he looked at Shunsa. Shunsa, unfazed, pulled out a small, intricately designed metal disc embedded with a gemstone that shimmered with a strange light. Chapter 56, Result Senpai. It wasn't my fault. Master told me to borrow it from the Shioin clan. But I trusted you so much, and you. You can't blame me for this. If you want to blame someone, blame Master, he's the real schemer here. Shunsa let out a long whistle and sighed in satisfaction. Finally, revenge was his. Master, you heard that, right? Masatsuki suddenly snatched the communicator and loudly declared, Kiraku-senpai called you an old schemer. I don't know how he could say such treasonous things about such a good master like you. That's just too much. I'm not deaf yet, Shunsa Kiraku. Next month, you and Masatsuki Ozaki come see me. I want a full report on the investigation. Shunsa. Master, I might not be feeling well next month. How about letting Captain Shiba and Lisa handle it instead? He quickly snatched the communicator back and pressed a finger against the orb embedded in it. The glowing sphere dimmed instantly, turning a dull gray. Then, ZZT, the transmission cut off completely. Ishin. He stared in stunned silence for a few seconds. Shunsa blinked, cleared his throat, and casually tucked the device away as if nothing had happened. Then, he turned to Lisa, who had remained silent the entire time. His expression suddenly became serious. Lisa, guard your heart well. Some guys may look good, but deep down, they're just heartbreakers. Mind your own business, you old fart. Lisa snapped through gritted teeth. Old fart? Shunsa paled, his eyes gradually losing focus. I'm not even 1,000 years old yet. Masatsuki patted him on the shoulder in sympathy. Senpai, you can't blame me for this. It's karma for all your misdeeds. Try not to take it too hard. That's not for you to say. Shunsa grumbled. Noticing that the conversation was getting sidetracked, Ishin cleared his throat and steered it back on track. Masatsuki, do you have any other information? Masatsuki pinched the bridge of his nose, pretending to think hard. Nope, that's all. Our console targets were 3 adorable kids. Does that count as useful? Ishin frowned. If that's all we've got, closing this case won't be easy. The room fell silent. Everyone exchanged glances until, finally, Shunsa broke the tension with a smile. The answer's obvious, isn't it? If it wasn't Hollows, then who else? The odds of a graduate encountering a Hollow during their console internship aren't particularly high, he added, but it's not unheard of in the history of Shino Academy. Ishin considered this for a moment. Right now, it was the only conclusion they could reasonably draw. But something about the crime scene still didn't sit right with him. He decided to consult a certain sharp-minded acquaintance. Masatsuki, what's your take on this? Masatsuki rolled his eyes. My take? What take? He said irritably. If this is all the information you've got, then of course I have to agree with Senpai. You won't even let me see the investigation files, so what else am I supposed to say? Ishin opened his mouth, then shut it again. He knew Masatsuki was sharp, but those classified documents couldn't be shared with a fresh graduate. Then, Captain Kiraku, I'll draft the report accordingly. No issues with that, right? Lisa suddenly spoke up. Her hands were clenched around her book, obscuring her expression. Shunsa glanced at Ishin and lazily asked, What do you think, Captain Shiba? Ishin thought for a moment before nodding. We'll go with that. It's the only conclusion we can reach for now. Even so, Something still felt off, but he couldn't quite put his finger on it. After all the testimonies either directly or indirectly supported this conclusion. There was no way it was wrong. 1st Division Barracks. Attacked by a hollow. Is this the conclusion of your investigation, Captain Shiba? Seated across from Isshin, Yamamoto sipped his tea, his expression calm and grandfatherly. Dressed in his white hori, he spoke with a gentle tone, as if merely making casual conversation. Hollows capable of concealing their spiritual pressure are rare, but they do exist. It was the first time Isshin had seen Yamamoto appear so amiable, and it made him a little uneasy. He cleared his throat and replied, yes. This is our final conclusion after conducting an on-site investigation and questioning Master and the students. Yamamoto pondered for a moment before suddenly saying, what about Masatsuki Ozaki's testimony? Let me see it. Captain, are you suspecting him? Isshin stiffened, then quickly defended, he had absolutely nothing to do with this. As if to make his point more convincing, he hesitated for a moment before adding, that kid's a coward who only picks on the weak, he'd never dare mess with the Tsunayashiro clan. It's hard to say what that boy might do, Yamamoto said, narrowing his eyes. His voice grew heavier. But from what I can see, you seem to have quite a close relationship with him, Captain Shiba. Isshin handed over the testimony with a dismissive wave. To be honest, if that kid hadn't tricked me into joining the 13th Division of Imperial Guards, I'd still be messing around in Rukongai. This boy convinced someone to join the 13th Division of Imperial Guards? Yamamoto's interest was piqued. With a neutral tone, he asked, how exactly did he get you to join? He told me that if I became a captain, I'd have power and authority, and I could live a carefree life doing whatever I pleased. Isshin scoffed. Like I wouldn't see through that. The brat was just trying to lighten Kakaku's burden by making me take the job. And Keian's the same way. He spends all his time training, he acts more like a clan head than I do, and I'm supposed to be the branch family head. Something about that remark stirred an inexplicable irritation in Yamamoto. His grip on the testimony tightened as he flipped through it faster and faster. He shouldn't have expected anything different from that boy. But after finishing Masatsuki's testimony, his anger subsided. He nodded in satisfaction. He really knows how to keep himself out of trouble. Comparing all the testimonies in secret, Yamamoto noted that while some were completely useless, the rest corroborated each other. There were a few minor inconsistencies, but that was to be expected. Human memory wasn't perfect. A testimony with slight contradictions was actually more believable than one that was perfectly aligned. Without changing his expression, he spoke in a steady tone, you've done well. I'm very satisfied with this investigation. Consider this matter closed. You've all worked hard. This is our duty. Isshin bowed respectfully. Chapter 57, Kakaku Shiba still working on fireworks. Masatsuki Ozaki looked at the woman before him in surprise. The woman had a striking figure, a headscarf tied around her head, and long black hair parted into two sections. A tattoo of the kanji for sky adorned her left arm, and a long smoking pipe was tucked into her waistband. This was Kakaku Shiba, younger sister of the current Shiba family head and, in truth, the real power behind the clan. Not that it mattered much, there were only 4 people left in the family who still carried the Shiba name. She called it fireworks research, but Masatsuki didn't see any blueprints or designs. The only thing different was the smooth, pitch-black sphere sitting in front of her. The gunpowder formula you taught me has significantly increased in power, no residue, no smoke. When combined with spiritual pressure, it could even be used as a weapon. Kakaku smiled slightly. I really don't know how you come up with these ideas. Masatsuki shook his head. Honestly, I have Lieutenant Sasaki to thank. He is passionate about Western culture and gave me a lot of inspiration. Thanks to Chojiro Sasaki's fascination with the West, the Soul Society had never been affected by the 2-century-long isolation policy of the world of the living. In fact, even centuries ago, when Sasaki was still young, he had begun embracing Western influences, never once breaking that connection. While the Soul Society's technological development took a different path than the world of the livings, books on chemistry and physics could still be found. Without them, even knowing the formula for modern gunpowder wouldn't have helped Masatsuki, it would have been impossible to recreate. Kakaku chuckled. So, those guys left? Those guys? You mean your uncles? Masatsuki smirked. They've already gone back to report to Master. I'd say we'll have an answer in a few days. Uncle Isshin was here too? Kakaku asked, surprised. Masatsuki raised a brow. Ganju didn't tell you? Should we go find him? It's not too late, I have a pass from Master. No need to go through all that trouble. It's not like he's never coming back. Kakaku gave a small smile. But why didn't you leave with him? Weren't you planning to join the 13th Division of Imperial Guards? Before long, You'll be a mighty Shinigami. You'll probably start looking down on us declining nobles. Masatsuki shook his head. That's nonsense. Kusagakure grinned. Oh? Don't want to part with me? Masatsuki hesitated, unsure how to answer, and simply let out a quiet TCH. Now that Keiin's not around, you sure have some guts. Kusagakure spoke casually, as if it were nothing. But once he is back, you'll still end up slinking off to Siriate AI? Masatsuki fell silent for a long time. There were so many things he wanted to say to her, but he couldn't seem to find the words. Back then, Keiin had been an immovable obstacle between them. Born into the Shiba family, naturally gifted, and overflowing with spiritual pressure, he had always loomed large. Masatsuki had lost count of how many times Keiin had caught him visiting Kusagakure under the guise of business, only to chase him for miles. Probably enough to circle Siriate AI 10 times over. But things were different now. His strength had already surpassed Keiin's, there was no need to sneak around anymore. Even if he stood openly by Kukaku's side, what could Keiin do about it? I'm not afraid of him anymore, Masatsuki finally whispered. But the words that followed were, let's have a baby. Kusagakure? Even if she had been trying to provoke him into being bolder, wasn't this leap a little too big? Wasn't the normal sequence supposed to be, confess, fall in love, get married, then have kids? How did he just skip straight to the final step? Kusagakure froze, momentarily at a loss. The two of them sat side by side on the workbench. Masatsuki took her hand, interlocking their fingers, and slowly leaned in. Kusagakure chuckled, eyes twinkling. Masatsuki. Masatsuki blinked, caught off guard. He had already thought of a name for the baby, wasn't it a little late to back out now? But Kusagakure didn't seem fazed. Instead, she seemed to be speaking from the heart when she casually asked, don't you think time is kind of a strange thing? Sometimes it passes in the blink of an eye, and you don't even know what you did with it. But other times, every single second is packed with nonsense, and your head is a complete mess. Yeah. Masatsuki's heart unexpectedly calmed. He gazed up at the starry sky, exhaling softly. My years in the Soul Society have felt long. But I don't regret coming here. This world. It's fascinating. As he reflected on his past life, he realized there had been no one to miss, no keepsakes to cherish. You were a noble in the world of the living, weren't you? Kusagakure asked offhandedly. Wasn't there anything you left behind? Masatsuki thought for a moment before chuckling. Saying I had no attachments at all would be a lie. Who wouldn't want to live a comfortable life? But I still prefer it here. After meeting you all, I know for certain, this is where I was meant to be. Was that a confession? Kusagakure grinned. Now that actually makes my heart flutter. That baby talk earlier? Not so much. Let's call it that. Truthfully, it was more of a personal revelation than a confession. But Masatsuki didn't want to spoil the moment, so he simply asked, so? Can you accept it? Call me Aizen. Kusagakure rolled her eyes before flashing him a bold smile. And yeah, I accept. I knew it wouldn't be that easy. Masatsuki sighed. But then, a beat later, he stiffened, eyes widening in realization. Wait. What? You accept? Kusagakure didn't hesitate in the slightest, casually confirming, that's right, I accept. She slung an arm around his neck, grabbed the black sphere from the table, and grinned. As a celebration, let's go set off some fireworks, starting with this one we made today. Side by side, they walked outside. Before long, the pitch-black night sky was ablaze with vibrant colors. The next morning. Good morning, big brother-in-law. Masatsuki greeted with the utmost sincerity. Keiin smirked, rolling up his sleeves as he silently eyed the man standing before him, so full of respect, so irritatingly polite. The faint scent of alcohol lingered in the air, clouding his thoughts. When he glanced to the side, he saw his sister clinging to Masatsuki's arm, an almost otherworldly softness in her demeanor. The way she looked at him, serene, warm, affectionate, was an unfamiliar sight. Keiin frowned. Was this really his sister? Where was the rough, hot-tempered Kusagakure he knew? Who was this gentle, loving woman in her place? Give me back my foul-mouthed, explosive-tempered sister, you bastard. Masatsuki, Keiin said slowly, twitching with barely restrained irritation. What the hell did you do to my sister? Nothing much, Masatsuki said, spreading his hands innocently. We just set off a firework together and had a drink. Do you really expect me to believe that? Looking at his sister, who now radiated the unmistakable glow of someone deeply in love, Keiin couldn't help but suspect the worst. Had she already? Kusagakure can vouch for me. Masatsuki hurriedly tried to pass her off as a witness. But it was obvious Kusagakure hadn't sobered up yet. She took 2 unsteady steps before promptly collapsing back onto the floor. TCH. With a thud, Masatsuki was sent flying across the room. Geian's kick launched him straight into the wall, where he left a perfect human-shaped hole before dropping flat onto the ground. Chapter 58, Confidence Soul Society, Siriite AI? Tsunayashiro Clan, Central Council Chamber. The bloodstains on the floor had already been cleaned. Seated before a wall adorned with a painting of mountains and rivers, the Tsunayashiro clan's highest authority, the family elder, maintained a cold expression. The air in the chamber was stifling. My lords, this is the news from Seijotakirin. The family Shinigami who delivered the message knelt on the ground, his hoarse voice muffled by the black mask he wore. We understand. You may leave, an elder said impassively. Yes, my lord. The family Shinigami slowly stood and exited the chamber. As the heavy doors shut behind him, a long silence fell over the room. How laughable. A member of the esteemed Tsunayashiro clan, devoured by a hollow? A white-haired elder suddenly sneered. In truth, this isn't impossible, another elder remarked coolly. It's not like such incidents haven't happened before in the history of Shino Academy. But this time is different. This wasn't some Rukongai lowlife, it was a bloodline of one of the 5 great noble houses. The white-haired elder shook his head. Even the branch family won't accept this outcome. At his words, the other elders fell silent. As the ruling elders of the Tsunayashiro clan, they held supreme authority, but that didn't mean they could simply ignore everything at will. The branch family wielded considerable influence within the clan, and its head and elders still commanded significant power. This so-called investigation? It was nothing more than an attempt to placate them. The evidence is right in front of them. What more do they expect? One elder suddenly asked. The room tensed as several elders furrowed their brows, clearly displeased. They knew that this elder, along with the white-haired one, had close ties to the branch family. It wasn't an exaggeration to say the two had been placed in their positions by the branch. The white-haired elder's eyes gleamed coldly. They refused to believe this was an accident. They demand severe interrogation of all who participated in this Konso internship. Only by making them bleed and suffer will they reveal the truth. Some elders raised their eyebrows at this, while one smirked mockingly. I understand, Your Excellency Shingu. You fought hard to climb to your current position, lost much in the process, and now refuse to believe in accidents. But your lack of belief only extends within the clan. Your origins have blinded you to the greater picture. Besides, neither the Central 46 nor Genryu's Ishigakuni Yamamoto will ever approve of your proposal. Another elder nodded in agreement. I believe Your Excellency Takayasu is absolutely right. Don't think we don't see through you and the branch family's schemes. This isn't about justice, you simply want to target Masatsuki Ozaki. You lost 2 captain-class Shinigami in that operation, and now the branch family holds a grudge. You wouldn't dare challenge the head of the Shioin clan, but you have no problem taking it out on Rukongai commoners. You've disgraced the Tsunayashiro clan. Unfortunately for you, this time you've chosen the wrong target. The report from Seijotakirin made it clear, this situation is unlike any before. Yamamoto values that man immensely, so much so that he defied both the wise men and the judges. That is unprecedented. But, Shingu Tsunayashiro, his white hair gleaming under the dim light, tried to argue, but the elder representing the main family cut him off. Enough. Yamamoto is old. He won't remain captain commander much longer. I believe he intends to make that man his successor. That's why he is willing to defy the Central 46 to protect him. The main family will not risk provoking Yamamoto by indulging your petty grievances. This benefits neither us nor the clan. Shingu Tsunayashiro narrowed his eyes. Our family members died under suspicious circumstances, and you're telling me we should just let it go? This is your branch family's affair, not ours. An elderly female clan elder was about to wash her hands of the situation when Takayasu Tsunayashiro raised his hand, cutting her off. Your Excellency Tamaba, remember your status and responsibilities. Choose your words carefully. Yes. Tamaba Tsunayashiro hesitated for a moment, realizing she had spoken recklessly in the heat of the moment. The main family isn't refusing to act, we simply can't, Takayasu said solemnly. Juggling the Central 46, dealing with the noble clans, and navigating Yamamoto's maneuvering has left us exhausted. We don't have the resources to concern ourselves with Masatsuki Ozaki. The branch family has members in the 13th Division of Imperial Guards, don't they? Masatsuki Ozaki will be joining soon, why not let them handle him? Rest assured, the elders of this clan will always prioritize the family's interests. We won't forget that. Your Excellency Takayasu, are you saying? As his words settled over the room, the other clan elders froze, their expressions shifting from confusion to disbelief. Shingu Tsunayashiro furrowed his brow in thought before suddenly laughing. Rising from his seat, he strode toward the door, another elder who was aligned with the branch family following close behind. Very well, very well. Then we'll leave this matter to the branch family. The doors shut behind them, and a smirk on Shingu's lips instantly turned icy cold. Meanwhile, the elders remaining in the chamber exchanged uncertain glances. Your Excellency Takayasu, is it wise to provoke a confrontation with Yamamoto now? Takayasu scoffed. I understand your concerns. But tell me, what does a fight between the branch family and Yamamoto have to do with us? Do you think Yamamoto will turn his wrath on us? He won't. Because we are one of the 5 great noble clans. The elders immediately grasped his meaning. But the branch family is still part of the Tsunayashiro clan. One murmured. Takayasu let out a cold chuckle. And yet, they have ambitions for things that do not belong to them. For years, their influence has been growing. Can't you see it? The branch and the main family no longer share the same interests. The other elders nodded in agreement. Lord Takayasu is right. The branch dares to covet the position of family head and seats in the Central 46. Let them fight. Even if they don't destroy each other completely, it will still leave the branch severely weakened. They did not believe for a second that Yamamoto would strike against the noble families. Not because he lacked the strength, but because he couldn't. As Captain Commander of the 13th Division of Imperial Guards, Yamamoto was a rigid, disciplined, and unyielding man. The very reason he created the 13th Division of Imperial Guards was to safeguard Sairai's rule and eliminate threats against it. He was already constrained, by the Central 46's political suppression, by the doctrine of noble supremacy, by the delicate balance that kept Seoul's society intact. And above all, by the sheer reality of the world's survival. Even if Yamamoto ever dared to act against the nobility, he would never eradicate them completely. This was the confidence the main family elders held. Chapter 59, Impossible to refuse. The family elders exchanged glances, their smiles as sly as a pack of old foxes. For nobles of high rank and great power, bloodline was undeniably important, but it was never absolute. In the face of power, blood ties were disposable. Mercy and compassion? Even more so. The only thing that truly endured was self-interest. Within the Tsunayashiro clan, the branch families only held military strength, while true authority remained firmly in the hands of the main family. And swords, they were meant to be used and discarded. Replacements could always be found. In that case, is it really necessary for us to sour our relationship with Yamamoto over this? With his strength, those fools in the branch family have no chance of winning. Indeed. The elders voiced their agreement one after another. Takayasu Tsunayashiro smiled. I've read Masatsuki Ozaki's testimony. He's a sharp one. And based on the other statements, he even tried to curry favor with our family during the Konso internship. The elders looked surprised. What? Something like that happened? Why weren't we informed? It must have been that useless Asaka Tsunayashiro concealing it to improve his chances of being named the next family head. The branch family really is nothing but a pack of incompetent fools. Takayasu Tsunayashiro chuckled, raising a hand in reassurance. No need to get worked up. Perhaps after this incident, we can consider improving our relationship with him. At those words, the elders' eyes lit up slightly. A good idea. Anyone could see that Masatsuki Ozaki, a once-in-a-millennium genius, would sooner or later rise to the upper echelons of the 13th Division of Imperial Guards. With his talent and potential, it was only a matter of time before he became a captain. And given Yamamoto's current attitude, even the position of captain commander wasn't out of the question. Having a powerful captain, or even a future captain commander, as an ally of the Tsunayashiro clan would be a tremendous advantage. Yamamoto was old. Sooner or later, he would choose someone to inherit his title. The clan had to consider the future. Takayasu Tsunayashiro observed the shifting expressions of the elders, inwardly sneering. He already held a position of supreme power within the clan. Even the other elders had begun to follow his lead. With a single order or even a mere glance, he could sway the decisions of the Central 46 and send ripples through all of Sairaitai. But he wasn't satisfied. The branch families had been scheming for years, clawing at the main family's authority. As the strongest elder of the main family, it was his duty to ensure that neither the position of family head nor the authority of the elders fell into the wrong hands. Yet, like the others, the faction backing him alone was not enough to seize absolute control of the clan. If he wanted to consolidate his power, removing the branch family was only the first step. He needed external forces to support him. Masatsuki Ozaki was the perfect candidate. Talented, ambitious, and, most importantly, deeply flawed. Greedy. Lustful. The type of man who was easiest to manipulate. There's no rush to bring Masatsuki Ozaki to our side. We must plan carefully, Takayasu said, standing slowly. Placing his hands on the table, he continued, this brat is sharp. He won't walk blindly into trouble or danger. That's precisely why he's avoided aligning himself with any family until now. West Rukongai, District 1, Outskirts. Shiba Residence. After Kei and Shiba forcefully sobered him up, Masatsuki and Kukaku teamed up to give Keian a beating, making him recognize his own weakness. So, are you sure there won't be any issues with the 13th Division of Imperial Guards? Kukaku Shiba finally gave in to her curiosity, watching Masatsuki Ozaki sit there drinking without a care in the world. Masatsuki handed her the bottle he had been drinking from and grinned, narrowing his eyes. Master sent a message through Tendakura. I'm expected to report to the 13th Division of Imperial Guards tomorrow. I don't have a choice. Can't refuse, or just don't want to. Kukaku smirked. I think you're doing this for Yoruichi. Not just for her. For everyone. Uncharacteristically, Masatsuki's expression turned serious, making it clear he wasn't joking. Seeing this, Kukaku dropped her usual playful demeanor, setting down her cup as she muttered in a low voice, I see. No need to look so gloomy. Masatsuki nodded, reaching out to ruffle her hair. A third seat in the 2nd Division, high or low, it's still a position of authority. It's not unreasonable to have my subordinates handle some work for me. If Ikamaru gets into the detention unit, I'll make him my second in command. He might actually have more freedom there than he did at Shino Academy. That way, I can come and go whenever I want, can't I? Jin Ikamaru was someone worth trusting. In the original timeline, he spent over a century hiding in Aizen's shadow for the sake of an unspoken love. Now, Masatsuki had saved his life, given him food, shelter, and a place to grow. If Jin still wanted to betray him after all that, it would truly be baffling. Kukaku couldn't help but find his reasoning amusing. She even took a moment to silently mourn for Jin Ikamaru before chuckling. Letting him handle all the dirty work? Poor guy. He really got the short end of the stick following you. Short end of the stick? Masatsuki rolled his eyes. If he hadn't met me, his life would have been ruined. Kukaku scoffed, you saved his life, and now you're expecting him to pay you back for it. Damn right. Masatsuki tilted his head back, taking a swig of his drink. There wasn't even a hint of shame in his voice. Sis, I've told you before, this guy's bad news. Just cut ties with him already. Kei and Shiba, still wriggling on the ground, finally seized an opportunity to speak, his tone filled with deep concern. He was immobilized, bound by golden ropes of light, Bakudo number 4, Heinawa. Shut up, idiot brother. Kukaku delivered a swift punch to Keian's head, causing a large lump to form instantly. Ow! Keian groaned, looking utterly miserable. His sister had changed. She was being way too nice to an outsider, yet showed no mercy to her own brother. It was all because of that damn pretty boy. Back then, he had been so cautious, so vigilant. How the hell did this guy slip through the cracks? Kukaku ignored her brother's suffering, instead pulling Masatsuki close as they continued drinking. After a while, Masatsuki's gaze lingered on Kukaku's hands, completely unscathed. As if suddenly recalling something, he spoke slowly. I think you should put your explosion experiments on hold for now. Kukaku raised an eyebrow. Why? Masatsuki frowned slightly. They're too dangerous. You're bound to get hurt sooner or later. Kisuke's a third seat in the 12th Division now. He's always messing around with gadgets. I'll ask him to help, maybe he can get you some protective gear. That way, your experiments will be a lot safer. In the original timeline, Kukaku had lost her right arm. Considering her love for explosives, Masatsuki had a strong suspicion that fireworks had something to do with it. And if he already knew disaster was coming, there was no way he'd sit back and let it happen. Chapter 60, Joining the 2nd Division. Damn it. Why was I the only one assigned to the 1st Division? Rinjaku Matsumoto trudged through the streets of Siri Itai, grumbling as she occasionally shot dagger-like glares at Jin Ikamaru. Why did he get to go to the 2nd Division with Masatsuki Ozaki, but not her? Feeling the weight of her gaze, Jin shivered involuntarily. Masatsuki Ozaki sighed. I recommended you. What? How could you do this to me? Rinjaku clutched her chest dramatically, her expression devastated. Does this mean you don't like me anymore? Masatsuki rubbed his temples in exasperation. Of course not. It's just that the 1st Division is safer. With Master there, I can rest easy. Don't forget what I told you before. Hearing this, Rinjaku furrowed her brows in deep thought before remembering Masatsuki's warning about a certain someone. Her excitement faded, and she reluctantly sighed. Fine. Jin sighed as well, clearly at his limit. Can you two calm down? The 1st and 2nd Division barracks aren't that far apart. With flash steps, you can meet up in no time. You're right. Rinjaku perked up. Then I'll see you tonight. She waved before sprinting toward the 1st Division. Masatsuki Ozaki and Jin Ikamaru arrived at the base of a mountain. A long staircase stretched upward, winding through the trees and disappearing into the sky. The hum of cicadas echoed in the air. At the foot of the steps stood a stone pillar marked with the kanji for 2. The surrounding trees were lush and vibrant, their branches swaying gently. Dense grass covered the ground like rolling waves. At the top of the stairs stood a grand traditional building, white walls, a golden roof, and wooden fences painted in red and green. Butterflies and insects danced around the entrance, drawn to the colors. The patrolling Shinigami on guard saluted their soon-to-be superior. After receiving a brief nod in return, one of them hurried inside to report. Before long, members of the inner court troop emerged, even ahead of the guards, and personally escorted Masatsuki and Jin inside. When they reached an office, Jin was made to wait outside while Masatsuki stepped in alone. A purple-haired woman sat behind a desk. Her short, neat hair swayed with each slight movement of her head. "You look like you're in a good mood." Masatsuki adjusted his shakusho, preparing to formally greet his new captain, Yoruichi Shioin. "You can skip the formalities." She waved a hand dismissively, stopping him mid-motion. After ensuring the inner court troop members had left, she crossed her arms and smirked. "You finally made it. So, what do you think of our second division?" Masatsuki walked forward casually. "Not bad. Feels just like being back at the Shioin estate." The second division's architecture was unique. Not only was it old, but it also bore a distinct resemblance to the Shioin clan's style. That was no surprise. The first captain of the second division, Chika Shioin, had left his mark, and since then, generations of Shioin captains had carried on the tradition. The entire division was molded by their influence. Yoruichi grinned. "Sounds like you really like the Shioin clan. Want to come back with me?" Masatsuki shrugged. "Anytime. I'm always free." "TCH. Forget it." She sighed in defeat. "I'll take you to your office, it's right across from mine." Masatsuki simply followed along, ignoring the slight embarrassment in Yoruichi's expression. "By the way, Captain Shioin, isn't the detention unit mainly based in the nest of maggots?" "Ha. What do you take the second division for?" Yoruichi shot him a sidelong glance before pulling open a door and stepping inside. "As the detention unit's captain, your job is to manage the troops, not act as a security guard. Your office is here in the second division. As for your actual duties, it's simple: keep the team in line and make sure the dangerous ones behave. Of course, if you want to visit a nest of maggots, go ahead. It is under your jurisdiction. Keep them in line, huh?" Masatsuki stroked his chin. "Wouldn't it be better to introduce ourselves properly before toying with them? Stop twisting my words and just look at what I prepared for you." Yoruichi gritted her teeth and pointed at 2 ridiculously thick stacks of documents on the table, each several hundred pages long. "These are all people you need to know. Left pile, our division members. Right pile, detailed profiles on the dangerous inmates in the nest of maggots." Masatsuki flipped through a few pages, nodding as he skimmed the contents. "What's with this name being circled?" "Oh, those are the ones you really need to keep an eye on. They haven't done anything that directly threatens Siriite AI. But they could." "Got it." Masatsuki Ozaki pulled a notepad from his uniform, jotted down Yoruichi's words, and tucked it into his desk drawer. Then, with an exaggerated expression of shock, he blurted out, "I'm honestly surprised. You're actually doing your job as a captain." Yoruichi raised an eyebrow at his teasing tone. "You little brat, you've been treating me like a fool this whole time, haven't you?" "That's not what I meant. It's just that I heard from Lieutenant Omega that whenever you handle squad affairs, you have this deeply pained look on your face, like you're truly suffering. And let's not forget how you used to sneak out to meet me all the time." "Ugh, don't say it like that. You're making it sound weird. I just wanted to have fun, that's all. What's the difference? TCH. You really haven't lost your talent for getting on my nerves." Yoruichi folded her arms, tilting her head back to stare at the ceiling. The look on her face practically screamed, "I'm mad. Hurry up and make it up to me." Alright. My bad, okay? That's a pretty lousy apology." Yoruichi pouted but continued, "I am Yoruichi Shioin, you know. There's no way I'd enjoy being stuck in an office all day. But I'm also the head of the Shioin clan. I was raised in that environment, I can't just abandon it. It's those damn pitying looks they give me. Makes it impossible to just walk away. What a bunch of annoying people." Masatsuki chuckled. "Well, of course. Forget your clan elders, even Master wouldn't let someone as talented as you slack off. Besides, don't you have your little brother, Yashiro? A few more years, and once he graduates from Shino Academy, he can help take some of the burden off you." Hearing Yashiro's name, Yoruichi's eyes lit up. "You're right, there's Yashiro. He's always saying he wants to help me. Well, now's his chance to prove it." Masatsuki, you're a genius." With that, Yoruichi suddenly hugged him, then practically bounced out of the office. She moved so fast that Masatsuki didn't even have time to stop her. Running a hand through his hair, he muttered to himself. "Weird. Why do I feel kinda guilty, like I just did something unfair to Yashiro? Well, he did always say he wanted to help his sister. He won't blame me for this. Right?" Chapter 61, A Dangerous Individual Researching the Quincy. The Onmitsukito is a special Shinigami unit with a history spanning 1,000 years. It was established within Sirei AI by the late first captain of the 2nd Division, Chikushioin. Beyond protecting Sirei AI, its founding was also driven by the noble families, led by the 5 great noble clans, who sought to maintain their own armed forces. As a result, the Onmitsukito operates independently of the 13th Division of Imperial Guards as a specialized force. It consists of 5 divisions, one of which is the detention unit. Inside the detention unit space, located within the 2nd Division barracks, Shinigami who had just completed their shifts gathered in a large auditorium, capable of accommodating all team members. I believe everyone here is already aware that as of today, the former 3rd seat of the 2nd Division and captain of the Onmitsukito detention unit, Rukongai, has officially left the team. The newly appointed 3rd seat of the 2nd Division and captain of the detention unit, who had drawn much attention, looked at the assembled members and continued, "Our detention unit is the finest division of the Onmitsukito. While I don't need to elaborate on that, it's still my duty to go over the rules we'll be following moving forward, in accordance with the management system established by our predecessors." The members of the detention unit collectively swallowed. Seated in the audience was none other than the 2nd Division captain, commander-in-chief of the Onmitsukito, and leader of the 1st Division Executive Militia, Yoruichi Shioin. And from the look on her face, her displeasure couldn't have been more obvious. The new head is seriously bold. He's not showing the slightest deference to the Executive Militia under Commander-in-Chief Yoruichi. I heard he's the Commander-in-Chief's lover. Apparently, the two of them sneak off on private meetings from time to time. No way. So this is the legendary captain's man? It's true. My second aunt saw them with her own eyes at the 1st Division barracks. She was so smitten she even drew his portrait and hung it in her room, staring at it every day like she was in love. Didn't your second aunt used to have a crush on Commander-in-Chief Yoruichi? Oh, that changed ages ago. She was turned back 6 months ago. My grandma was so overjoyed when she realized my aunt was into men again that she actually cried. As the gossip spread, Yoruichi Shioin's face darkened. Masatsuki Ozaki, however, remained blissfully unaware of Yoruichi's impending eruption. Enjoying the admiration of the crowd as if he were a heroic figure, he raised a hand and announced, "Today, I've invited my personal secretary, the 9th seat of the 2nd Division, Jin Ikamaru. He'll be sharing some insights on the mindset required to be a member of the detention unit." The moment the captain introduced him, murmurs filled the room. Masatsuki Ozaki was already an exceptional case, Captain Commander Yamamoto's disciple, a prodigy who had reached the 4th rank of spiritual pressure at just 21 years old. But this kid? How did he get assigned as the 9th seat the moment he joined? "Jin, I'll leave it to you." Jin Ikamaru stepped onto the stage, his trademark cold smile in place as he scanned the auditorium. Damn it. Nobody told me I'd have to give a speech. Lowering his eyelids slightly, he took a quiet breath and stopped suppressing his spiritual pressure. The moment he did, the room instantly understood why he had been granted the 9th seat, 8th rank spiritual pressure. After the speech, Jin Ikamaru slumped onto a sofa in the office, leaning back with a deep sigh. Delivering an impromptu speech had drained him far more than expected. As expected of you, Jin. No preparation, and yet you pulled off something I wouldn't have been able to do. Sitting across from him, Masatsuki Ozaki, 3rd seat of the 2nd Division and detention unit captain, grinned from ear to ear. Jin let out another sigh. You left out the part where you didn't tell me I'd have to give a speech, just to mess with me. Now, would I do something like that? Masatsuki Ozaki crossed his arms and chuckled. Honestly, I got so caught up reading reports this afternoon that I completely forgot about the speech. Jin rolled his eyes. Masatsuki just stuck out his tongue. If it weren't for Yoruichi getting me a speech draft from Kisuke, I probably wouldn't have done much better than you. Oh, how impressive. Captain Sama can even give impromptu speeches, Jin said dryly. The guy had a script and still had the nerve to brag. It's just about fooling people, really. Masatsuki Ozaki patted his chest. That's my specialty. For once, Jin didn't argue. Instead, he simply nodded in agreement. This guy had a knack for saying things that riled people up, and somehow, Jin always found himself getting caught up in it. Masatsuki Ozaki leaned forward. You don't mind if I go through some documents here, right? With that, he reached under the table and pulled out the files Yoruichi had handed him earlier. You're actually working? Jin Ikamaru exclaimed, eyes wide with disbelief. Masatsuki Ozaki shot him a glare. What kind of comment is that? Is it really that strange for me to be working? Hey. Jin let out a dismissive chuckle without answering. Ikamaru, you're not busy right now, are you? No, why? Go process the documents on the desk. Jin Ikamaru? I thought you were determined to take your work seriously? I just wanted to read the materials, not do paperwork, Masatsuki said, completely straight-faced. I should never have expected anything from you. Jin twitched at the corner of his eye, sighed in resignation, and slumped into the office chair, the seat symbolizing the highest authority in the detention unit, utterly unenthused. This chair is definitely not as comfortable as the sofa. The ticking of the clock mixed with the sound of pages turning. Masatsuki flipped through the files with keen interest, scanning page after page. The Nest of Maggots was a special prison operated by the 2nd Division. No one was allowed to carry a Zanpakutō inside. Those imprisoned there were deemed potential threats under Siri's regulations, though not all of them had committed actual crimes. Even if some had never broken the law, in practice, they were no different from criminals. Their status was the same as convicts, stripped of any human rights. To Masatsuki, this group of dangerous individuals, possessing at least some level of strength yet devoid of rights, made for ideal sparring partners. Whether it was Ikatsu, Sokatsu, or simply refining his hand-to-hand combat techniques, he still had a long road ahead. Suddenly, he seemed to find something interesting. Holding the thick document in his hands, he leaned back against the sofa, flipping through the pages more slowly, nodding to himself as he read. Ikamaru, I think we should check out this guy who's getting special treatment. Masatsuki walked up behind Jin and placed the file on the desk. Special treatment? Yeah. This guy, Mayuri Kurotsuchi. Masatsuki pointed at the photo in the document. Jin glanced down and saw a sharp-featured man with blue hair and yellow eyes. Mayuri Kurotsuchi. The guy conducting unauthorized research on the Quincy? Jin set aside the paperwork he had been reviewing and picked up the file for a closer look. Why are you interested in him? This guy is smart. A scientist willing to push boundaries. You know, technology is the ultimate combat power, Masatsuki said with genuine conviction. Don't you think talents like him deserve recognition and proper treatment? Jin rolled his eyes. Technology is the ultimate combat power. You actually expect me to believe that nonsense? Masatsuki was silent for a moment, then sighed. Alright, fine. Honestly, I just want him to use his scientific expertise to build me a beautiful wife. Jin blinked, momentarily stunned. Then, his expression turned deadly serious. In that case, this is indeed a critical matter. But I don't know much about scientific research. You think he can really fulfill your request? Masatsuki. Chapter 62, What Do You Want? Northwest of the 2nd Division barracks, within the moat, lay a vast underground facility spanning the equivalent of 30 houses. From the outside, it appeared to be nothing more than an imposing mountain of closely connected rock formations. But beneath the surface, it was, in fact, a massive subterranean prison. Detention unit soldiers clad in night gear patrolled the area, their presence adding to the prison's oppressive atmosphere. To the Central 46, the criminals imprisoned here were no different from maggots clinging to life. And so, this place had came to be known as, the Nest of Maggots. Bang. 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 Crack. 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 The echoes of clubs striking flesh and fists colliding reverberated through the dungeon as hundreds of figures clashed in a frenzy within the main hall. The more cowardly inmates shrieked in terror, scrambling away, clutching their heads as they cowered in the corners. Boulders shattered under the force of spiritual pressure-infused blows, sending debris scattering through the air. Waves of condensed spiritual pressure, glowing a deep azure, surged toward the ceiling, hammering against the reinforced prison walls. Damn detention unit. Why the hell are we locked up in here? Let us out. Die. A towering, muscular man in tattered clothing lunged forward, his roar filled with rage. His face was smeared with the blood of other inmates, his once white robes now soaked in red. Bloodshot eyes locked onto a young man standing not far away, a black-haired figure with a faint smile, clad in a shayakusho. At his side stood a silver-haired boy. A pretty-faced young man, delicate in appearance, yet bold enough to set foot in a place like this. The towering prisoner grinned maniacally, a cruel expression twisting his features, one that even the other inmates feared. He was determined to teach this pretty boy just how dangerous it was to stand out in a place like this. Deeper within the prison, in a solitary cell, a man with strange black and white face paint sat on a white stone bed, his expression one of irritation. Another riot. What an insufferable bunch. Unlike the other inmates, who were allowed free movement within the prison, this man was confined alone, his feet bound by heavy shackles, a testament to the fact that he was far more dangerous than the rest. Clink. The sound of gravel shifting underfoot was accompanied by the light tap of approaching footsteps. Under the dim lighting, two figures, one tall, one small, descended the narrow staircase. Taking care of all those inmates outside on your own. Looks like we've got a real big shot here. A hoarse voice drifted from the cell, its peculiar cadence enough to send chills down one's spine. What brings someone of your stature to a place like this? I came to see you, of course. I have business. Masatsuki Ozaki casually flicked the blood from his hand, stepping up to the cell door with a look of satisfaction. Mayuri Kurotsuchi. A troublesome one, huh? Mayuri Kurotsuchi's frown deepened as he watched Masatsuki approach, the distant screams of inmates still ringing through the corridors. The last person to irritate him this much had been that damn detention unit officer, Kusagakure. Ikamaru, wait outside for now. With a wave of Masatsuki's hand, the cell door, meant to restrict Mayuri's freedom, swung open on its own. Mayuri's eyes flickered with mild surprise as Masatsuki strode inside and, without hesitation, plopped himself down on the bed. Wow. You're really not polite to someone you just met. Masatsuki Ozaki smirked coldly. You use honorifics, but you're still being rude. Really? Masatsuki scratched his head, then extended his hand. I forgot to introduce myself. I'm the new third seat of the 2nd Division and captain of the detention unit, Masatsuki Ozaki. Never heard of you. Probably because I just graduated from the Shino Academy this year and only joined the detention unit yesterday. This year's graduate. Mayuri Kurotsuchi observed Masatsuki's cheerful demeanor and the hand he had extended. After a brief pause, he reached out, shook it, and said, getting promoted straight to 3rd seat upon graduation? I suppose congratulations are in order. So, what exactly brings you here? Masatsuki smiled. Mayuri Kurotsuchi, don't you find it boring to be stuck in here? Mayuri's heart skipped a beat at those words. But on the surface, he remained unfazed. What do you mean by that? Or maybe you just have no idea what this place is. The Shioin clan making you head of the detention unit was a foolish decision. You're proving to be quite the incompetent leader. No, Masatsuki scoffed. You're still not getting it. He let out a slow breath. I'm not asking if you're happy here. Sure, your conditions here are better than up top, you have your own room, and you don't have to be around those filthy, violent brutes. But at the end of the day, this room is still a prison, one that chains you down. And most importantly, to be honest, I admire your abilities. I probably understand you more than you think. I also know the nest of maggots better than you assume. There's nothing in this place for you. And this is not where you belong. Mayuri's brows furrowed sharply. Looks like you're finally starting to understand me. Masatsuki raised his hand. With a metallic clank, the shackles on Mayuri's legs fell open. At the same time, Jin Ikamaru, who had been waiting by the staircase, glanced back, then, seeing no immediate danger, turned his head away. Mayuri, now free, remained seated, his gaze lingering on Masatsuki's blood-stained hands. This so-called dangerous individual made no move to attack. Instead, he sat motionless, as if in deep meditation. He knew well enough that he had been classified as a threat not because of sheer strength, but because of his intellect and ideas. And this man before him, someone who had fought his way inside with his bare hands, was not someone he could possibly defeat. I have a friend named Kusagakure. He's the 3rd seat of the 12th Division, you might know him. He used to be in the detention unit. Masatsuki spoke casually as he got up and began pacing the cramped cell. He has a vision. He wants to establish an organization dedicated to scientific research and development. And he believes you have the talent for it. So, how about it? Want to join us? Mayuri let out a short, mocking laugh. What a ridiculous proposal. You two, both just 3rd seats, want to build an organization like that? And you think you can just waltz in here and take me out of this hellhole? Don't make me laugh. It's not just us. The head of the Shioin clan is backing us as well. Masatsuki sighed, then extended his hand once more. And more than that. You know what, let me introduce myself properly. My name is Masatsuki Ozaki. I'm 21 years old. And my master is Genri Uzaishi Gakuni Yamamoto. The moment those words left his mouth, Mayuri fell into a prolonged silence. For the first time, his expression changed dramatically, twisting into something unreadable. Masatsuki, however, remained unhurried. He simply leaned against the wall, absently counting the bars of the cell. He understood this man well. Mayuri Kurotsuchi was a textbook mad scientist. Being confined in a place where he could do nothing? That was a fate worse than death. And unlike Kusagakure, Mayuri had no reason to let petty rivalry get in the way of opportunity. Masatsuki was confident that he would make the right choice. Half a minute passed. Mayuri finally looked up, a strange grin creeping across his face as he rasped, "Why me? Everything you just said. That was all Kusagakure idea, wasn't it?" Masatsuki met his gaze. "I'm asking you, what do you want?" Chapter 63, External Brain. The next day, Masatsuki Ozaki left Jinakamaru in charge and made his way to the 12th Division, where he found Kusagakure slacking off as usual. "So Mayuri Kurotsuchi actually agreed? Never thought you had it in you," Urahara yawned, his eyes half-lidded with boredom. "When I used to talk to him back in the Onmitsukido, all he ever did was throw sarcastic jabs at me." Masatsuki grinned. "That's just because he was jealous that you're smarter than him." Urahara let out a heavy grunt before flashing a goofy smile. "I know you're just flattering me, but I'll take it anyway." "I'm not flattering you. Honestly, I haven't met anyone in Siri AI who's smarter than you," Masatsuki said with a chuckle. "When the Shinigami Research and Development Institute is up and running, things are going to get a lot more interesting." "Interesting?" Urahara tilted his head, looking puzzled. "That's right, interesting." Masatsuki nodded. "Don't you think Siri AI is far too dull right now? With technology, we can change the world." "Sounds like a pain," Urahara sighed. "Speaking of which, why are you so eager to start an organization like this? You've never done research before, have you?" Masatsuki hesitated. "Well, I guess I have, in a way. Back when he was working with Aizen, hunting souls in Rukongai, he had secretly stashed away some experimental materials in an attempt to create a Hogyoku. Unfortunately, with no proper lab or specialized knowledge, the attempt had ended in failure." Urahara stroked his chin, considering it for a moment. Then, he laughed. "Oh, right. You and Kakaku did those explosives experiments together. I guess that technically counts as research. So when are you planning to bring this up with the Captain Commander? After you become the captain of the 12th Division. Huh. That's at least 10 years away. I'm not even at captain level yet, and Hikaifun is still in charge. Does Mayuri Kurotsuchi know about this?" "Nope. He didn't ask, so I didn't tell him." Masatsuki shook his head, smiling faintly. "But you're pretty confident, huh? Talking like it's a sure thing that you'll be a captain in 10 years. To be fair, I wouldn't call myself a genius like you, but I do have faith in my talent," Urahara admitted, waving his hand. "Besides, becoming a captain shouldn't be too difficult." "Then I'll just sit back and wait for that day to come," Masatsuki said lightly. If completing the Hogyoku were as simple as relying on Aizen's research alone, things would be much easier. But Masatsuki knew better than to just sit around and wait for someone else to perfect it, hoping they'd conveniently place the finished product in front of him. That was nothing but a fantasy. In the end, if he wanted something done, he had to do it himself. He had his own plans, his own ambition to create a Hogyoku of his own. Of course, right now, he lacked both the resources and the means to put that plan into motion. All he could do was take things one step at a time and experiment within his capabilities. That was precisely why he had sought out Mayuri Kurotsuchi. He needed a breakthrough. From what he knew of the original timeline, Mayuri had been essential to Urahara's success. If Urahara had managed to create even a semi-finished Hogyoku, chances were he couldn't have done it without Mayuri's technical expertise. Of course, this was just Masatsuki's hypothesis. But whether he was right or wrong didn't matter. If he was right, he'd get ahead of the game. If he was wrong, he'd just keep working Aizen and Urahara, biding his time and waiting for the right opportunity. Masatsuki Ozaki crossed his arms and shook his head with a sigh. "I'd love to establish the Shinigami Research and Development Institute as soon as possible, but the two of us, just third seats, don't have the strength or status to make it happen. Even with Yoruichi's support, convincing Master will be difficult. He's a stubborn old man." "Yeah. That's a problem," Kusagakure muttered, for once showing genuine disappointment. This was one of the rare things that actually piqued his interest. Well. Two little brats plotting something interesting, I see." A sudden voice startled them both, sending a chill down their spines. For two lieutenants in all but name to be approached so closely without noticing, it was clear the newcomer's strength was extraordinary. They turned their heads and found a voluptuous woman with long purple hair, draped in a white haori, standing behind them. "Captain. I wasn't slacking off, I just stepped out for a moment. I was just about to head back." "Ah, what a coincidence, Garyo-san. I was just out here with Gisuk for a quick break. I should get back to work now." "Hold it." Garyo Hikaifun smiled sweetly at them, but before they could slip away, her soft yet firm hands landed on their shoulders, making it clear she had no intention of letting them off that easily. "What were you two just talking about?" "Nothing important," they answered in unison, shaking their heads. Garyo wagged a finger at them, smirking. But I clearly heard you mention Mayuri Kurotsuchi and the Shinigami Research and Development Institute. Mayuri used to be in our division before he got locked up in the nest of maggots, didn't he? Masatsuki sighed, rubbing his forehead. So you did hear everything. I was too far to catch all the details, so why don't you fill me in properly? Garyo said, folding her arms. Masatsuki was about to refuse, but suddenly, an idea struck him. With a straight face, he said, you know what? It's not like this is some big secret. Here's the deal. After hearing everything, Garyo Hikaifu nodded thoughtfully. Setting up a department for new technology and spiritual tools does sound like a solid idea. Are you interested too, Garyo-san? Masatsuki asked. Oh, very interested. Garyo smiled knowingly. You two wouldn't mind if I joined in, would you? Of course not. Masatsuki quickly replied, and Kisuke nodded in agreement. In that case, it's settled. The Shinigami Research and Development Institute sounds like a good name. She stroked her chin, her voice brimming with confidence. As for Captain Commander Yamamoto, leave him to me. Masatsuki blinked in surprise. Wait. That fast? Her decisiveness completely threw him off. Wasn't this kind of thing supposed to take time? But after a moment, he understood. She wasn't necessarily putting her trust in him or Kisuke. She trusted the old man, Yamamoto. No time to waste. I won't be in Siriite AI much longer, so I'd better move quickly, Garyo said, waving a hand dismissively. Besides, you two already have a plan, don't you? Masatsuki nodded. After all, his self-proclaimed external brain, Kisuke Urahara, had already worked out all the details. Chapter 64, Decade System. As Garyo Hikaifu's figure disappeared into the distance, Masatsuki Ozaki and Kisuke Urahara both let out a sigh of relief. Among the 13 Division of Imperial Guards, Garyo Hikaifun wasn't known for her combat prowess, but she was still a cut above the average captain. Neither of them had reached captain level yet, and even if combat wasn't her specialty, she could still take them down in an instant if she wanted to. Of course, they knew she wouldn't. They just didn't want to get scolded for slacking off. That was way too close, Kisuke muttered, wiping away non-existent sweat. Aren't you heading back? If Yoruichi finds out you snuck out, she'll probably lose all motivation to work too. I thought you were going to say, she'll drag me back to work. She's not that kind of person. True, Masatsuki nodded seriously, then chuckled. Actually, that just reminded me of something. What is it? Kisuke asked. Masatsuki leaned in. Can you make a protective suit? Something that can withstand Kido attacks from a seated officer. Price isn't an issue. Kisuke scratched his head. What do you need a protective suit for? With your freakish durability, you really think a seated officer-level Kido could even scratch you? It's for Kukaku, Masatsuki said, rubbing the back of his head with a grin. Kukaku? Kisuke stroked his chin. Ah, I get it. With how reckless she is, her hobbies are pretty dangerous. Without proper protection, she definitely needs something like that. You really do read my mind, Masatsuki praised. No need for flattery, Kisuke sighed. Just leave it to me. Kukaku's my friend too, after all. If anything, I should be thanking you. I wouldn't have even thought about this if it weren't for you. Masatsuki waved a hand with a smile. Then I'll leave it to you. I need to find a new place to slack off. There's gotta be a limit to how much you slack. Well, not that I'm one to talk, Kisuke muttered. As he watched Masatsuki practically skipping away, Kisuke sighed and strolled lazily back toward the barracks. Meanwhile, Masatsuki carefully climbed onto the roof and slipped over the wall. Ozaki-san, why sneak over the wall instead of using the main path? A gentle voice drifted into his ears, warm and soothing like a spring breeze. Because it's more fun this way. Masatsuki Ozaki answered instinctively before freezing for a moment. Then, his face lit up with recognition. Lieutenant Aizen. So it's you. Aizen adjusted his glasses, a polite smile gracing his lips. It seems Ozaki-san is quite happy to see me. It's an honor that the Captain Commander's disciple recognizes me. I should be the one honored, Masatsuki said with a grin. Lieutenant Aizen's reputation is legendary at the Shino Academy. There's not a single student or instructor who doesn't know your name. Many consider you an idol. Even now, your calligraphy is still displayed in the Academy's Grand Hall. Every time I pass by, I can't help but stop and admire it. Oh? I didn't expect you to have an interest in calligraphy as well, Aizen said, feigning pleasant surprise. Masatsuki nodded earnestly. I've admired you for a long time, Lieutenant Aizen. Back at the academy, I wanted to enroll in your calligraphy class. But my training schedule was intense, and I didn't have the free time. Unfortunately, I had to give up on the idea. It's a shame I missed the opportunity to learn from you. Calligraphy can be learned at any time, it doesn't have to be at the Shino Academy, Aizen said smoothly. I often practice in my spare time. If you're interested, feel free to come find me. The patrolling Shinigami nearby had fallen into a strange silence, watching the two men shower each other with compliments. Masatsuki hopped down from the wall and took a quick glance around. Strangely enough, no one seemed to be paying attention to him. It wasn't arrogance, just a fact. Even without the status of being the Captain Commander's disciple, his presence alone would turn heads wherever he went. Yet, right now, not a single person on the street was looking at him. Instead, their eyes were fixed on two unfamiliar figures in conversation. Something was off. Long time no see, Masatsuki. Kyoka Suigetsu. The familiar voice made everything click into place. Masatsuki gave a slight nod. Long time no see, Aizen-sama. Aizen stepped out from the shadows, his usual composed demeanor unchanged. You don't seem surprised that I came to find you. You already hinted at it through Jin back when I was at the academy, didn't you? Masatsuki smiled. Back in Rukongai, you told me I was smart. So, I hope you'll trust in my abilities. Confident. Just as expected from a man worthy of walking alongside me. Come with me. Yes. For a brief moment, Masatsuki thought he saw Aizen's smile widen. The two walked side by side, slowly making their way westward, leaving the 12th Division barracks behind and stepping into the residential district of Sairai's lower-ranking Shinigami. The streets were still bustling with life. Shopkeepers bickered with customers, their voices carrying through the air. Further ahead, someone stood in a dim alleyway, trying to lure in clients. Laughter and idle chatter blended into the lively atmosphere. Aizen suddenly spoke, his tone casual yet contemplative. Masatsuki, what do you think of this world? Masatsuki raised a brow. He hadn't expected Aizen to bring up such a grand topic out of nowhere. He fell silent, carefully considering his response. If he wanted to gain Aizen's trust, his answer had to be right. Aizen, however, wasn't in a rush. He simply stood there, watching him patiently. Masatsuki took in the scene before him, the carefree pedestrians, the warmth of the sun, the illusion of peace. Then, after a moment, he spoke. If I only look at them, I'd say the world is beautiful. But when I think about everything else, it's clear that it's not nearly good enough. Aizen chuckled. Interesting answer. Who exactly are you thinking of? And what have they done? Masatsuki didn't hesitate. The ones in power, the ones who only exist to make life difficult for everyone else. Aizen let out a soft laugh. It seems you hold quite the grudge against the Tsunayashiro clan. Personally, I don't think highly of them either. Of course. After all, most of my troubles can be traced back to them, Masatsuki said with a shrug. But it's not just them, the problem is Sairei itself. In the end, it's the rotten system of Sairei that grants them too much power, allowing them to act without restraint. Aizen's eyes gleamed with intrigue. Though a flicker of emotion stirred within him, his face remained unreadable. I never expected you to have such a sharp political perspective. You truly live up to your reputation as a genius. This has nothing to do with being a genius, Masatsuki said, waving a hand dismissively. It's just that, at this moment, I happen to not be a noble. I've studied systems far more advanced than this one. And when I turn back to see this archaic, decayed court, a system so similar to the outdated monarchies of the living world, it's only natural to feel nothing but frustration and disdain. Chapter 65, The Soul King is a puppet of the nobles. A minute later, Masatsuki Ozaki stood frozen in front of the laboratory door. As it slid open, his gaze fell upon a towering, irregularly shaped black sphere, nearly the size of a person. This is Aizen-sama's research? Masatsuki swallowed hard, unable to conceal the greed in his eyes. Aizen had always known exactly what kind of person he was. That's right, Aizen replied with a calm smile. This is the result of decades of research. The lab was silent, no one else was present. The only sound was Aizen's voice, echoing against the sterile walls. Decades ago, when I first became the lieutenant of the 5th Division, my spiritual pressure had already reached the first rank of spirit power. Even so, I never stopped pushing myself. I continued to train relentlessly until, 30 years ago, I reached my current level. But I couldn't find joy in it, because from that moment on, the path forward became unclear. No matter how much I trained, my spiritual pressure never grew stronger. Even my Zanpakutō, fully released, could no longer elevate my power. Eventually, I understood. This is the limit of a Shinigami's existence. Not due to any external restriction, but because of the fundamental nature of what we are. Masatsuki, already captivated, instinctively asked, so Aizen-sama intends to break this limitation? Aizen's eyes gleamed with subtle approval. Slowly, He spoke, yes. To surpass these limits, I have spent decades of my life, sacrificing the souls of hundreds of Shinigami and Rukongai residents with the potential to become Shinigami, to create this beautiful jewel. With it, one can transcend the boundaries of a Shinigami and evolve into a higher existence. Masatsuki furrowed his brows, lowering his voice. If this jewel is so important, isn't showing it to me so easily a bit reckless? When exactly did I earn your trust? Don't forget what we have done together, Masatsuki. I witnessed it with my own eyes. That was not just killing. It was a direct violation of Siriitai's greatest taboos. If our crimes were ever exposed, even the Captain Commander himself would never grant you mercy. We are walking the same path now, a path with no way back. That is why I trust you. Aizen smiled faintly. Besides, if you have the power to take this jewel from me, I wouldn't mind letting you have it. Masatsuki scoffed inwardly. If I had the power to take it, I wouldn't need your permission. Strangely, Aizen's words had put him at ease. He let out an irritated huff, making no effort to hide his displeasure. Aizen paused, seemingly caught off guard by the display of defiance, but instead of reacting with anger, he merely smiled. Come closer. Feel its power for yourself. Masatsuki obeyed, stepping forward until he was right in front of the glass enclosure. He raised his palm, aligning it with the so-called beautiful jewel, studying it closely, trying to sense anything extraordinary. To be honest, he didn't see the beauty in it at all. It was just a giant lump of coal. What do you think? Aizen asked. Masatsuki shook his head, disappointed. Honestly, a little underwhelming. I don't feel anything special from it. Aizen chuckled. That's to be expected. Right now, this jewel is nothing more than a mass of collected souls. As he turned his gaze toward the glass container, he suddenly found himself re-evaluating the object inside. It really was quite ugly. For the first time, Aizen felt something oddly similar to embarrassment, like a child eagerly showing off their prized toy, only to have their friend react with complete disinterest, even disdain. That thought alone left him strangely unsatisfied. He shook his head. No, it's not even a true collective. There are too few fragments of the Soul King, preventing the souls from fully merging. On top of that, external rishi are drawn toward the fragments, reacting with the spiritual pressure of the souls within the Hueco and disrupting its formation. At best, it's just a crude pile of souls, forcibly compressed together. This thing is hollow, an imitation with no real power. Masatsuki Ozaki tilted his head. So, in other words, this isn't a failure. It can still be refined, right? Precisely. Aizen turned to face him fully, a flicker of emotion stirring within him before he quickly regained his usual composed confidence. This is exactly why I called you here. The Hueco is still missing its most essential component. This is only the beginning. With the right materials, it will undoubtedly be completed, he thought to himself. For the first time, Aizen felt a strange urge to prove himself to someone. It wasn't a good sign. He hadn't been like this before, hadn't changed before meeting this man. Against anyone else, his priority would have been concealing his emotions, maintaining absolute control. Yet now, an odd sense of competitiveness stirred within him. Masatsuki, oblivious to Aizen's internal conflict, rubbed his chin and asked, what material? Aizen paused for a moment before deliberately enunciating, the fragments of the Soul King. Even without the inspiration of the Soul King's fingernail, you deduced what's needed to create the Hueco? I should have expected nothing less from you, Aizen Sosuke. Masatsuki's eyes widened in exaggerated shock. Did I hear that right? The Soul King's fragments? By Soul King, you mean that Soul King? What exactly are these fragments? Parts of the Soul King's body? Your talent may surpass mine in some areas, but intelligence and temperament? Those belong to me. Watching Masatsuki's deliberately over-the-top reaction, Aizen felt an unusual sense of satisfaction, almost smug. Yes. The one who resides above all in the heavens. And you guessed correctly. The Soul King's fragments are pieces of his body. But how could the all-powerful Soul King? Masatsuki trailed off, playing along. Aizen's smile deepened. Do you wish to know the truth? Let me show you the reality of this world, Masatsuki. The light caught the lenses of Aizen's glasses, reflecting an eerie gleam as he spoke. During my past experiments, I discovered a particular material that the jewel seemed to hunger for. To learn more, I infiltrated the Tsunayashiro clan, the Keepers of Souls Society's complete history. In the end, I uncovered scattered records that not only confirmed what this material was, but also revealed the truth of Souls Society itself. Masatsuki's thoughts stirred. So Aizen hasn't accessed the Darisha Kairo yet. The Darisha Kairo, an enigmatic archive hidden beneath the central 46 chambers. A vast and intricate system, It catalogued every major event and secret throughout Soul Society's history. Due to its significance, access was nearly impossible under normal circumstances. What made it particularly unusual was its autonomous nature. It functioned independently of any Shinigami's will, compulsively recording everything that transpired within Soul Society. However, it could still be deceived by illusions, concealing certain truths from its records. Masatsuki had never understood how Kyoka Suigetsu's illusions could fool what was essentially an advanced, self-sustaining system. But one thing was certain: if Aizen could manipulate the Darisha Kairo, then Masatsuki, possessing the same ability, could do the same. As Masatsuki fell into deep thought, Aizen let out a quiet chuckle before delivering his final revelation. In truth, the Soul King is nothing more than a puppet of the noble clans. Chapter 66, Sky Throne. In fact, the Soul King is nothing more than a puppet of the noble clans. Aizen Sosuke declared with absolute certainty. Masatsuki Ozaki put on a flawless performance, gasping in exaggerated shock. What? Aizen continued, his tone resolute. The Soul King has been a puppet of the nobles for over 1,000,000 years. This is the truth I uncovered after deciphering the Tsunayashiro clan's ancient inscriptions. He nodded solemnly, then lowered his voice. According to the Tsunayashiro clan's hidden history, their ancestors ambushed the Soul King and sealed him within a crystal. They feared that, despite his lack of resistance, the Soul King might one day break free and annihilate them. So they severed his limbs, hollowed out his insides, stripped away his power, and scattered it across the world. Piece by piece, they weakened the Soul King's strength, all to create a king who would be easy to control. But even after being reduced to nothing more than a mutilated husk, the Soul King did not die. Instead, he was trapped in an endless paradox, neither truly alive nor dead. The ancestors of the 5 noble clans then used the Soul King's omnipotent power as a keystone to divide the once chaotic world into 3 realms: Soul Society, the world of the living, and Hueco Mundo. This is the real history. Masatsuki Ozaki remained calm beneath the surface, but outwardly, he appeared utterly stunned. Swallowing hard, he hesitated for a moment before speaking. So the Tsunayashiro clan's madness traces all the way back to their ancestor. They really had the audacity to do something like this? Aizen smirked. Are you feeling sympathy for the Soul King? Masatsuki waved a dismissive hand. Why would I? The Soul King doesn't deserve pity. If anything, he brought this upon himself. Oh? Aizen's interest peaked.